What's up? Ghost Fictions is here, and we're back again. This is the second part of a story where Issei disappeared and got powers of Megami Tensei. But before we start, please consider subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Don't forget to check the description for more informations. Now, let's get into part 2. Ryu's eyes snapped open, the dark confines of Issei's bedroom greeting her. It took her almost a minute to realize what had happened as she lay in her customary place by Issei's side, but when she did she almost screamed in rage. It was all a dream. And not only was it all a dream, it had ended right when she was about to finish. She buried her face into Issei's shoulder and almost sobbed with frustration. Why? Why was she being tortured like this? A minute or two later she got a hold of herself. She did her best to ignore the dampness between her legs and simply lay down, her head on Issei's bare chest. She closed her eyes and smiled softly as she felt the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. It always helped soothe her. Asia, no. You're not getting married to that punk. Phew. Issei mumbled in his sleep. Ryu's bit her lip and smiled slightly at his words, before letting her eyes travel to the girl he was talking about. Asia was sleeping soundly on Issei's other side, her cute face having a soft smile on it. Ryu's frowned. She loved the former nun like her own little sister. And now Idora Astaroth wanted to take her away. She could understand why Issei appeared fixated on it even in his dreams. Her gaze went to a pile of letters on a nearby desk. All of it was from Idora. Love letters, movie tickets, and invitations to dinner, among other things. He was very determined. Even after 2 weeks, the letters continued to arrive. Ryu sighed and lay his head back down on Issei's chest. She remembered his reaction to Idora's proposal. He'd gotten very quiet and moody. He was obviously angry and trying not to show it. Sweet little Asia had been mortified at what she perceived to be the trouble she caused. So Issei had calmed himself down and made sure to act normally around her now. Ryu's frowned softly. Unless Asia outright stated that she wanted to go with Idora, there was no way she'd let the other player touch her. Asia was her little sister, and nobody got between her and her family. Nodding to herself in determination, she closed her eyes and tried to relax, hoping to get some more sleep. Who knows, maybe she'd even get to finish that wonderful dream. She yawned. She really needed to work harder on tempting Issei into devilhood. Issei was sitting in his classroom waiting for class to begin. He was messing with his phone while Mitsuda and Motohama discussed who among their classmates had lost their virginity during the summer beside him. Issei couldn't really bring himself to care. Not only had he not been a virgin for a while, but such things weren't really all that important in the grand scheme of things. There was no point in involving himself in other people's business. Smells like virgins. Like Kiryu said with a chuckle as she approached him. Did you come to laugh at us, Kiryu? Motohama asked angrily. The bespectacled girl nodded with a grin. Yep. Sensatsuka eyes, I'm sure you spent an absolutely worthless summer. Shut up. The perverted duo shouted. Aika laughed at them before turning to Issei, her look becoming a bit more serious. By the way, Hyoudou, Asia's been acting weird lately. Do you know why? Issei set his phone down before glancing at Asia, who was smiling and laughing with a group of other students. But Issei could tell her actions were a bit forced. Not only that, she'd acted oddly ever since classes began, reading her book upside down and getting nervous when the teacher called on her. Issei turned back to Aika with a scowl. This asshole keeps trying to get Asia to go out with him. She's told him no, but he just won't stop. It's really messing with her. Aika, Mitsuda and Motohama all looked surprised at that. Then Mitsuda scratched his chin. Well, I can understand that guy. Asia is too cute and wonderful. It's no surprise somebody'd want to go out with her. Aika glared. He should take a hint though. No is no. Then she gave the perverted duo a nasty look. Then again, look who I'm talking to. At least Hyoudou is a halfway decent guy nowadays. She turned to Issei. So what are you going to do about this? Issei bared his teeth, a malevolent glint in his eye. Nobody touches Asia if she doesn't want them to. He tries, he gets a couple of limbs broken, I don't care how much of a big shot he is. The malice in his voice made the duo shrink back, and Aika raised an eyebrow. Before anybody could respond to his words, however, one of the guys of the class ran into the room, panting. Hey, listen. This is urgent. He took a drink from a bottle of water a friend gave him as everybody stared at him. There's a transfer student coming. It's a girl. As the entire class made sounds of surprise, Issei raised an eyebrow. When class started, everybody was on the edge of their seats, looking forward to seeing who joined the class, especially the boys. Mitsuda and Motohama were practically shaking with anticipation. Issei simply looked on in interest, tapping his pencil against the desk, absently hoping she was cute. It's a bit unusual for this time of year, but a new student will be joining us. The teacher said. You may come in. At the teacher's word, the new student entered. When she showed herself to the students, the boys let out a cheer at how beautiful she was. Issei, however, dropped his pencil as his eyes widened. He glanced to the side to find Asia gaping and Zenobia staring, completely shocked. My name is Irina Hyoudou. Let's get along, everybody. Irina said with a bright smile. During break time, Issei took Irina's hand and led her to an area void of anybody but Asia and Zenobia. This made some people scowl at Issei's back, but Irina was going along willingly, so nobody said anything about it. It's been a while, Ice-kun, Zenobia. The church agent said happily, giving Zenobia a big hug. I'm glad you're doing okay, Zenobia. Even though it might be awkward due to our positions, I'm truly happy. Yes, it's been a while, Irina. I'm glad you're doing alright as well. Though, is it punishment that the cross you're wearing is causing me some minor damage? Zenobia responded, smiling as well. Anyway, why are you here? I've transferred her on Michael-sama's orders. I'll give you more details later, after the class, in the old school building. Okay. Irina said while winking. Issei nodded and left the girls to talk, heading back to his seat. On his way to his seat he was intercepted by Mitsuda and Motohama, Aika hovering in the background, looking interested. Okay, Spill, how could you possibly know the new beauty? Issei simply raised an eyebrow and smiled. She's a childhood friend of mine who moved away. We reunited not that long ago. He smirked slightly. I was amazed at how much of a beauty she's become. I look forward to getting reacquainted with her again. He of course meant it, somewhat innocently, but he knew well how the duo would take it, and he simply couldn't resist. As predicted, the two perverts started cursing him out loudly and lamenting their misfortune, making the rest of the class stare. Issei simply walked back to his seat, whistling to himself, noticing I could give him a thumbs up as she chuckled. He simply grinned back. After class the orc gathered in the clubroom along with Azazel and Sona. Irina Hyoudou-san, I welcome you to our school. Sona said in her usual dignified manner. Yes. Everyone. Well, there are people I'm meeting for the first time, but most of you I have met before. My name is Irina Hyoudou. Church. No, I came here to Kuoh Academy as a messenger of the angels. Everybody applauded her, including Issei who was sitting with Kaneko on his lap. Irina then began giving a speech about gratitude to the Lord, and Michael-sama is great. Everyone listened patiently as she spoke. So you know about the death of the god of the Bible, right? Azazel asked. Irina nodded. Of course, Governor Sama of the fallen angels. You are quite tough. I never thought Irina, who has such a strong belief in the teachings, would come here without being shocked at all. Zenobia said, surprised. There was a moment of silence, and suddenly, as though the floodgates had opened, a large amount of tears began flowing from Irina's eyes. Of course I'm shocked. My spiritual support. The center of the world. Father of many creations deed. I was living while believing in all of the teachings, so I spent 7 days and 7 nights sleeping when I heard the truth from Michael-sama. Lord. Then she began to cry hysterically while hugging the table. Belle's sweat dropped. Sheesh, she took that kind of hard, didn't she? Are you really surprised? Issei asked as he absently pat Kaneko, who looked quite content. She was obviously extremely devout. Asia and Zenobia had moved to comfort Irina, and now all three were hugging each other. Asia-san, I'm sorry for calling you a witch last time. Irina wailed. And Zenobia too. I said horrible things when we said our goodbyes. I'm sorry. It's alright, I don't mind. Asia said gently. I'm hoping we can all get along now since we all love the same Lord. Same here. It was my fault for acting without thinking and turning into a devil immediately. I'm just happy we've been reunited like this. Zenobia said with a smile. Then all three began to pray together. After everything calmed down, Azazel continued the meeting. So can I assume you are Michael's messenger? Irina nodded. Yes, Azazel-sama. Michael-sama was troubled because there was no one from heaven's side here. It's a problem for us if there's nobody helping here. I see. Yes, Michael was quite insistent that there be somebody from his end here to help, despite all the assistance heaven has already provided us. So it appears you were the one he decided to send. Azazel said with a sigh. Irina suddenly got up and began to pray. To everybody's surprise, Issei included, white wings appeared from her back. She looked like an angel. I see. Irina Hyoudou. Did you go through the angel transformation? I didn't realize there was such a thing. Issei said, eyeing Irina. Azazel shrugged. There was until now. The theory had been discussed, but nothing had come of it yet. Irina nodded at Azazel. Yes. I received Michael-sama's blessing and became a reincarnated angel. I heard that the seraphs used the technologies of the devils and fallen angels and made it possible. 4 great seraphs and other seraphs. A total of 10 seraphs decided to have 12 subordinates called brave saints, each with a position from an ace to queen of the cards. The cards of king will be the position of the angel Sama, who would be the master. Irina explained. I see. Azazel said, looking interested. So they use the evil peace technology of the devils with the artificial sacred gears of the fallen angels. That's interesting. So if the devils are chess, the angels are cards. They could work to make up for the fact that new pure angels cannot be born any longer, and help heaven strengthen their forces. Interesting. Issei said. Which card are you, Irina? I'm an ace. It's a very honorable position among Michael-sama's cards, she said happily, showing a symbol of ace on her hand. And Michael Sama said he can see a special rating game between evil pieces and brave saints happening in the future. He also said that right now only the angels of Seraph have them, but in the near future high-level angel Sama besides the Seraph would be given this system, and he is hoping for them to battle each other, just like the rating games of the devils. Azazel looked impressed. Oh, that would help with the lingering tensions that remain. If people could get their aggression out and settle disputes with rating games, it would help a lot. Like a supernatural World Cup or Olympics. Michael has thought this through. Well, let's stop these types of discussions and start Arena Shido's welcome party. Sona intervened after a moment. Everybody agreed and proceeded to celebrate. A few days later, Issei was relaxing in his seat as the class decided who would do what for the upcoming sports festival. Arena lifted her hand eagerly to volunteer for the item borrowing race. Issei smiled slightly. Arena had become a hit with the class due to her energetic nature and helpful disposition. Both boys and girls liked her. Haidu. Aika, who was at the front of the class noting down who would be doing what, called on him. He asked. You've got a tear under your armpit, she said. Issei gave her a deadpan look. Really? I'm supposed to fall for that? She pouted. Damn, why did you have to grow some brains? Come on, we need somebody to do the three-legged race. Asia timidly raised her hand. I'll do it with you, I-san. Issei sighed softly before smiling. Alright, why not? I'll do it. Aika eyed him even as she added their names to the board. She got you to do it easily enough, she said with a small pout. He shrugged. It's Asia. Who says no to her? Asia blushed as more than one person nodded in agreement, Aika included. Issei made his way to the clubroom after school the next day with Asia, Zenobia and Arena. He had spent the day with them preparing for their events. He spent some time with Asia training to do their event. It took some time for them to get into the rhythm of walking together. His mind, however, was on a meeting with Saji. He had been concerned when the other boy had worn a bandage. He found that there were black markings under it that looked like a snake. From what Azazel said, it was a result of the bit of training Issei gave Saji before the Gremory Citri match. Issei had decided to have Saji experiment with what his sacred gear could do. It's how they had discovered that he could make the lines shorten on his command, even after he'd connected them to two different things. But they'd gone beyond that. Using himself as the target, Issei had Saji test to see what else Fritter could do. Saji had tried out drawing things other than power or stamina, such as blood. It appeared he could take a rather large amount of blood quite quickly if needed. Issei had actually felt a bit woozy at the time before Saji stopped. Azazel theorized that absorbing the Sekiryute's blood and power was having some sort of effect on Saji. What that was, though, he didn't know. So now Saji was a bit worried. Especially as it wasn't just the markings that were showing. Some sort of jewel had also appeared on his arm, much like the jewels on other dragon-type sacred gears Issei had seen. Issei told him to keep him appraised and let him know if there was anything he could do to help. Saji had thanked him before leaving to continue working under the glare of Sona and Tsubaki. Drake had advised Issei to keep an eye on Saji, so that's what he would do. When the group reached the clubroom, they found the rest of the orc already there, looking serious. What's up, Ryus? Issei asked. Our next opponent for the Young Devils rating game has been decided, she said seriously. At Issei's inquisitive eyebrow raise, she continued. Our next opponent is Diodora Astaroth. Issei's eyes narrowed. Interesting. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Issei was training with Asia for the three-legged race behind the gym early in the morning, with Zenobia assisting. They managed to get used to each other's movements through practice, and could now move with a decent rhythm. Excellent. You guys have developed well. Now we should have you guys run as if you were in the actual race. Zenobia said as she knelt down to adjust the rope tying them together. Issei nodded and turned to Asia with a smile, which dropped when he saw that the former nun looked gloomy. What's wrong, Asia? Asia was silent for a bit as Issei and Zenobia watched her, before she finally responded. I don't regret saving that person back then. Issei and Zenobia glanced at each other before he patted the blonde's head. Diodora, right? It's fine, Asia. He hesitated, and decided to ask her a question he had been wondering about for a while now. Asia, if you were able to go back to your old life, would you? Asia looked up at Issei, shocked at the question, while he looked down at her, waiting for her answer. Then she smiled up at him. I wouldn't go back, she said without hesitation. I want to stay by I-san's side forever. Issei blinked, before smiling and wrapping an arm around Asia. The girl blushed but snuggled against him as she continued. I like this place. I also like Kuoh Academy and the Occult Research Club. I also like Butchu-san, Akeno-san, Sensei, Kiba-san, Zenobia-san, Kaneko-chan, Gaspar-kun, Arena-san, and Kyoryu-san. I also love I-san and I-san's parents. The new life I started in this city is something very important, and something I greatly love. Issei smiled down at her gently and gave her a gentle squeeze. In that case, don't worry about Diodora. I won't let him touch you if you don't want him to. You and me, Asia, we're going to be together for a long, long time. Asia nodded happily. Yes. Zenobia cut in. Asia, I just wanted to apologize again. I still regret the horrible things I said to you when we first met. But you treated me kindly, and even said I'm your friend. Asia took one of the former exorcist's hands with a smile. We are friends, Zenobia-san. Zenobia's eyes became moist. Thank you, Asia. They were suddenly interrupted by the sound of somebody crying. Ooh, this really is touching. They turned to find Irina standing there, watching them with teary eyes. Ah, Irina, you came. Issei said with a small sweat drop. Irina sniffled and wiped her eyes. Yes, Zenobia invited me. She told me that mornings at Kuoh Academy are nice. And upon arriving I saw this beautiful friendship. This must be thanks to the guidance of the Lord and Michael-sama. She began to pray. Searching for another topic, Issei decided to ask, if I recall, you haven't joined the Occult Research Club, have you? No. I decided to join another club. Or rather, start one of my own. Irina exclaimed brightly. Oh? What are you going to name it, and what will it do? Issei asked. Yufufu, be shocked by hearing its name. The club name is Irina Hyoudou's Salvation of Love Club. The description is simple. We will help those in need without receiving anything in return. I will be spreading my love to the sinful pagans for the Lord and Michael-sama, since I hold strong belief in our teachings. Irina exclaimed grandly before once again beginning to pray. Issei's sweat dropped. Okay, well, do your best. Leave it to me. Though you don't need to worry. I'll help the Occult Research Club when they need it. Like during the race between clubs. Ryu-san asked for my help, so I'll be with you for that. The cheerful angel replied. I see. Just out of curiosity, how many people are there in your club? He asked. Just me for now. So at the moment it's really considered an association of like-minded people, so there are restrictions on activities and funds given. I need to convince Sun Kaichu first, she said. So in the meantime it's been decided to put me in the Occult Research Club for now. Issei nodded, once more sweat dropping, before directing everybody to get back to practice. A while later, Issei and Asia were in the gym's storage room, putting away the supplies they'd use for their training. I'm a bit tired, Asia said softly as she tugged at her slightly sweaty top. Being unused to physical exercise, the former nun had exerted herself more than Issei. They both turned as the door to the storage room was slammed shut to find Zenobia standing in front of it, staring at them. Asia was the one to ask what was on both their minds. What's wrong, Zenobia-san? Asia, I heard that girls our age start to flirt with others during this period. The brunette replied seriously. Issei blinked. Wait, what? Asia apparently was thinking similarly. A flirt? She asked hesitantly. It means you get your breasts played with by a boy. Zenobia said with all seriousness. Issei stared. Was she serious? That wasn't what flirting meant at all. BB breasts. Asia eat. Zenobia, this is not the sort of conversation you should have like this. Also, flirting Issei began, but Zenobia cut him off. Ice, be quiet. Your part will come after I talk to Asia. You can go ahead and start warming up in the corner of the room, if you want, however. Issei was once again left staring. What the hell was she talking about? Zenobia turned back to Asia. There's a girl in our class who has her breasts played with every day by her boyfriend. I researched quite a lot. Don't you think it's a good time for us to also experience it, Asia? Zenobia said all of that with her hands on Asia's shoulders and an intense look on her face. Asia was completely red, but to Issei's surprise, she appeared to be seriously considering Zenobia's words. But is it alright? Asia, we are friends, right? Yes. Then let's also flirt together. It wouldn't be as scary if we do it together. Is that so? Zenobia looked at the still surprised Issei. Then let's do it. I will also be practicing making babies as well. Wait, you want to do it in here? This isn't exactly the best place. Issei said, though he couldn't keep his eyes from staring as Zenobia quickly removed her top and bra, letting her large breasts bounce freely. I haven't let anybody else but Ice touch these breasts. Do you still remember how they feel? She asked. Issei nodded. Kinda hard to forget. He said, his reasons for being against this disappearing as his libido took over. Then Zenobia began to strip Asia, who looked very timid. I'm not sure I'm all ready. The former nun said softly. It's okay, Asia. If you're nervous, I'll do it with Ice first. You'll understand what to do by looking at us and be ready for it. Zenobia said with a smile. Issei stepped forward. Zenobia, if Asia isn't comfortable, you will leave her be. Understood. Zenobia looked at Issei, her hands on the clasps of Asia's bra, but before she could respond Asia spoke. I'll be fine if it's Ice-san. Hearing Asia's agreement Zenobia quickly unhooked the blonde's bra, letting it fall to the floor, exposing Asia's modestly sized breasts. She instinctively covered her chest with her arms, hiding them from view. Zenobia quickly moved forward and pushed Issei down onto one of the PE mats, while she got on top of him, his breasts hanging in front of his face. She grabbed one of his hands and guided it to her chest, letting out a soft moan as she felt him gently squeeze her. Asia puts on her determined face and quickly moves to Issei's side, taking his hand and placing it on her own breast. She let out a cute little whimper as Issei began to fondle and caress the both of them, wanting to make them feel good. Ah, like I thought, it's different than when you touch yourself. Please keep going, Ice. It feels good, Zenobia said breathily. Issei glanced Asia to make sure she was alright with this, and saw that she was biting her lip, her cheeks rosy and eyes shining. With every squeeze he gave she let out cute little moans, and looked like she was enjoying himself. After a minute or so of fondling, Issei moved his face towards Zenobia's free breast, about to bring her pink nipple to his lips. However, before he could, the storage room opened with a clang. All three turned to find Irina standing there. I came because none of you were coming out and… WWW, what are you doing in here? She exclaimed. All three expected her to cry out something Christian about how what they were doing was filthy, and that they should be ashamed. Instead, do it in a bed. This place is filthy and no good. Issei was scowling as he sat next to Asia in the Ork-Kubram after class that same day. They'd spent time watching recordings of the rating games of the other young devils to learn about their potential opponents. They'd first seen the match between Sarier Bale and Zephyr Glacial Bulls. Issei had been impressed at the sight of Sarier taking out his opponent with a single powerful punch. His respect for the Mayu aspirant grew when he heard that the boy had no natural talents, including the power of destruction he should have had, and had risen to the position of strongest of his generation through pure grit and hard work. After some further discussions about how everybody stacked up along with the fact that Sarier would be their opponent after Daidor, they were about to watch the match between the latter and Sekvera Gears, when they were interrupted by somebody teleporting in. The new arrival was, of course, Daidor. Hence Issei's current scowl. Riaz, Azazel and Daidor were seated around the table as everybody else sat in the corner. Issei was holding Asia's hand, who was clutching back tightly. I'll be straightforward, Riaz-san. Daidor began once Akeno had finished pouring them tea. I wish to trade bishops. The servant I am seeking from Riaz-san is, of course, Asia Argento. Riaz didn't need to look around to know Issei was practically glaring at her, and most definitely glaring at Daidor. He had, after all, agreed to let Asia into her peerage in exchange for her protection. Giving her away like this would be a betrayal to him, and would most definitely make her Issei's enemy. He needn't have worried, however. The one I will be arranging is Daidor began, only to be cut off by Riaz. I thought as much. But I'm sorry. I thought that I should say it before you show me that catalog with your servants. I have no intention to have a trade. It's not that your bishop doesn't match up with mine, but I just simply don't want to lose Asia. She is my important servant devil. Riaz said confidently. Is it because of her ability? Or is it because of her charm as an individual? Daidor asked calmly. Both, Riaz affirmed. I think of her as my little sister. Butchu-san, Asia exclaimed, hand to her mouth and eyes wet with tears. She was obviously incredibly touched by Riaz's words. We live together, and my affection for her deepens every day. Is that not a good enough reason to keep her? It seems like it to me. I simply can't understand you for trying to get Asia through me with such a method, Daidor. Do you even understand the meaning of a proposal? Riaz bit out with an intense smile that displayed to everybody how monumentally pissed she was. I understand. I will leave for today, but I will not give up. Daidor said, his ever-present smile affixed firmly to his face. He got up and walked toward Asia. He got on his knee and tried to take her hand. Asia. I love you. It's okay, destiny won't betray us. Even if everything in this world rejects us, I will overcome them no matter what. Before he could kiss her hand, Issei finally had enough. He roughly grabbed Daidor and forced him away from Asia, keeping him from kissing her. Daidor turned to Issei, still smiling at his glare. Could you let go of me? I feel sickened to be touched by a filthy dragon. Issei's eyes narrowed, but before he could react, Asia had gotten up and slapped Daidor with her full strength. Don't say that about Ice-san. She cried as she hugged Issei hard. Despite the redness that appeared on Daidor's cheek, his smile never left. I see. I understand. It is truly a pity that the Sekiryu won't be in a rating game, where I could then show you who the better man is. Issei snorted. I don't need to fight. My friends can handle you without my help, he said dismissively. They both glared at each other, even as Azazel informed Riaz and Daidor that their match would be in 5 days. Issei walked through town at night, trying to clear his head. He was still irritated about what had happened earlier with Daidor. He really wanted to pound the smug bastard's face in. He stopped at a vending machine and got himself something to drink for the rest of his walk. He had just brought it to his lips when he sighed. What do you want, Biku? The monkey Yaokai grinned from where he was standing nearby. For once he wasn't dressed in his Chinese armor. He looked like an ordinary well-dressed young man. Who said I want anything? I'm just keeping my partner company, he said. Issei sighed again before turning to his other side. Hello, Volley. Here for another beating. Volley stepped forward, looking at Issei. Hello, Issei Hyoudou. It's been a couple of months. You can relax, I'm not here to fight. Then what are you here for? Issei asked, taking a sip from his drink. I hear your team will be having a raiding game soon. With the next heir of the House of Astaroth, Volley said. Issei shrugged. Yes they are. I'm working them hard in preparation for it. Why, what about it? Volley smiled softly. They should be very careful, especially since they won't have you at their side. Issei's eyes narrowed. Oh, and why's that? This time Volley was the one to shrug. You saw the video of his match with the princess from the Archduke house, didn't you? Issei nodded slowly. After Diodora left they'd watched the recording of the match. Diodora had taken out the enemy peerage by himself with only minimal support from his own. This was immediately suspicious to everybody watching. He hadn't been able to do anything like that at first, being skilled, but not overwhelmingly so. Suddenly, however, when Aguirre's had the advantage, he seemed to get a power-up beyond what he should have been capable of, and proceeded to mow down the opposition. He's playing dirty somehow, isn't he? Issei asked Volley. Volley simply smiled. I figured there wasn't any point in trying to get it through the skulls of the high-class devils, so I thought approaching you would be a good idea. Issei considered it. Alright. I'll think on this and come up with a countermeasure or two. He eyed Volley. Any particular reason you're telling me this, though? Volley shrugged once again. We were in the neighborhood, so I figured I'd let my rival know. He motioned to Biku. Come on, let's get going. Biku walked after him. Alright. Hey, how about we get some noodles on the way? Issei watched as they left before sighing, finishing his drink, and heading back to the clubroom, where he was sure at least Rias was. He had some news to share. Issei and Rias arrived home a short while later, after he had informed Rias about what Volley had told him, and she in turn reported it to her brother. Both headed up to his room in order to get ready for bed. However, Issei froze when he opened the door, staring at what he found within. Ice-kun. Welcome home, said Akeno, who was wearing an intensely erotic Maiko outfit which showed off more than it covered. Akeno. Issei exclaimed, caught completely off guard. What? Why? You fufu. The sexy devil laughed as she showed herself off. I wanted to do something special for Ice-kun after everything you've done for us, and Bell-sensei helped me come up with this. Don't you like it? I love it. He assured her, his eyes wandering along her form. I'm glad. You fufu. What should we do now? Should we have an observation party? Or? Akeno trailed a finger along her cleavage before giving her breast a squeeze. A private party on top of the bed, touching aloud. She gave him a lidded look. Before Issei could respond he was interrupted by an intense amount of killing intent that came from right behind him. He turned to find Rias glaring at Akeno with a particularly dangerous smile on her face. Akeno, what are you doing? She asked softly. Rias. So you were here? Akeno said slyly. Of course I am. This is Issei's in my room. I see. Then wait there for a bit. I'm trying to give Ice-kun some enjoyment. You are a hindrance. Akeno said kindly. Rias froze in place, a smile likewise stuck on her face, at Akeno's words. She then responded with a shaking voice. Rance. Issei flinched in spite of himself. This couldn't end well. Before he could do anything, however, he was distracted by movement from the corner of the room. He turned only to find, to his surprise, Asia, Zenobia and Kaneko, all in cosplay as well. He noticed that Belle was floating nearby, watching everything and looking immensely entertained. Asia and Zenobia were both wearing Maiko costumes similar to Akeno's. Issei stared, making Asia blush crimson. Zenobia stretched, inadvertently showing herself off more. It's easy to move in, which is good. We can't wear any underwear with it, but it's comfortable at least. Asia shyly covered her chest. But without a bra. It can be seen through. She blushed harder when she noticed Issei staring at her barely visible nipples. Kaneko advanced on Issei. She was dressed like a beast and, despite not showing as much skin as the others, the effect combined with her ears and tail, had a large impact. Do I look good in it? 9. She asked while making a pose, looking up at him cutely. Issei nodded rapidly. You look amazing, Kaneko-chan. I will also change. Rias declared, heading for the corner of the room full of costumes. Issei looked at Akeno. How did this happen? Akeno looked at him with a glint in her eye. When Bell-sensei mentioned to everybody what I was going to do for you, everybody else wanted to wear something as well, so it all turned out like this. Suddenly Rias came out of the changing room, wearing an erotic devil costume, her real devil wings flapping behind her adorably for extra effect. Ice, I look good, don't I? This is the kind of costume Ice likes, after all. She posed, showing herself off. Yeah. You look amazing, Rias. He said, his eyes taking in her form and burning it into his memory. Akeno walked into the changing room without a word before quickly coming back out. Issei's eyes flew open, and even Belle looked surprised. Akeno was essentially wearing bits of string that only barely covered the bare essentials, and even then, not completely. Ice-kun, costumes with more exposure are the best, aren't they? Issei nodded dumbly. This was not what he had been expecting when he came home, but there was no way he was complaining about it. Akeno moved forward and grabbed his hand before forcing it to her breast, making his fingers sink into her soft flesh. Amazing. Ice-kun's hand. When I saw Ice-kun glaring at the door, my heart was beating so fast. Ice-kun showed his manly side, so I couldn't hold myself back. Ryuz glared at Akeno and grabbed his other hand before putting it on her own breast. Issei had a brief sensation of deja vu, before he ignored it in favor of enjoying their current actions. Ryuz was moaning along with Akeno. And my chest gets so hot when I'm being touched by ice. This wonderful feeling. It increases the more he touches me. Issei felt a trickle of blood escape his nose. The two were far more erotic than he was expecting they would be. Even being around a succubus like Elena for large amounts of time hadn't made him completely immune to it. Despite what they were saying, they had continued to glare at each other during the whole thing, sparks flying from their eyes. Finally Ryuz reacted. I won't lose to Akeno, she cried, before rushing back into the changing room, swiftly followed by Akeno. Issei was left groping the air. As the two girls began to shout at each other in the changing room, Belle moved by her master's side with a grin. Enjoying yourself, boss. They're really pulling out all the stops to recruit me, aren't they? Not that I'm complaining. He completely missed the pixie's exasperated facepalm as Asia and Zenobia led him away from the fighting females. A short while later Issei, Belle, Asia, Kaneko and Zenobia were all playing a board game together, ignoring the sounds to fight in the other room as it continued raging on. Issei moved his piece by reaching around Kaneko, who was once again seated on his lap and distracting him with her soft butt, as Zenobia began to speak. The match is pretty soon, isn't it? Just 5 days, she said musingly. Yeah. We'll have to work on training you guys some more, plus think up some countermeasures, so you don't just brute force everything. Issei responded as someone knocked on the door before entering. Irina, being the newest resident of the Hyoudou home, was the one to walk in. Wow, when I got home Ryo-san and Akeno-san were having a big fight. I was surprised. Then she spotted the board game. Is it the game of life? Can I join? Ooh, it's a devil-style one, too. Looks fun. Asia let out a laugh, making everybody look at her. What is it, Asia? The last. I was just thinking this is fun, Asia said with a smile. Well, it is, but I don't see why the sudden laugh. Issei said with a small smile of his own. I love my current lifestyle. And I love everyone as well. She responded happily. Issei smiled before reaching over and patting the girl's head. I know. So there's no need to worry about the rating game. I'll make sure you guys can win easily. Yes, Asia. You and I are friends. So I will become your sword and defeat anyone who will cause you harm, Zenobia stated confidently. Asia smiled at her and nodded happily. Everybody turned when the door to Issei's room opened, letting out Ryuz, who to Issei's delight was dressed in a bunny outfit. Kaneko adjusted herself slightly when she felt the bulge that had been pressed against her backside for a while, now shifted the sight. However, Ryuz had an odd look on her face. Well, this is sudden, but... She looked at everyone. We are being interviewed. We'll be appearing on a television program in the underworld. Everybody was silent, struck dumb, before a simultaneous what rang out. Issei smiled as he watched his friends try to hide their nerves when they arrived at the television studio. Even though he wasn't being interviewed, he had come along for moral support. And he was glad he did, as Asia and Gasper looked especially nervous. Issei patted the vampire's head as they walked, reassuring him. Putting a hikikomori in front of a television audience seemed a bit cruel, but he was confident he'd get through it. He looked around, taking the studio in. There were posters along the wall, and he was gazing at a well-done one of Ryuz when he heard her speak. Seriurg. So you're here as well. Issei turned to study Seriurg Bale and his peerage as they approached. The other king was in a strong stance even at rest, leaving few openings that Issei could see. His estimation of the young man increased. Seriurg smiled. Ryuz. So you're getting interviewed as well? Yes. Have you already finished, Seriurg? Ryuz asked. No. I'm getting interviewed now, most likely in a different studio from you guys. By the way, I saw your match. At Ryuz's raised eyebrows he continued. No matter how much power you have, you will lose if you get trapped. They will aim for the slight opening with full power. Above all, there are many unknowns in a sacred gear. We wouldn't know what will happen, and what it can do. Compatibility is also important in the game. I have learned many things from the match between you and Sona Citri. Then he turned to Issei. You're the Sekirute that took charge of my cousin by beating Phoenix, right? When Issei nodded he grinned. I'd like to fight you one-on-one someday in a contest of pure power. Issei gazed at Seriurg, studying him, before letting out a smirk. I look forward to it. Seriurg nodded and left. After that interruption they made it to the studio the interview would be in, where Ryuz quickly began discussing the details with the announcer and the staff. At Issei's side Gasper was trembling teary-eyed. I want to go home. Issei sighed and patted the cross-dressing boy's back. One of the staff approached. Are Udo Kiba-san and Akeno Himejima-san here? The two indicated their presence, letting the man continue. There will probably be a number of questions asked for you too. Your popularity is increasing dramatically. Kiba-san with the females, Akeno-san with the males. That's good to know, I guess. Issei said. Akeno smiled at Issei. Fufufu, it doesn't matter how many fans I get. I only have eyes for Ice-kun. No one else will touch me. Issei smiled back at her. Now then, where's Issei Hyoudou-san? The staff member asked. Issei blinked. That would be me. But I'm only here to observe. What? But Lucifer-sama, Leviathan-sama and Azazel-sama set up a separate interview for you. It's with them along with several other important people such as Daihazer Belial-sama, who will speak with you about your point of view of things in the Alliance as a human, along with combat tactics and fighting in general. He looked at Issei hesitantly. Azazel-sama didn't tell you. Issei stared, eye twitching, before saying, it must have slipped his mind through gritted teeth. The staff member looked Issei over. Are you going to wear that? Issei looked himself over. He was wearing black jeans and a crimson shirt with the head of a dragon and a tribal-like pattern on the chest. On his feet he wore a simple pair of red tennis shoes. I guess. Like I said, I wasn't intending to appear on TV. That won't do at all. The man cried. You'll be in a meeting with several important people on a program that will be seen by millions. You can't just wear that. Riaz, who had been listening along with her peerage, approached. Does he have time to go back and change? The clothes he wears for formal events should work fine. She asked, looking concerned. The employee checked his watch anxiously. If he goes now, yes, I think so. I just really don't want to keep such important people waiting. He looked absolutely terrified of the prospect. Issei nodded. Alright, I'll see about getting that done. He turned to the orc. Good luck on your interview, guys. He quickly left, hounded by the nameless employee, as they responded with gratitude. After the recordings everybody was relaxing in the dressing room, letting their bodies decompress after the nerves they'd felt before. So Ice, how was your own taping? Riaz asked as she ate a snack. Issei shrugged. It was interesting. First part was a bit boring to me, talking about my opinion of things as a human, since that's not a viewpoint they hear often. Then it got entertaining though, when we discussed combat. That Daihazer guy has some interesting ideas, he said. Akeno smiled as she sipped some tea. I would hope so. He's known as the Emperor for a reason. He's been undefeated in raiding games since he began. Issei raised an eyebrow. Good to know. As everybody got ready to head home there was a knock on the door before somebody walked in. The girl looked around. Is Aisama here? Issei stepped forward with a smile. It's Cutie-chan. What are you doing here? She blushed furiously while glaring. Again, it's Ravel Phoenix. Why do you insist in calling me that? He shrugged. Because you're cute, why else? So, what are you up to? Ravel blushed harder before pushing a basket out to him. This is a cake. My second eldest brother has a television program in this studio, so I came to give you this since I had the time. Issei graciously took the basket and took a look, seeing a delicious-looking chocolate cake inside. He looked back up at her. Did you make this, Cutie-chan? Why yes. Of course. I promised you I'd make you a cake. She exclaimed, still blushing. Thank you very much, but you could have made it for me when we have tea like we promised. He said with a smile. I didn't want to disturb you, since you'll be training your team for the match with the House of Astaroth soon. So I thought I'd just give you a cake. Why you should be grateful. Ravel said forcefully. Anyway, I'll take my leave. Wait a second. When she stopped, Issei pulled out a knife he had sheathed behind his back, and cut a slice of the cake off and took a bite. He made sure to properly appreciate its flavor and texture before smiling at Ravel. It's delicious, Ravel. Thank you. I'll make sure to eat this at home. I'll definitely make sure to arrange tea with you on a later occasion, if you still want to. Ravel became teary-eyed and once again became beet-red. Aisama, I'll make sure to cheer for the team you train in the next match. Then she hurried away. Issei turned around with a smile, the basket with his cake in his hands, only to sweat drop at the ominous atmosphere being let off by the girls in the room. Issei was once again scowling thanks to Diodora Astaroth. He quickly hid it, however, as he wished his friends luck as they left for their match. They all thanked him and promised to win. Once they were out of sight, however, the scowl returned. Issei was dressed in his combat outfit, his blade and his pistol at his sides. His gauntlet was on his arm, and he had already told Burroughs to ready his usuals for combat. As a final touch he slipped a communications earpiece he'd been provided on. Elle was at his side as usual, looking equally grim. Azazel had informed him discreetly that they suspected that Diodora was aligned with the Cow's Brigade, and as such that he should be prepared to intervene in case the match was attacked. Now he really wished he'd ripped the smug bastard a new asshole when he had a chance. Ready? Azazel asked. Issei nodded curtly, and they headed to the usual VIP room. He waited anxiously for the official beginning of the match, which would hopefully start normally without any issues. He didn't want a battle to begin while his friends were in the middle, no matter how much he would like to be able to personally go in and tear Diodora to shreds. Unfortunately for Issei's hopes, it immediately became obvious that somebody had gone wrong when not only was the battle area surrounded by a barrier as soon as the teams arrived at the designated location, but the VIP room itself was attacked. A few devils in attendance set up a portal that quickly disgorged enemy troops, all of which were devils bearing the emblems of the old Bao faction. They immediately moved to attack, only to get rebuffed immediately by prepared attendees. Soon a full-blown battle was raging. Just like we thought, it's the old Mao faction. Seraphol called as she froze a group of enemies into ice sculptures. Nearby, the god Issei didn't know launched a blast of flame at another group, incinerating them. Azazel spoke next to Issei, who had drawn his gun and was shooting any enemy that got close. We need to stick to the plan and get into the battle area. That's where their leadership is going to be. Seraphol can take care of things here. Right. At the mayor's nod, he quickly grabbed Issei, who was reloading, and pulled him along. Belle was about to follow, but Issei ordered her to stay put and assist with the defense. She reluctantly did so, launching lightning around like candy. A short while later, Issei was moving through what was originally the battle area for the raiding game, gun out and ready to fire at a moment's notice, as he tried to find his friends. Finally, he heard Azazel speak in his earpiece to the others, which meant they'd received theirs from Aten, who'd managed to move to their location, thanks to his special powers. He listened absently as the Fallen explained what was going on and what they knew, having already heard it all before. His eyes widened, however, when he heard Ria's report that Asia had been taken by Daidor. What? That prick got his hands on her. How? Ria sounded incredibly frustrated when she responded. We were distracted by the approaching group of enemy devils, and he swooped in and grabbed her before teleporting away. He foolishly told us where he was going, since he didn't expect us to get out of there to follow him, but thanks to Aten, we were able to do so. Azazel cut in. Listen, Rias, you can't stay there any longer. Leave Asia to us. Soon it'll be a battlefield over there. Followers of the old Mao faction are being continuously teleported in by magic circle. You need to hide in the basement of the shrine. You'll be safe there, so hide until things settle down. We'll deal with the rest of these terrorists. This field is made by a Longinus possessor who belongs to the Cows Brigade. You can somehow enter inside, but it's near impossible to leave from there. It's called Dimension Lost. It exceeds among the sacred gears which are related to barriers in space, so even that geezer, Aten, who specializes in techniques, can destroy it. So you're inside the field as well? Kiba asked. Yes, Issei and I are inside the field. It's a really big field though, so we're pretty far from you guys, he said. Azazel-sensei, I'm sorry, but we will continue to go forward to save Asia. The game is cancelled, but I won't bear it if we don't settle this with Daidor. I need to teach him how foolish it is to take my servant away from me. Ria said firmly, leaving no doubt of what she was about to do. Issei flapped the large red dragon wings he'd manifested to help him get around faster, moving to where the orcs should be. Rias, I'm on my way as well. He told them over the radio. Leave some of him for me, he said dangerously. Understood, Ice. Rias replied. Also, leave your end open. I want to hear what happens, he said. Rias didn't say anything further, but he could hear her giving her team instructions, meaning she'd done what he said. He listened as the group fought through Daidor's peerage, who had been left to impede their progress. He was gratified that Gasper, Kaneko and Zenobia were able to beat the first group easily, thanks to a large vial of Issei's blood he had given the vampire. They had a bit of trouble even so, not able to tell what their opponents were going to do, but they made it through with minor injuries. Zenobia especially impressed Issei with her conviction to get her precious friend back. Rias and Akeno participated in the next battle, easily steamrolling the opponent queen and bishops. It was kind of surprising, actually, how strong those two had gotten after Issei's training. The next part had an unpleasant surprise, however. Freed. Kiba cried with hate and surprise. What's he doing there? He should be dead. Issei shouted in surprise. You're probably wondering what I'm doing here, aren't you, you shitty little devils? Freed said, sounding just as insane as always. I managed to barely survive after I got cut, but Volley picked me up later and took me to the Cows Brigade. They made me all better. Ha ha ha. He laughed madly. Where are the knights that were supposed to be waiting for us, Freed? Zenobia asked dangerously. Oh, them. I ate them. The nut said nonchalantly. What? Issei asked, but Kaneko spoke over him. This person has quit being human, she said, disgusted. Freed began to laugh. But it was different, wrong. It was a sound that should have been impossible to come from a human mouth. Issei couldn't see it, but parts of his body began to swell up. Like I said, the Cows Brigade made me better. They said they'd give me powers. Kai ha 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 ha. And they did it by turning me into a chimera. Soon he had turned into a monster, making everybody that could see him react with horror. Hi ha ha ha. By the way, did you know about Daidora Astor's hobby, that is? It's beautifully crazy, and it makes my heart beat just listening to it. Daidora has a fetish for girls affiliated with the church. Like nuns. He laughed again. He likes to prey on the ones with strong and passionate beliefs. All the servant devils you just defeated were former members of the church. So are the ones at his house. They were all famous nuns and holy maidens from around the world. He seduced the women from the church and made them into his toys. Once he tricked them and made them become excommunicated, he'd kindly take them in before he'd break them. He'd rape and torment them until nothing of their former selves remained. He's been doing it for years. Ha 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 ha. Issei grit his teeth so hard he was sure they were going to break. Thankfully Akeno asked the question he wanted to ask. So Asia? Ha 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 ha. Yes. He purposely injured himself so she'd heal him and get kicked out. Then he planned to swoop in and do what he'd done to all those other women to her. If it hadn't been for you all, he'd have turned her into his broken little doll by now. Issei couldn't take hearing anymore. Kiba. He growled. Shut that bastard up. Issei couldn't see it, but Kiba's gaze was sharp. My pleasure, Ice-kun. What's that? A shitty devil like he thinks he can beat me now that I have this power. Wahahaha. This won't be like the last time, you rotten knight. I'm a lot stronger. I'm an invincible monster. Then you should cease to exist. Kiba said, before disappearing from sight, only to appear behind Fried. An instant later, Fried fell to the ground in pieces. You are too overpowered. You fucking bastard. Fried's head somehow said. Hehehe, well, you won't be able to beat Diodor, or the people behind him. You're all going to die. Hi ha ha ha. He was finally silenced when Kiba stabbed his face with his sword. Ryuz. Issei said over the headset as he increased his speed. Yes. I'm almost there. Go get our Asia back. Of course. Ryuz responded, promptly leading the way to Diodor's location. When the orc arrived in the room they saw a huge circular device carved into the wall with jewels located at various points, with magical symbols and letters gathered all around. Whatever gaze went to, however, was what was at the center of the device. Asia. Zenobia cried, her grip on Durandal tightening as she saw the former nun tied to the center of the device. Thankfully it didn't look like she had any injuries, and her clothes were undisturbed, letting some of their darker fears stop tormenting them. So, you finally came. Diodor said as he appeared from the side of the device, still wearing his gentle smile which fooled no one. Butchu-san. Asia said, looking up at the group. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying. Aya's eyes narrowed at the sight. Diodor. Did you tell Asia what you did? She asked angrily. Yes. I told Asia everything. Fufufu, I wanted to show it to you as well. The moment she had the best expression. The face Asia had when she found out everything was going according to my plan was simply the best. Look, I even left the video of it. Should I play it? She really had a splendid face. The expression of the woman affiliated with the church fulling, no matter how many times I see it, I never get bored of it. Diodorus said malevolently, his smile never changing. Asia began to sob. But it's still lacking. Lacking because she still has hope. Yes, you guys, especially the damned Securite I have no doubt is on his way, are giving her hope. His eyes glinted malevolently. That fallen angel. Rainer. I was supposed to appear and kill Rainer, after she killed Asia once, and I was planning to give her my evil peace then. But you all interrupted, being stronger than I expected. Thanks to that my plan was postponed, but now I finally have Asia, and I can enjoy her to the fullest. Ryuz wasn't the only one to nearly snarl with anger. Be silent, she said. Diodor, however, felt like continuing. Asia is still a virgin, isn't she? I like to train them from virgins, and I'd hate it if she was already used by the Securite. Ah, but taking her from him might be fun. It could be good to forcefully have sex with her while she screams his name. Ryuz. Shut that bastard up. Issei roared over the headset. Yes. Ryuz said automatically, her hands igniting with her power of destruction as she stepped forward, eyes hard. Asia, Ice is on his way for you. We'll rescue you on his behalf in the meantime, so stay strong just a little longer. Asia nodded, sniffling, but Diodor laughed as the orcs set themselves into combat stances. You beat me. With Office's snake inside me, granting me power greater than you can imagine, I wouldn't have any problem defeating you. Everybody, we have our orders. Take this bastard down. Ryuz said seriously. Immediately, the group launched themselves at the laughing devil. Kiba and Zenobia rushed in first, their blades ready to strike. For Asia. Zenobia cried as she swung, Durandal responding to its wielder by focusing its power in ways it never had for her before. Diodor barely managed to dodge, his clothes becoming shredded where the two had swung. He dodged right into a bolt of lightning from Akeno, however, barely managing to get a shield up to block it. It kept him in position long enough from Kaneko to launch herself at him, fist pulled back to swing. He was about to block again when he found himself unable to move, Gaspers glaring at him and keeping him in place. This meant that Kaneko's punch couldn't possibly miss, and it smashed into his face with the force of a Mack truck, the energy she'd added to the strike, just adding to the damage inflicted. Diodor was sent flying into the wall, but before he could move a large ball of Rhea's power of destruction slammed into his chest, pinning him against the wall as it tried to eat through him. It took him a few seconds, but he managed to dispel the ravening energy with very minor injuries. He immediately put up another barrier to block more of Akeno's lightning. The fight continued in this vein for a while longer, with the orc landing heavy hits that nevertheless caused little damage. It got worse when Daiodora fought back. He launched heavy attacks of demonic magic that they had dodged at all costs, as Kaneko found when she was hit and was launched into a pillar, going straight through it. See? You can't defeat me. With Office's power, I can do anything. Daiodora proclaimed grandly as he launched an attack at Gasper, but it continued making him stop, making Kiba rush in to move him out of the way. Then we'll just have to take that power away from you, Ryuz said grimly. Oh? And how do you intend to do that? Daiodora asked. Ryuz pulled something out of her pocket and threw it to Zenobia. Zenobia. Like we planned. Zenobia caught the object and launched herself at Daiodora, dodging frantically as her opponent launched more attacks. Take this, she cried, throwing a small object at Daiodora at point-blank range, making it hit him in the chest. The effect was immediate, as the aura of power that Daiodora had for the entirety of the fight disappeared. What did you do to me? What was that? Daiodora cried out. No clue, Ryuz said. Ice called it a Takaja stone. He thought it might work on you. Kaneko. Daiodora turned to find Kaneko once again in front of him, ready to strike. He didn't have time to react before her punch slammed into him, the loud sound of bone cracking ringing in the air as his nose shattered, even as he was launched into a wall, which collapsed on top of him, burying him in rubble. Zenobia approached the rubble. We should make sure the monster is down permanently. Ryuz shook her head. Later. Let's make sure Asia is alright first. The swordswoman nodded and followed the redeed to the former nun. Asia, it's alright. You're safe, Ryuz said, smiling gently. Asia smiled back tremulously. Why yes. Zenobia pulled back her sword to cut through her bindings, bringing it down. She stared in shock, however, when it hit them with a dull clanging sound and did nothing further. What? She tried again with the same result. Soon everybody was trying to remove the bindings holding Asia to the device and failing. Finally they all stood back, trying to think about what else they could do. I don't know what this is, Akeno said, studying the inconveniences. We might need something specialized to cut through it. Asia was looking despondent when Kiba perked up. Oh, I think I might have what we need. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a green dagger. What's that? Asper asked. Ice-kun gave it to me a while ago. Said it cut through barriers and bindings. It simply called it Jade Dagger. He experimentally cut at the binding at Asia's wrist to find to their pleasant surprise that it cut through. Before long Asia was finally free and being embraced by Zenobia. Asia. I'm so glad you're alright. If something were to happen to you, The tough swordswoman let a few tears leak out, which were promptly wiped away by Asia. I wouldn't go anywhere, since I-san, Zenobia-san and everybody else will protect me, she said gently. Of course, Zenobia said, hugging her tightly. But you-san, everyone, thank you very much for doing this for me, Asia said with a bow, making everybody smile. Asia. It's okay for you to not call me Butchu at home, you know. You can think of me as your older sister, Ryuz said as she hugged Asia. Ah. Yes, Ryuz-sama. Asia cried, hugging her tightly back. I'm so glad. I'm so happy that Asia-senpai returned. Gasper cried as Kaneko pet his head, a smile on her face. Ryuz, I'm pretty much there. See you in a second, Issei said over the communicator, relief in his voice. Yes. Ryuz looked down at Asia. Ice is on his way for you. Let's go out and see him so we can go home, okay? Asia nodded eagerly. Okay. But first, I need to pray. She began to pray to the sky, eyes closed with a smile on her face. What did you pray for? Zenobia asked with a smile. It's a secret, Asia said shyly. She began to walk towards them, looking excited, when there was a sudden flash of light. When everybody could see again, Asia was surrounded by pillars of light. When they disappeared, Asia disappeared with them. What? Ryuz exclaimed. I don't know how you stopped the device, but now the plan needs to be readjusted. Damn brats, a voice said from above. Ryuz looked up, finding a man floating above them, having come through the open area the ceiling should have been. He had brown hair covering part of his face, light armor, and a dark cape. Who are you? She asked. It's my first time meeting you, sister of the annoying fake Mau. My name is Shalba Beelzebub, the true successor of the great true Mau Beelzebub. I'm different from the relative of the fake one you fought earlier, the man said. It's annoying that Astaroth failed to defeat you. He will be disciplined, especially after he used Office's snake without permission, alerting the enemy as to our intentions. Seems I'll have to do it myself. He suddenly, somehow, had a spear of light in his hand. The light looked just like the one that had made Asia vanish. Ryuz felt cold. That could only mean. Then she heard a sound that made her freeze and whirl around. Asia. Issei was standing at the entrance to the room, eyes riveted on the spot Asia had disappeared from. His eyes looked haunted, like something only recently mended had broken again. Ah, the Sekiryute. Excellent. Now I can eliminate him with you, sister of the fake Mao. Just like that stupid servant of yours. Shalba said, smiling cruelly. After all, every blood relative of the current Mao must be destroyed. The pile of rubble Diodora was undershifted before Diodora made his way out of it. He was unsteady on his feet, but they saw him remove a bottle of Phoenix Tears and quickly drink it. He stood back up, more steady as his nose mended with the crack. Even the power he'd received from Office's snake made a return, the Phoenix Tears apparently counteracting the Dakaja stone. He wiped the blood from his face and glared hatefully. I'm going to kill all of you, he said lowly. At least now no one will have Asia since I can't. If you manage to kill them, your punishment for your foolishness will be lowered. Shalba lied through his teeth, not that the Astaroth noticed, wrapped up in his fury at his enemies as he was. Riaz was trembling with grief and fury, glaring with all her rage. You think you can defeat all of us, especially Ice, on your own? Especially after what you dared to do to my servant? You're deluded. I swear on my name you will be crushed. Ah, but we're not alone. We did hear about how much of a hindrance the Sekiryuche could be, so I brought assistance. Shalba said, before pointing up. Riaz looked up at the sky and her eyes widened. Thousands of enemy devils began to appear from hundreds of portals to the underworld directly above them. However, what drew the most attention were the monsters that accompanied them. Horrible, disturbing creatures more wretched than Freyd had been. They came in all shapes and sizes, apparently made of patchworks of different beings. All, however, looked dangerous and deadly. It might be overkill, Shalba said conversationally. But after you're dead, they can be turned on the rest of our enemies. Soon, the underworld will have new rulers. But you won't be around to see it, of course. You're going to die here. While all this was happening, Issei was still staring at the place Asia had been, his mind struggling to come to terms with what had happened. Asia was gone. Asia was gone. Asia was gone. And with that realization came a flood of images, memories flooding from badly healed scars. A beautiful girl with long dark hair smiling a loving, blood-filled smile up at him, as the light left her eyes while he held her in his arms, a gaping wound in her chest, testament to what ended her short life. An older man standing against an army of monsters, dignified even as he stared death in the eye, Issei's last sight of him his back as he blocked the way to the enemy. A young girl of 12 running after Issei, eyes full of trust even as she was launched into the air from an explosion right next to her and landed with a crack, her neck bent wrongly. A young man in soldier's garb, his face smiling as he saluted him before heading out to his death. A beautiful girl with brown hair and a Heim-style cut and a sword in her hands, fighting a beautiful nightmare alongside a large black American who lead an army, buying him time to accomplish his goal, his last impression of her the encouraging smile on her face, and the cry for him to go. As these images assaulted him something finally broke, and Drake roared as he felt his partner let go of his restraints for the first time since an apocalyptic battle none in this world knew of. You took her away from me. Riaz whirled around once again from where she'd stood staring defiantly at Shalba to stare at Issei, sure he could not have done what she thought he did. Suddenly, however, she and her peerage were sent to their knees from the enormous pressure emanating from Issei's form. She forced her head up to see him, and she saw that his eyes were glowing, crimson energy escaping them like smoke. You have ended one of the purest souls I have ever met. All for your own hatred and ambition. I will have retribution. Shalba had moved back, staring in shock, while Diodora trembled in spite of himself. That's impossible. You can't be projecting. You're supposed to simply be a lowly human with a sacred gear. What are you? Shalba cried. I am the Defiant One, guardian of choice. He who walks the middle path. The end of tyrants and despoilers. Those who stand against me, be they god, man, or demon, will fall. After his proclamations, Issei took a step forward, and such was his presence that the entire area seemed to shake subtly with the impact of his foot. Shalba seemed to regain himself, though he was sweating and his eyes were slightly wild. It doesn't matter. You cannot kill us along with all the troops we brought. It doesn't matter what you are, you will be drowned under a tide of bodies. Issei looked up, seeing the mass of enemies that blocked out the sky. He brought his gauntleted arm up, swiped the screen with his finger, and pressed a single button. A blinding light appeared among the cloud of enemies, and Ria's eyes widened as she saw what had appeared. Some distance away, Azazel, Serzich's and Tanin were with the short girl that was Office's current form. Serzich's had only just recently finished eliminating Crucius Madius, one of the leaders of the old Mao faction. They had been about to launch themselves at the mass of enemies that had gathered, worried about the teens at the location, when they were stopped by the bright light of Issei's summoning. All three stared in shock, and even Office's eyebrows rose. It can't be. Azazel breathed. That isn't who I think it is it? Tanin asked. But it disappeared a long time ago. Serzichus said, shocked. The last time it was seen was at the death of God. Yes, back then, it announced his death before leaving, not to be seen again. Azazel said, a note of trepidation in his voice as he gazed at the figure hovering among the crowd of old Mao forces. It was large, wearing a white robe with a black and white overdressing. Wings of purest white trailed from its back. Its head was a bleached white skull wearing a tight skull hat from which curled blonde hair escaped. From the sleeves of its robe the hands of a skeleton escaped, clutching an odd horn with arcane symbols which it had brought up to its non-existent lips. It looks slightly different than I remember, but it is undoubtedly the trumpeter, Surzichus said gravely. Back in the shrine, Shalba was staring up at the summoned being in shocked fear. He almost flinched when Issei spoke up to it. Deal with them. Everybody watched as the trumpeter let a low, discordant note escape his horn. The effect was immediate. Every enemy that had appeared above the shrine fell from the sky, lifeless, as though a switch had been thrown. Everybody watched as a rain of bodies fell like a sudden squall. Soon, the only thing left in the air was the trumpeter, and shortly afterwards it disappeared in another flash of light. Shalba turned, eyes wide, back to Issei, who continued to stand in place, glowing eyes glaring at him. Diodora tried to run. A dark stain had appeared at his crotch, and he was whimpering pathetically. You are not going anywhere, worm. Immediately Diodora fell to the ground, struggling as though he had been tied by invisible ropes. Once that was dealt with, Issei turned back to his enemy. However, he seemed to finally notice the kneeling devils looking up at him, awe and slight fear on their faces. Get up. You need not kneel to me. Immediately they felt the pressure that was keeping them down ease. They could still feel it, but it wasn't so heavy they could not move, at least to them. Rias swallowed. Normally displays of power aroused devils, as Issei had proven with them multiple times. This time, however, they didn't feel it. At least not now. They undoubtedly would later, though, but for now they simply felt awe and trepidation. Rias felt herself shiver. It was hard to reconcile the Issei she'd known for months with the being of power standing before her. It occurred to her that she served this entity. It was a starkly different thing to realize the true difference between them, compared to when she thought him powerful, but had been treated like an equal. Now there was no doubt he was as far above her as her brother was, if not possibly more. And while he had left the path open for her to leave his service, she had not taken it. Issei turned back to Shalba. What will you do now? Now that your forces are fallen and you are left alone. Will you try to run, like the wriggling worm? I don't think so. I think you'll foolishly fight like the rabid animal you are. Shalba snarled at Issei in spite of his fear. Who do you think you're speaking to? I am a descendant of the Termag Beelzebub, rightful ruler of the underworld. Do you think I care? Only the worthless care so much about their entitlements. The true powers struggle, either to prove themselves worthy, or to make themselves so. You have never struggled. You have never fought for your power. You only demand. That makes you the lesser to Surzichus and Seraphol in every way. Damn you. Shalba howled, launching an attack of multiple powerful spears of light at Issei. Issei didn't move. He didn't even twitch. He simply stayed still, and the spears shattered on a barrier that appeared inches away from him. Shalba screamed again and launched more. The same thing happened, again and again. No matter what Shalba did, he could not touch Issei. Finally the devil had enough. Very well, if I cannot kill you, I will at least eliminate the sister of that usurper Surzichus. So saying, he launched a huge spear of light at Rias. Rias gasped, but she had no time to dodge. She instinctively raised her arms to protect herself, but knew it would likely do nothing. She was surprised, however, when Issei appeared in front of her and caught the spear in his hand. The energy tried to burn him, but it did nothing. He gazed up as Shalba held up the spear, and broke the energy weapon by clenching his fist, making it scatter in all directions. Shalba finally had enough and tried to run away as well. Issei pointed a finger at him and launched two small discs of crimson energy at him. They cut through Shalba's wings, making him scream in pain and drop to the ground. It's time you paid for all you've done. I have no doubt your soul is drowning in sin. It's time you were put down. For everybody's sake. Issei stepped forward and outstretched his hand. Shalba crawled weakly backwards, sputtering. I am. Beelzebub. Not any longer. Fire burst along Shalba's form, the flames white, and consuming him quickly. Shalba screamed, writhing on the ground. The flames consumed him quickly, and soon he stopped struggling, lying still as his body was turned to ash. The orc could only watch as the execution happened. None of them said a word. Then Issei turned to the whimpering form of Diodora. He walked over to him and drew his sword, the holy energy clinging to seeming to be more intense than it had been before. Now for you, little worm. Diodora struggled harder. Please, and no. Have mercy. Issei tilted his head to the side. Mercy. Issei released Diodora from whatever bound him, but before he could move Issei stabbed him through the shoulder with his blade. Diodora screamed. Did your victims beg for mercy? The other shoulder was stabbed, and the screaming increased. Did those you destroyed cry out for salvation? This time it was a leg. Tears were trailing down Diodora's cheeks as he choked on his screams. I hate monsters like you. The blade was now embedded in Diodora's other leg. You corrupt, and torture, and rape. The orc flinched when the sword stabbed Diodora between his legs. The screams became higher in pitch. I despise rapists. Finally Issei moved the sword over Diodora's heart. Right before he was going to stab the sobbing devil, however, Rias stepped forward. Ice. Rhea said, unable to keep her voice from shaking slightly. Issei turned his head to her, sword still in position. It might be best to leave him alive. He is the brother of Amayu, and despite what he's done, it might cause you problems if you kill him. Issei stared at her for a moment, and Rhea thought he was going to listen to her, when he suddenly stabbed down with his blade, ending Daidora's life. I don't care. Rhea bit her lip and nodded slightly. Issei turned and started making his way to the entrance of the shrine. The others followed him out. He was moving slowly yet steadily when a new voice cut in. Well, seems like you had a bit of an altercation. Came when they arrived outside. Issei's eyes narrowed. Volley. Ollie nodded to Issei as he entered, followed by Biku, and the holy sword wielder Issei had met when he encountered Kuroka, not acting perturbed by the fact that he was projecting. Issei Hyoudou. I see you've had some trouble today. Issei pointed his sword at Volley. You are with the Cow's brigade. Tell me, were you party to this attack? Volley shook his head. No, this had nothing to do with my team. I was in the area for unrelated reasons. What reasons? I was searching the dimensional gap for something. Good thing for you I did, or I wouldn't have been able to retrieve something of yours. Volley said, and Biku stepped forward carrying a familiar form. Asia. Issei breathed. His eyes stopped glowing and the power he was radiating stopped, but it was the fact that he was no longer projecting that told them all he was back to normal. Asia. Zenobia cried, leading the others to crowd around the unconscious former nun. Biku set her down on the ground as the others gathered. She's breathing. Kiba cried, and everyone started letting out shouts of relief. Issei was still staring from where he had been standing, sword limp in his hand. Then his gaze turned to Volley. How? When we were in the dimensional gap she just appeared before us. It's a good thing she did, otherwise she'd have been exposed to nothingness and died pretty quickly. She should be fine though. Volley explained. Issei closed his eyes, before to Volley's surprise, he bowed deeply to his draconic rival. Volley, I owe you more than I can say. Thank you. Volley looked at him, perplexed, before grinning. Just promise to give me a great fight one day, and you can consider us settled. Issei nodded as he straightened up. He moved towards Asia. Asia. Asia opened her eyes slowly. I-san. Issei smiled in profound relief as Zenobia hugged the girl while crying hysterically. Asia. Huh? Zenobia-san. What's wrong? It's hard to breathe. Asia. Asia. You and I will always be friends. Friends forever. That's why please don't leave me again. Zenobia cried. Asia gently patted the former exorcist's head. Yes, we will always be friends. Issei sighed, feeling his heart ease. Then Volley approached him. Hyoudou, look up. You'll see why I came. He said, pointing up. Issei looked to where he was pointing. With a crack, a gigantic hull appeared in the sky, and from it came a truly gargantuan dragon. That's what I wanted to see, Issei Hyoudou. Volley said with a smirk. Great Red. Issei said softly as he gazed at the magnificent sight of the crimson dragon swimming through the air, content and uncaring of the conflicts happening around it. The one I want to fight the most. The Apocalypse Dragon Great Red, who is called DXD, Dragon of Dragon. I want to become the true God Emperor of White Dragon. It would look good if the White is a rank below the Red when there is the ultimate class for Red, right? That's why I will become one. One day when I defeat Great Red. Volley said, eyes shining. Great Red. It has been a while. Issei turned to find a young girl in a one-piece outfit standing nearby. Who's that? He asked Volley. That's Office, the Ouroboros dragon. She's the head of the Cow's brigade. Volley responded with a smile. Issei blinked. Not what I was expecting. Office mimed shooting the huge red dragon with her finger. I will definitely get my hands on Silence. Then a large impact happened, and Issei turned to find Azazel and Tannen standing there. It's you two. Issei. Azazel said, nodding cordially while eyeing him carefully. Then both he and Tannen turned to see Great Red. How nostalgic to see Great Red again. Tannen said gruffly. Oh, I didn't realize you'd fought him. Azazel said. I didn't. He completely ignored me. Tannen sighed. It's been a while, Azazel. Volley said. Did you defeat Crucerius Smodius? Yes, though Cersichus was the one who took care of him. I don't know what happened with Shalba though. Azazel said. He's been dealt with. Issei stated curtly. Azazel eyed him again, but decided not to ask at that moment. Well then, Office, it looks like the old Mau faction is essentially finished, now that none of the descendants are around to lead them. Yes, it seems that way. She responded. Among you guys, the group with power apart from Volley, is the faction assembled by the humans who are either the descendants of heroes or sacred gear possessors. I think they were called Hero Faction, right? He asked. Office said nothing, so Azazel took a stance, pointing his spear at her. Now then, Office, shall we fight? Office, however, simply turned around. I will go home. Wait. Office. Tannen shouts, spreading his wings. Office turned to him with a creepy smile. Tannen. The Dragon Kings are gathering once again. This will turn interesting. Then she was gone. We will also leave. Volley said, heading into the dimensional cut the man wielding the swords made. Issei Hyoudou, do you want to defeat me? I wouldn't mind it, but I have other things I want to do. Other goals. Me too. There are those I want to defeat beside you. This is weird. Looks like the current Sekiryuchi and the current Hakuryuku have dreams and objectives more important than the destined fight. Maybe you and I are weird dragons. But something like that might be good at times. But one day. Issei smirked. Yes, one day we'll settle things. Volley nodded and headed through the portal. Deku waved goodbye as well, but the sword wielder stopped. Yudo Kibakun, Zenobia-san. I am the wielder of the Holy King's sword, and the descendant of Arthur Pendragon. Call me Arthur. One day, let's have a battle of holy swords. Goodbye. Once they were gone, Issei sighed and took Asia's hand. Come on, Asia. Let's go home. Asia smiled radiantly. Yes, let's go home. Several days later, Issei was smiling as he prepared himself for his three-legged race with Asia at his side, glad things had calmed down. Azazel had kept them appraised of the situation as it developed after the fight. After the death of Shalba and Crucery, the old Meu faction completely fell apart, especially as Volley had declined their request that he lead them as Lucifer. The remnants of the faction had gone to ground, but nobody considered them a threat anymore. Ajukable Zebub had some trouble dealing with the fallout of his brother being a member of the Chaos Brigade. It was thanks to the other three Meu that he was still in his position, but the House of Astaroth had lost a lot of standing. As Azazel had explained, losing Ajuka would have been a massive blow to the Meu, as he was a technological genius who headed their research and development. The remaining Young Devil raiding games had been postponed, but not cancelled. The reason for the decision to keep them going was to help morale, as the matches of Gremory vs Bale and Citri vs Aguirres were much anticipated. Issei shook himself from his thoughts as he got into position at the starting line, Asia at his side. Around them his friends and family had gathered to cheer them on. Soon enough the starting pistol went off and the two started moving, showing excellent coordination and rhythm to the everybody's cheers. The small smile he wore widened as he heard everybody shout encouragement. It was moments like these that made life worth living. He turned to look at Asia, who had a look of concentration on her face. Asia. Why yes? She asked as she kept focus. Stay by my side forever. I won't allow you to leave me again. Asia began to look like she might cry, but nodded and continued running. Before long, the gun at the finish line went off. We won. Asia cheered happily. Issei hugged her laughing. A short while later the two were drinking some juice after being congratulated by their loved ones. Rias had been the last to leave after whispering something to Asia, who blushed. Asia looked up at Issei. I-san. He turned to her, about to ask what she needed, when he was surprised by the sensation of her lips on his. After the short kiss, Asia tilted her head adorably with a smile. I-san, I love you, and I will always stay by your side. Issei could only stare before smiling. A couple of days after the school sports festival, Rias was walking down a hallway to a meeting room in the underworld, Akeno at her side. She had suddenly been told that her presence was requested by Azazel, and had thus arrived promptly. She knocked on the door and upon hearing Azazel tell her to enter opened the door only to freeze when she saw who was waiting for her. Not only was Azazel there, but so were Serziches and Serafol, along with Michael and Gabriel. She couldn't imagine what could have brought them all together again, much less call for her. Serziches offered his sister a smile. Rias, come in and take a seat. No need to worry. We just have a few questions for you. Rias shook off her trepidation and did as told, Akeno standing behind her loyally, though obviously unnerved as well. Michael was the one to start things off. Rias-san, we summoned you here to ask you some questions about the recent sighting of the trumpeter that occurred during the last old Meu faction attack. This is a matter of some importance to all of us. That entity has not been sighted since God's death, where it let out a single piercing note at the moment he died before disappearing. As you were in the area, we want you to tell us what you know about it. Rias bit her lip. She obviously wasn't going to lie, but she didn't want to betray Issei either. Though they apparently already knew that the trumpeter had appeared, so there wasn't much else she could do. Though she was on the fence as to whether inform them of the other thing that happened. Finally she spoke. I summoned it. It came from his gauntlet, just like all his other summons. The others looked at each other. Serafol's eyebrows had raised. Really? Ice-chan is strong, but is he really powerful enough to control something like that? Rias glanced at Akeno for support, who sighed softly and nodded. She then turned back to the leaders. I don't know how powerful he is, but... She looked at Serziches directly in the eye, wanting to underscore the seriousness of what she was about to tell them. He was projecting, Ani-sama. More than one set of eyes sharpened. Projecting? Are you certain? Gabriel asked gently, her tone showing that she wasn't doubting Rias, just seeking confirmation. Rias nodded. Yes. When we thought Asia had died, something changed. He began projecting rather than speaking normally. Azazel leaned forward. Tell us everything, he said, Rias. It might be important. Every word. Rias proceeded to do so with Akeno's help. It wasn't hard, as the memory was burned into her mind quite vividly. When she was done, everybody sat in silence for a bit, thinking over what she'd said. The defiant one. Azazel said, musingly. I find the other titles he called himself interesting. Surziches said. Indeed. Gabriel said softly. He who walks the middle path. But middle of what? I like guardian of choice. Seraphol said with a smile. Sounds properly heroic. And apparently those who stand against him will be taken out, no matter what they are. That could be rather worrisome. Michael said. Riaz couldn't help but cut in at that. I don't think you need to worry about that, Michael-sama. That's not the type of man he is. Michael gazed at her before nodding. Yes, my previous interactions with him lead me to agree. His other statements also tell me he is not somebody I would be inclined to stand against anyway. I'm happy he thinks so highly of us. Surziches said. Hopefully that means he will continue to be amicable to us. Riaz nodded. I think that as long as you continue as you have been, you don't have anything to worry about from him. That's good. Gabriel said with a smile. Still, we'll need to keep a close eye on him now. Even if we may like him, he's still a powerful being not affiliated with any of us. No previous Sekiryuche has been able to project, after all. Azazel said. He then turned thoughtful. I wonder what he did to be able to get that ability. Riaz shook her head. I don't know, and I don't intend to ask him. He'll tell us on his own time. Wise thinking. Gabriel said. I look forward to what he does next. Still, this does not change the fact that he is able to command the Trumpeter, one of heaven's greatest forces. What shall we do about that? They all thought about it before Surziches finally sighed. I don't think there's much we can do but what we've already set by keeping an eye on him. We do not know how he came to be in command of it. It would be best not to antagonize him by asking. We'll simply have to bide our time and, as Riaz said, wait for him to tell us of his own volition. The others nodded, and Surziches turned to his sister. Thank you, Riaz. You may leave now. Riaz nodded and got up. She was almost at the door when Seraphol spoke again, looking uncommonly serious. Riaz-chan, keep us updated, okay? Riaz hesitated, but Seraphol continued before she could speak. I'm not saying break his trust, but let us know about anything you think would be alright. Then she grinned. I bet you're happy though. Riaz looked at Seraphol, confused. Happy? Why? Seraphol chuckled while Surziches looked exasperated. If he's able to project, he isn't exactly human. That would erase some opposition due to taboos, wouldn't it? Riaz stared at the Leviathan before suddenly blushing as she realized what she meant. She cleared her throat and stuttered. Why yes, that's quite fortunate, she said, face red as her hair. If that's all. She quickly turned and left. As she hurried down the hallway, Akeno keeping pace behind and laughing softly, she admitted to herself that she was looking forward to the implications of what Seraphol had pointed out. Riaz bit her lip slightly as she walked into the lounge of the Hyoudou home, where she knew Belle was watching TV. Behind her walked the rest of the Orc bar Issei, who was out for a walk, all wanting answers from the pixie. It had been over a week since the sports festival, but none of those who had been at the battle previous could shake the memory of Issei projecting in rage. Asia and Rena, who hadn't witnessed it for themselves, had still heard plenty about it, and so were intensely curious. They walked into the lounge only to stop as they realized that Belle wasn't alone. Elena-san. What are you doing here? The gorgeous succubus was sitting beside the small fairy, occasionally popping popcorn into her mouth as she watched whatever was on the screen, somehow making even the simple act of eating a snack sensual. She turned her head to Riaz with a slightly raised eyebrow. This is my master's home. Do you think Belle is the only one who he lets wander freely? Most of us in his service simply stay put till summoned because of how distinctive we look and how that could cause him problems. I've decided to spend some time out and about though, being one of the ones who can blend in the easiest. The only rule my master has given me is that I'm not to seduce his parents. She pouted slightly. I really find that unfair. It's not as though they wouldn't enjoy it. Belle rolled her eyes while continuing to watch the action movie that was playing. You've been whining about that for ages. Slut. Elena tossed her hair with a sultry smirk. And proud of it, dear. So, is it likely that we'll see some of the others wandering around now as well? Kiba asked. Elena nodded. Very likely, yes, now that master has a large home that can accommodate them without drawing undue attention. So I would prepare myself for the eventuality if I were you. Riaz nodded. Very well. Thank you for the warning. She went silent, thinking of how to proceed as Irina, Zenobia and Gasper, who had never met the blonde, studied her with interest. She was never sure how she felt about Elena. On the one hand, the woman had been nothing but supportive of her desire to be with Issei. On the other, Elena already had sex with him regularly, something that Riaz found herself desiring quite strongly. She did not kid herself that they didn't do it anymore just because Asia and her slept in his bed. So she was also intensely jealous of the older woman. She was shaken from her thoughts when Irina addressed the succubus. So, who are you exactly? You said you serve Ice-kun. Elena studied the reincarnated angel, her gaze wandering along the girl's body in a way that had the chestnut-haired girl squirming slightly. To answer your question, my dear, I am Elena, Master Ice's loyal succubus. She let her wings and tail appear, smirking at Irina's look of surprise. I serve him in any capacity he requires of me. That's generally on my back underneath him. She chuckled sensually to herself at the blushes her comment drew from the teenagers gathered in front of her. Irina was redder than the others. Why you mean you, and him. Elena stretched in a way that highlighted her perfect curves, smirking saucily at the blushing girl. Oh yes. Quite often, and wherever and however he wants. He's quite insatiable. Now Belle chuckled and nodded. That's one way to put it. Most of the girls were blushing intensely at the thought, and Kiba and Gasper had trouble keeping their eyes off the still stretching seductors. Irina, however, seemed to be having trouble of a different kind. Ice-kun. One could practically see the steam escaping from her ears. Suddenly, her wings appeared from her back and began to blink between their normal white and pitch black, as she placed her hands on her cheeks, obviously thinking about things she shouldn't be. Rias quickly moved in front of Irina and snapped her fingers in front of the girl's face. Hey, Irina-san, focus on me. Don't think about what you're thinking about, just focus on me. Look in my eyes. Veridide really couldn't afford to let Michael's subordinate fall like this while she was around. It definitely wouldn't look good. Irina blinked and stared at Rias. The blinking of her wings slowed before stopping back on white. Then her eyes went white as she realized what happened. I almost fell, didn't I? Rias smiled. Just a bit. Elena smirked as Belle laughed. That's our boss. Able to make an angel fall from lust without even being present. Irina blushed, mortified, as Asia patted her back in understanding. Rias cleared her throat. In any case, that's not what we're here about. We actually came to talk to you, Belle. Belle cocked her head and looked at Rias. Talk to me. About what? Akeno stepped forward. Belle-sensei, I'm sure you heard about what happened with Ice-kun during the ordeal with Diodora Astaroth, right? Both Belle's and Elena's faces closed off remarkably quickly. I did. Belle said evenly, eyeing the teens arrayed in front of her. Rias hurried to reassure them. We don't want you to break his confidence or anything. We just want to know more. Both Belle and Elena were silent for a bit before the succubus looked at the pixie, who sighed. There's not really much to say. Boss has been through a lot. Belle hesitated before sighing. Too much, really. And because of you, it started again. They all looked surprised at the fairy as Elena ran a finger along her superior's back between her wings soothingly. Akeno was especially stricken by those words. Belle-sensei. Belle sagged. We fought so hard. For so long. We killed so many enemies. And lost so many friends. Boss went beyond anything anybody could have expected. Everybody was silent, letting her speak. The usually jovial pixie didn't look animated and happy at the moment. She simply looked tired. We thought that when it ended, we could all rest. We thought Boss could finally enjoy his life, at least for a few years, before something came up. Then her eyes fell upon Rias, who was biting her lip. And then he got involved with you. And it didn't seem like anything big at first. A few small skirmishes to help some new friends. Nothing life-threatening or world-ending. But it continued growing. Escalating. And now he's a target again. Now people know who he is. And those brief peaceful days are over, possibly for good. Belle sighed. And I know, intellectually, that I shouldn't. I know it's not really your fault. I know these fights have been important. But that doesn't change the fact that sometimes I can't help but hate you all for it. Nobody said anything, they only sound the noise from the still playing TV. Rias turned her head away, unable to look at the one she considered a friend after those damning words. Akeno had tears in her eyes, fists clenched at her sides. Asia's tears flowed freely down her cheeks as she held her hands to her chest. Gasper was hugging himself, sniffling, as Kaneko patted his head gently, her cat ears drooping. Kiba was looking down at the ground, posture slack. Zenobia looked calm, except for the fact that she had her eyes clenched shut. It was Irina who stepped forward before, after a moment, bowing deeply to Belle. I'm sorry, Belle-san. Belle gave a bitter smile. Nothing to do about it now. I know Boss doesn't feel the way I do. He's happy to help. The look she gave them all after that was slightly haunted. Make sure that what happened with that asshole Diodora doesn't happen again though. As you saw, Boss can't handle losing anybody else. And I don't want him to anyway. He's lost enough as it is. The orc nodded or made sounds of agreement, drying their tears. They were just in time, as a new voice chimed in. What's going on? They turned to find Issei standing in the door, eyeing everybody. Nothing Ice. Just, girl talk. Rias said, caught by surprise. Girl talk, huh? He raised an eyebrow. In that case, why are Kiba and Gasper here? Rias blushed in embarrassment as Issei chuckled. Belle flew over to Issei and hugged him and kissed his cheek, acting perfectly happy once again. Welcome back, boss. We were just talking about random shit. Me and the slut had fun messing with them. Right. Elena chuckled and nodded. Yes. We almost got the angel to fall. It was fun. Irina blushed at the memory. Issei looked at the two mocks sternly. No making angels fall. Belle let out an exaggerated "oh" as Issei flopped down onto the couch, letting an arm settle around his succubus's shoulders, which made her smile happily and snuggle into his side. She eyed the orc girls, who all burned with jealously, smirking. "So, anything good on TV?" The others sat down to enjoy some downtime, the heavy subjects left, for now. Issei took a bit of rice from his bento during lunch at school. Around him were seated Mitsuda, Motohama and Asia. It had been a nice calm day, something he enjoyed a lot. Motohama swallowed some of his fried eggs before speaking. "The school trip is coming up soon, if I'm right. We need to decide on our group." Issei nodded. "Oh yeah, that's right. We're going to Kyoto. Sounds like it'll be fun. We need to get in a group of 3 or 4 people, right?" Mitsuda nodded. "Yeah. It's because the place we'll be sleeping in is for groups of that size. The 3 of us will obviously need to make up a group. Everybody else hates us, after all." Issei grumbled at that. It annoyed him somewhat that despite the fact that he hadn't done anything overtly perverted in a while, the only girls in his class that got along with him were Asia, Aika, Irina and Zenobia. "So, perverted trio, do you want to pair up with our group for the trip? It should be paradise for you, since you'll be with 4 beautiful girls, after all," Aika said, her glasses glinting as she grinned lecherously. "Well, it definitely is a great trio if we take you out of the equation," Mitsuda said, nodding to himself. Aika promptly smacked him over the head. "Shut it, you." The female pervert huffed before turning to Issei. "Anyway, Hyoudou, don't you want to go with Asia to protect her from any other men? Ice-san, will you pair up with us?" Asia added in hopefully. Is smiled gently at the former nun. "Of course, Asia." He pulled her into a hug, which she happily returned. Aika pressed her glasses up her nose. "You guys became even closer after the sports festival, huh? You're barely apart and keep looking at each other." Issei patted Asia's head with a smile. "Of course. We're always together, right?" He then opened his mouth with an ah, as Asia fed him his sausage with a smile. "Yes, I will always be with Ice-san," she said happily. Issei chewed as he thought about what Aika said. After the scare with Asia's apparent death and the kiss she gave him after their 3-legged race, Issei had taken to thinking about her more often. His previous brotherly feelings for her had been replaced by something more intimate. One thing was for sure, he was now determined to stay with Asia for the rest of their lives, one way or another. "Alright then, in that case, we'll pair up with you guys," Aika said. "We can't leave Asia to anybody else, since she's too pure and can't decline other people's requests. And this way, Zenobia Kai and Irina-san will feel better as well, right?" Zenobia paused in eating her super-sized bento to nod an answer. "Yes, I also want to be with Ice. It'll be more fun with Ice-kun." Irina chimed in happily. "Shit. Why is Ice the only one getting popular like this? Man, God is so cruel. I also want to be hugged by Bishoujo." Mitsuda whined pathetically. Issei just chuckled, wondering how he'd react if he knew about Elena. As the others discussed what they were going to do on the school trip, Issei sat back and enjoyed the atmosphere. In the club room after school, the orc was gathered and drinking tea as they talked. "So, the school trip for the second years is coming up," Rias said musingly. "Where did you 2 go last year, Rias, Akeno?" Issei asked. "We also went to Kyoto. I explored quite a bit of the city with Butcher," Akeno responded. Rias nodded. "Yes. But there were only a limited number of places you can visit within 3 days and 4 nights. You should think of going everywhere and make a plan beforehand and move accordingly. If you don't include the time to eat and for sightseeing, you will regret it. You will mainly get around from one place to the other by using buses and trains, but lots of time will be wasted while you are traveling. It was a bad thing that we didn't think about transport duration. Butcher wanted to go everywhere, so we lost the time to go to the Nijuju which we were planning to see last. So she was stomping her foot at the railway station," Akeno said, laughing lightly. But his face turned red. "Moo, you promised not to say anything about that, remember? For a Japan lover like myself, wandering around Kyoto was wonderful, so I lost myself in the town and the souvenir shops more than I should have." Issei raised an eyebrow. "I would have expected a Japanophile like yourself to have been to Kyoto before the school trip with a magic circle." Ria shook her head, though she blushed at his description of her enthusiasm for all things Japanese. "You don't understand, Ice. It's better to visit Kyoto for the first time on a school trip. And transporting using a magic circle. I wouldn't do something tasteless like that. I long for Kyoto, so I wanted to walk around with my own feet and feel the breeze on my skin." She smiled, her eyes sparkling at the memories. Issei's sweat dropped slightly. After Ria's finished her tea, she changed the topic. "The trip is important, but we also need to discuss what we'll do for the school festival." "Oh right, I forgot about that. So many events happen so close together, especially for the second years," Issei said. Ria set a form to submit their idea to the student council on the table. "That's why we need to discuss the school festival now and prepare for it. If we decide it now, the 3rd year and 1st year members can prepare for it while all of you are away. Especially since we have so many members now. I'm looking forward to the school festival." Asia said happily. Yeah. I enjoy high school events too. The sports festival was also great. Zenobia put in. Issei was amused to note that, even though her face hadn't changed, her eyes were sparkling. She had made an impact in the sports festival, claiming first place in everything she did. That made multiple sports clubs start begging her to join them. It will also be my first for these sorts of things, so I'm looking forward to it. I sure did transfer in at a good time. This is also the guidance of Michael-sama. Irina exclaimed while beginning to pray. Issei shook his head, amused, before turning back to Rias. Last year was a haunted house, wasn't it? I wasn't part of the club then, but I heard it was very realistic and was a hot topic. Well, we used real ghosts, so I should hope it was scary. Rias said airily. Belle looked at her in surprise. You used real ghosts for a haunted house attraction. Well, I requested some harmless yokai to take up the role of scaring people. The yokai weren't employed at the time, so it was advantageous for both sides. Thanks to that, it was a great success. Both Rias and Akeno laughed to themselves before Akeno continued. We were scolded by the student council afterwards. Sona Kaichu, who was the vice president at that time, yelled at us, saying using the real thing is more than just ignoring the rules. So then will we do a haunted house again this year? Issei asked. Rias sat back and thought. Perhaps we should try something new. She was interrupted from speaking further when both their phones went off at the same time. They both knew what that meant and looked at each other seriously. Let's go. The orc arrived at an abandoned factory inside the town, as the sun was finishing setting, with the sky going dark. All could feel the presence of multiple entities within the factory radiating killing intent. So, you're the Sekurite's pets. You got here fast. The foreign man wearing a black coat said as he came out of the shadows of the factory. From all around him appeared black figures in the shape of men, moving to surround the group with their greater numbers. Rias, already looking severe, had her frown deepen at being called somebody's pet. She stepped forward. I assume you are from the hero faction of the Cows Brigade. Hello. She said coldly. My name is Rias Gremory. I am the one tasked to look after this town by the alliance of the three great powers. I had heard of you, sister of Mau. Our goal here is to purify you devils and save this town. The man said, looking at the group like they were trash beneath his boots. Two more people appeared next to the man in the coat. Both were foreigners as well, one wearing sunglasses despite the darkness, and one wearing a Chinese outfit. The orc readied themselves, drawing weapons or taking stances. Issei, not having brought his usual weapons, set himself in a martial arts stance. Members of the hero faction had been attacking not just Kuoh, but many other territories under the supervision of the Alliance, for a while now. It had become almost routine to have to fight them off at least twice a week. Seeing his opponents getting ready to fight, the man in the coat let what appeared to be white flames gather in his hands. A sacred gear user. Gee, what a shock. Issei drawled in a bored tone. Rias let out a sigh in agreement. Every single member of the hero faction they'd faced so far had been the same, so it was expected at this point. The man with the flames took a step forward, and the battle began. Issei launched himself at the closest shade, his fists and feet glowing slightly, and slammed a punch into his head, making it disappear. Beside him, Belle began launching electricity out, catching multiple enemies at a time. The others were fighting as well, easily taking out the shades. Asia and Gasper, being primarily non-combatants, we kept back and protected by the group as the former nun sent out her healing aura at anybody that needed it. The battle became a bit tougher when the other two gear users entered the fray. The one in the Chinese outfit had a bow made of blue light, which would have been a problem for any of the devils. Thankfully Irina, being an angel, was able to counter the light arrows, keeping the others safe. The bigger issue was the guy in glasses. His gear could apparently make any attack that he intercepted with his shadow come out of another shadow, thus using their own attacks against them. This was easily exemplified when an ice attack from Akeno was intercepted and was redirected at Asia. Thankfully Zenobia was there, and was able to stop the spears of ice from hitting the healer. Still, it meant that they had to be more careful about what attacks they use. Gasper-kun, did you get the data on what they're using? Kiba asked while taking down another shade. Gasper, who held an odd contraption of Azazel's used to scan sacred gears, nodded. Why yes. The flame gear is called Flame Shake. The defense, counter shadow one is Night Reflection. And the light gear is Staring Blue. Good work, Gasper. Now that you're done with that, go ahead and drink my blood. Issei said as he kicked a shade away. Why yes. Gasper reached for a bottle Issei had given him filled with his blood. Rias had decided it would be a good idea for the vampire to carry some of Issei's blood around, in case he ever needed to wield his gear with more precision than he usually had. The small blonde drank the blood, and his eyes began to glow ominously. However, it seemed like their enemies had done their research, as whenever he looked at one of the gear users, one of the shades got in the way, hiding them from view, so Gasper couldn't stop them. Issei grunted with irritation. They did their homework. He punched another shade away. Wish I had a weapon right now. I've been meaning to ask, boss, don't you still have that sword the angels gave you? Why don't you use that? Belle asked curiously. Issei froze before facepalming so hard it was audible over the din of battle. I'm such a moron. He summoned boosted gear and let Ascalon leave it before letting it fade again. As he held the sword he could practically feel its irritation at being forgotten. Sorry. Won't happen again, I promise. He promptly used it to decapitate an enemy. Rias, we need to deal with the gear users. What's the plan? Rias was still surprised when he asked her for battle plans, even though he'd been doing it for a while. When she'd asked him why he did so, considering he was in command of her and should, therefore, be giving her orders, he simply smiled at her. If I did everything for you, how would you grow, Rias? Better for you to do the work now and learn than be unprepared later. I'll step in if I think I need to. Rias shook her head from the memory. Ice, take on the flame user. Hyoudou, you take out the shadow user. Zenobia, eliminate the grunts and make a path for them. The rest of us will offer support and eliminate the rest of the grunts. The rest of the team replied in the affirmative and began the attack. Zenobia launched herself against a crowd of shades between the three sword wielders and the enemy, tearing through them with Durandal. The way was cleared quickly, allowing Issei and Kiba to see their opponents clearly. Kiba slashed at his opponent, but the shadows intercepted his blade, sucking it in, and spitting it out at Issei, who batted it away without a thought as he launched himself at the flame user, who backpedaled. The scarred youth raised a hand and launched a blast of wind at his opponent, which was also intercepted by the shadow, even as the guy in the black coat launched a blast of flame at him. Out of the corner of his eye he saw the green-tinged blast of wind be redirected at his back. Issei smirked. Kiba, get back. Mikarakern. A multicolored light covered his body, and when the two magical attacks collided with him, they were launched back the way they came, the blast of fire heading for his surprised opponent, while the wind went back into the shadow it came from. Rias was quick to respond. Ice, launch another attack into the shadow to hit your wind. Issei quickly did as told, launching a blast of lightning into the shadow, just as the wind was escaping. The two spells detonated spectacularly, and everybody heard somebody cry out in pain. They turned to see the shadow user being blown away by the feedback of the explosion hitting him. Issei grinned. Nice thinking, Rias. Rias preened. It made sense from what I'd observed during the battle. Suddenly a light attack, this one green instead of blue, launched itself at Issei. He easily deflected it with his blade. Looks like we have more enemies than we thought. This one's decided to hide and try to take us unprepared. He stated calmly as Kiba intercepted another bolt of light, brows furrowed. Ah, yes. The data just came in. Gasper said, looking at the analyzer. That's staring green. Gee, I wonder why it's called that. Issei muttered, making Kiba grin. I will take care of that one, then. Kaneko, follow me. You can locate the enemy's location with Kai, right? Yes, Zenobia-senpai. Issei watched the two girls leave before his attention was drawn by the flame wielder, who had gotten up from where he'd fallen, trying to dodge his own reflected attack. Damn it. All of you, burn. He cried before using both hands to launch a great conflagration at Issei and Kiba. Both dodged easily. Once the flame wielder stopped, panting, Issei held up a small, white flame in one of his hands. Hey Dumbus, I bet you my flames are hotter than yours. His opponent turned to glare at Issei with rage in his eyes. Like you could beat my fire, punk. Issei shrugged. I can, but it doesn't matter. Made you look. The gear user looked confused before turning slightly to find Kiba behind him, smiling pleasantly before slamming the flat of his blade against his face. His feet left the ground from the force before he fell like a sack of bricks, unconscious. Issei glanced to see that the light user was knocked out as well, Kiba having taken care of him while Issei was otherwise occupied. The two were about to move back to the rest of the group, when suddenly the shadow user got back up and screamed as something black started covering his body. Soon the darkness started to spread from his form to cover the whole factory. Issei's eyes narrowed as the feeling in the air changed, the shadows now emanating some new power. He could see, from the corner of his eye, that it was having an effect on the others. Great, sunglasses asshole reached balance breaker. He got ready to fight again, irritated, when suddenly a flash of light appeared beneath the gear user's feet, forming a magic circle. Issei didn't recognize the symbols, meaning it wasn't by a devil or fallen angel. Then it flashed, and the shadow user was gone. Issei blinked before relaxing. Oh, okay. A short while later Issei was relaxing as Asia healed the others, and Gasper used his vampiric abilities to put the opposing sacred gear wielders to sleep. Rhea sighed when she and Akeno finished with a magic circle to transport the prisoners to the underworld for questioning and imprisonment, as Zenobia and Kaneko brought the last badly beaten member with them. We probably won't get any information out of them this time either, but we might as well try. Issei frowned. They'd been sending all captured enemies to the underworld after each skirmish, but apparently something had been done to them that would cause their memories to be erased of anything about their time in the hero faction, and everything done to recover the deleted memories so far had been useless. He smirked as he took his mind off such thoughts. At least it's good training for you all. Not only are you getting combat experience, but you're learning to fight without causing mass destruction, which will serve you well. Rias nodded. True. We did already have a raiding game with similar rules, after all. This can only help. Though apparently the enemy is getting a handle on our battle styles. Kuoh said, frowning. They're no longer sending power wizard types we can just overpower anymore. Now they're sending people with subtler abilities. There's something I feel suspicious about. Can I give my opinion? Irina asked timidly. Rhea smiled at the angel. Of course. Any insight is appreciated. If the hero faction were trying to study us or defeat us, then I think their way of doing it is weird, she said. Zenobia raised an eyebrow. Weird? Yeah. If they were really trying to defeat us, then I think they'd have changed their tactics after the first few battles. But even on the 4th or 5th time they attacked us, nothing changed. They might be being cautious, but how should I put it? It seems like their bosses are performing some type of experiment. Experiments? Do you mean on us? Akeno asked, brow furrowed. Irina tilted her head at the question. More like. It feels like they're experimenting on the sacred gear possessors. It's a gut feeling I can't really express properly. I think they're sending their forces to places where strong abilities are for a reason. Everybody was silent for a bit, thinking about what Irina said. Suddenly Kaneko spoke. A sudden change. Everybody looked at her before Issei groaned. Of course. They're sending them up against superior opponents to force them to achieve balance breaker. Rhea's eyes were hard. Yes. It makes sense. We have the Sekirute, one who controls holy lightning, the holy demonic sword wielder, Durandal's wielder, a time-stopping vampire, an Ekashu Senjutsu wielder, and an exceptional healer. This isn't about winning or losing. It's about unlocking their potential by facing us as a catalyst. Bell grinned wryly. Like fighting a rare monster in an RPG for the experience. Makes sense. Rhea chuckled softly. Something like that. It's a pretty messy way to go about it though. Kuoh said. Irina shrugged. It seems like they don't care if dozens or even hundreds of their allies are killed, as long as a single one can reach balance breaker. Everybody fell silent before they decided to shelve the discussion for now, and leave after sending their prisoners on. Once they returned to the clubroom, everybody noticed that Akeno was acting very happy. What's got you so happy, Akeno? Find something to satisfy your personality. Rhea asked, amused. Akeno turned to her with a happy smile. Oh, no butcher. Though it's hopefully something for my personality instead. I just have plans for tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to them. Well, I hope you have fun. Issei said, smiling at his friend's happy mood. Akeno's smile widened. Oh, I intend to. Nobody but her noticed Belle's naughty grin, or the look they shared. The next day Issei found himself once again walking through town. He loved his friends, truly, but sometimes he needed some alone time to think. Especially ever since he almost lost Asia. He found himself having to deal with the wounds that had reopened more often than he'd like. Screams of the dying ringing out with the noise of weapons discharging, and the cries of inhuman beings as armies clashed before him, soaking the ground with blood of man and monster alike. Issei shook his head, willing the memory back into the recesses of his mind. Honestly, if it weren't for the fact that none would believe him, he'd consider seeing a psychologist. He was well aware he hadn't been mentally healthy in a while, despite his best efforts to just push everything back and ignore it. At least he'd stopped waking up in a cold sweat at night a while ago. He was sure that Rhea's in Asia would have noticed, and then he'd have uncomfortable questions to avoid. He lifted his head back up as he walked, observing the people walking by him. Most looked at him somewhat warily due to his scars, giving him a wider berth than they would another. Issei had learned not to mind much. He knew they made him look a bit intimidating. His eyes landed on a beautiful girl his age. Her long dark hair hung down loosely, and she wore a pretty dress that made her look amazingly cute. She turned and smiled at him radiantly when she saw him, making him stop in shock. Akeno. He couldn't help it, it was so unexpected. She looked incredibly different. He was having trouble reconciling the cute girl he was seeing with the poised young woman he was used to. Akeno moved forward to him, stopping slightly in front of him. Hello, Ice-kun. I wasn't expecting to see you today. Though I'm glad I did. Issei blinked. Ah. Yeah, I was just out for a walk. He looked her over. What about you? I thought you had plans. Akeno frowned slightly. Oh, yes. Sadly my plans fell through. I was looking forward to it too. Anything I can do to help? Issei asked, not liking seeing his friend sad. Akeno looked up at him hopefully. Well, you're not busy, are you? Do you mind if I spend the day with you? Issei didn't even have to think about it. Sure, I don't mind. We can have a bit of fun together. Yay. Akeno cheered, moving to his side and hugging his arm, coincidentally letting him feel her soft breasts, something which distracted him, and kept him from noticing the satisfied look on her face. It'll be like a date. You can be my boyfriend for the day. Issei was taken aback. Okay. He smiled softly. I don't think I'd mind that. He looked down at himself. I'm not exactly dressed for a date though. Akeno giggled in a way that Issei found starkly different from her usual euphy feeling of amusement. It's fine, Ice-kun. You always look good. Besides, I'm not that shallow. Well, alright. Where do you want to go first then? Issei asked. As they walked away, Akeno briefly glanced back to see a small gloved arm peek out from an alley, to give her a thumbs up before disappearing. Hours later, the two were still having fun together. Issei was discovering a new side to the queen that he had never encountered before, a side that he found incredibly attractive. Not to say that she wasn't attractive the rest of the time, but this was different. Even her manner of speech had changed. Issei found himself enjoying his time with her immensely. Seeing this cute girl enjoying herself was like a balm on his soul. His smiles began to come easier the longer they spent together. He knew that whoever managed to make her theirs would be an incredibly lucky man. He actually found himself growing jealous of that hypothetical person. A fact which prompted him to try to make this the best date she'd ever have. They had just come out of the aquarium, holding hands. Akeno had the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen on her face, gripping his hand happily. Some of those fish were amazingly weird, weren't they, Ice? Issei chuckled. Yeah. The things that exist in nature can be really amazing. Akeno moved to his side and lay her head on his shoulder as they walked. She had the most amazing day she could ever remember having, and she was eternally grateful to her small teacher for her advice on how to trick Issei into a date. The only way she felt it could be better was if she hadn't had to trick him at all, and he'd asked her out of his own volition. They let their feet guide them, simply talking without caring about where they were going. Akeno blinked when Issei suddenly stopped, a bit wide-eyed. Oops. I think we took a wrong turn. Akeno blinked again before looking around. Her face promptly became a bit red. They were surrounded by various love hotels. She bit her lip and closed her eyes. She didn't believe Issei had brought her there on purpose. He may be a pervert, but he was respectful, in his own way. He wouldn't try to trick her into sex, or pressure her to do something she didn't want. That was the question, though. Did she want to? Issei made to leave. Come on, Akeno. We don't want to linger. It would be bad if we were seen here. He was stopped when her grip on his hand tightened, and she pulled him back. He turned to find her looking at him timidly, her face reddening steadily. I don't mind, she said softly. Issei stared. What? He croaked. Her face became determined, despite her now very prominent blush. If Ice wants to go in, then I don't mind. I'm okay with it. They stared at each other for what seemed like ages. Finally Issei opened his mouth, whether to agree or decline, even he didn't know. But he was interrupted. Geez, you work well, don't you, Sekirute brat? Trying to make love to a woman at noon. The two teens turned to see three people standing nearby. One was an old man with a long beard, wearing rough-looking clothing. Behind him stood a well-built, dark-skinned man with dark hair and a short beard, and a woman in a business outfit with long, silver hair. Issei recognized two of them. Auden and his Valkyrie assistant. Issei said. Ho, it's been a while. Issei raised an eyebrow. Why are you here? Sightseeing. He glanced around at the love hotels, his point obvious. Auden-sama. I'd be troubled if you wander into a place like this. You're God, so please act proper. The Valkyrie yelled at the old god, looking perturbed. Let me be, Rasmus. You're a Valkyrie who has to take care of heroes, so you need to learn about these kinds of places. Auden said, stroking his beard. I am a Valkyrie who has no appeal after all. You two also shouldn't come here during noon. You two are high school students, correct? Go home and study. The newly named Rasmus said, appearing angry with Issei and Akeno. Issei turned to his date to find her staring at the well-built man, her eyes wide in shock as he approached. Why you are? Issei looked at the approaching man to find that he looked supremely pissed. Every word he spoke trembled with fury. Akeno, what is the meaning of this? He shot Issei a look of barely contained rage. Akeno glared back, the sight of her Issei had experienced during their date disappearing like morning mist, back to being a refined young lady. A refined young lady that was incredibly angry. It's none of your business. She glared at the man. Besides which, what are you doing here? That doesn't matter. The man snapped. Get away from here. It's still too early for you. He grabbed Akeno's arm and started trying to drag her away. No. Let go of me. Akeno struggled against his grip. That was more than enough for Issei. He moved forward, grabbed the man's arm and forced him to release Akeno, who moved behind him, still glaring. I don't know what's going on, but you let Akeno go. It's clear she doesn't want to go with you. Besides which, who are you? Issei asked calmly, his tone firm. The man glared at Issei with something close to hate. I'm here as Adendono's escort today. I am one of the leaders of the Grigori, Barakiel. And I am the father of Akeno Himejima. Things suddenly made quite a bit more sense to Issei. He simply sighed. Well shit. Ho, I have come to visit. Issei stood back in the top room of his house, which was a VIP room for exactly such occasions, as Auden sat on his couch. After encountering the Norse god, his escort, and his assistant, Issei and Akeno's date had ended, and they'd led the group to his home. Issei had noticed that Akeno's previously happy attitude had disappeared, and now she was moody and glaring at her father. Said father didn't seem to notice, at the moment. Barakiel spent his time glaring murderously at Issei, who was unsurprised. The man had, after all, found his estranged daughter, with a boy, in an area full of love hotels. Honestly, the only thing about the entire affair that surprised Issei was the fact that the fallen hadn't outright attacked him yet. Geez, he doesn't look happy with you, does he? Belle murmured into his ear from her seat on his shoulder. Issei snorted. Way to understate things. It actually reminds me of how Dejima reacted when Ken started hanging out with Nanako. He muttered back. Belle grinned at the memory. Poor Ken was terrified to be anywhere in the man's presence for ages. That guy was so overprotective. The two chuckled at the memory. Here's your tea. Ryu said, serving Auden with a smile. Ah, you don't have to worry about me. But, it's seriously huge. That one is also huge. Auden said, a lecherous look on his face as he stared at Ryu's and Akeno's busts. Issei's eyebrow twitched, but he stayed silent. He wouldn't react unless the old man crossed the line from looking to touching. After all, he couldn't really blame him. Someone else, however, could. A fan slammed into Auden's head. Moo. Auden-sama, you can't look at them with such a perverted gaze. She is the sister of the Mayu Lucifer-sama. The Valkyrie complained. Auden massaged his head. Geez, you're hard-headed. Surzucha's sister is famous for being a beauty with a glamorous body. So how could I be blamed if I wanted to stare at her breasts a bit? He seemed to realize something before motioning to his assistant. By the way, this is my escort Valkyrie. Her name is... My name is Rasmus. I will be under your care during our stay in Japan. It's nice to meet you all. Rasmus said, bowing. Issei nodded back, studying her more now. She seemed like the cool kind of beauty. Though he was surprised that she appeared so young. His experience with Valkyries had given him a different impression. Auden resumed speaking with a lecherous grin. She's a virgin whose years without a boyfriend equals her age. Most of those there sweat dropped as the previously cool beauty seemed to panic. TT, that has nothing to do with this. I didn't choose to not have a boyfriend. I didn't choose to still be a virgin. She fell to her knees and sobbed as she smacked the floor with her fist. Issei and Belle sweat dropped. You're telling Anya about this the first chance you get, aren't you? Issei asked. Oh, definitely. Belle said with an evil little grin. Well, the business world of battle maidens is also having a hard time. Even if there are those with looks, they are mostly those who are not outstanding. Lately the number of heroes has decreased, and the Valkyrie squad has been minimized because of the lack of funds, so even this one was at the corner of the room, until she became my escort. Auden said, nodding his head and sipping his tea. One of Issei's eyebrows rose. I didn't realize being a Valkyrie was so cutthroat. Auden shrugged and nodded. You'd be surprised. Times have changed. In any case. Azazel cut in with a grin, obviously enjoying himself. During the time the geezer is staying in Japan, it's been decided that we will be his guard. Barakiel is a backup support member from the fallen side. I've also been busy, so I can't stick around often, in which case Barakiel will take over looking after you all. I look forward to working with you all. Barakiel said shortly, taking a break from trying to set Issei on fire with his gaze to do so. Geezer, didn't you come a bit early on your visit? You're visiting to speak with the Shinto gods this time, and that's not for a few days. Shouldn't you have arrived nearer to the date, when Michael and Surzuchas will be free as well? Azazel asked as he sipped his tea. True. We've just had a bit of trouble in our country. Well, there's actually a troublesome lad who is against my policies. I thought I should move things along before he does anything. That's why I want to discuss several things with the Shinto gods. Until now, we didn't have anything to do with each other. Auden sighed, stroking his beard. Belle groaned, hand over her eyes. This cannot be of the good. Azazel seemed to agree, smiling sarcastically. When you say trouble, you don't mean you have the Vanner after your head, do you? Please, I'm begging you not to start Ragnarok by yourselves, geezer. This time it was Issei's turn to quietly groan. Fucking Ragnarok. I had enough of that shit last time around. Belle nodded in agreement, face pained. Nobody else seemed to notice the two's quiet conversation, continuing their discussion. I don't care about the Vanner. There's no point in discussing it. Auden said before proceeding to change the topic. By the way, Azazel boy, it seems like the Cows Brigade is increasing the number of those who can use Balance Breaker. Scary, eh? He eyed the fallen leader. I was under the impression that Balance Breaker was a rare phenomenon. Most of those there looked at each other in surprise at the turn the conversation had taken. It is rare, yes, but some idiot decided to use the quick and dirty path to force it to happen. Anybody who knows about sacred gears has considered it at least once before, but most wouldn't do it because it would draw criticism from pretty much every faction out there, succeed or fail. Azazel said with no small amount of annoyance. Let me guess. Issei began. Forcing your troops to fight opponents way beyond their skill level, in order to force the change by desperation. Azazel smiled grimly now. Yes, and no. They aren't just using their volunteer troops. They're gathering humans who possess sacred gears by force. Abducting them, essentially. Then they brainwash them. It's after that when they do what you said, Issei. Once they reach balance breaker, they're summoned back via magic circle. Issei and Belle weren't the only ones horrified by this information. What? Belle asked, eyes wide. Azazel continued. These sorts of things can be done by any faction, even if they thought about it. It isn't just the moral implications. If, for example, I, who is in an alliance with angels and devils, did so, then the alliance would be instantly ended, and war would ensue. They, however, can get away with it because they're unaffiliated terrorists. Issei's eyes were hard and his fist was clenched at his side. So they're kidnapping and brainwashing innocent people, are they? He grinned savagely, looking fairly murderous. Ross was shifting subtly as Auden raised an eyebrow. Azazel, as soon as you find the ones responsible for this, you'll tell me. I'll make sure they become aware of my displeasure. Most of the orcs shivered slightly, remembering Issei's rage from not too long ago. Azazel eyed him. Well, the main group involved is the hero faction. He chuckled dryly and continued sarcastically. The main members are legendary Yusha and heroes. His gaze then became serious again. Their physical abilities don't lose out against even angels or devils. They also possess sacred gears and legendary weapons. On top of that, they have reached balance breaker, and beyond even that they have an annoying longiness that can slay even a god. From the reports, the hero faction has a strong enough will to not use office as snakes, so their power enhancement is still unknown. Issei's gaze became even more dangerous, something that made Akeno shiver lightly in delight, despite the turbulent thoughts currently going through her head. So what you're saying is, they might present a challenge. He chuckled darkly. Good. Auden eyed the scarred youth. Considering I heard you can project, I imagine you don't get much to challenge you. Assuming it's true, of course. How did you come to obtain such a skill? Everybody became more alert, interested in the answer. Issei simply smiled a bitter smile. Let's just say that war changes a man. Auden nodded slowly. Yes. Yes it does. Things were silent for a moment, everybody gazing at Issei, before Azazel changed the subject. Well, on to more important things. Geezer, are there any places you want to go? Auden's gaze became lecherous once again. I want to go to the Oppai pub. Azazel laughed. Ah, you sure have good taste, Chief God Dono. Hell yeah, let's go there right now then. Young girls from my organization opened up a shop in this town for the VIPs recently. I will invite you there then. You ho ho. To be expected from Azazel boy. You sure know your things. Prepare me a big-breasted one right away. I'm going to grow many of them. Follow my let's shitty geezer. Welcome to Japan. Do you want to untie their kimono obi? That is something you must do at least once when you come to Japan. I will show you the Japanese style. I can't wait for it. I can't wait for it indeed. Most their sweat dropped and twitched at the conversation as the two began to leave. Belle, on the other hand, had something much more important on her mind. Wait, the Fallen opened an adult club here, and we haven't been invited. What the hell? I want to see them. Rasmus didn't hear her, though everybody else but Issei stared at the pixie incredulously. Auden sama. I'm coming as well. She shouted as she made to follow. She was stopped, however, by the words of her boss. You stay here. I'll have Azazel with me, so there shouldn't be any problems. You can stay put in the house. Rasmus scowled and resumed following them. No. I'm going to. The ones left behind sighed as they heard them continue to argue as they left. Issei cocked his head in thought. Maybe she's using guarding Auden as an excuse to go see breasts as well. At everybody's looks he shrugged. She might be bi. You never know. Riaz chuckled tiredly. Something tells me that's not it. Everybody shrugged it off and proceeded to go their separate ways. A while after Rasmus returned dejectedly from trying to follow Auden and Azazel, Issei was walking to his room to relax with a manga when he walked past Akeno's open door to find the girl sitting on her bed, head hanging down with a curtain of hair hiding her face. He hesitated a moment, studying her, before he walked in and sat down beside her. Akeno jerked slightly in surprise before turning to gaze at him, her eyes red-rimmed. "Wanna talk about it?" Issei asked gently. Akeno bit her lip as she looked at him before she began to speak. "That man." Issei tilted his head. "You mean Barakiel?" She nodded. "Yes. He wanted to talk to me alone. He wanted to get me to keep away from you. He said he heard rumors that you're a murderous beast that believes he's better than anybody else and collects women to take advantage of." She shook her head in slight disbelief. "I have no idea where he could have heard such a thing." "Well," Issei began, scratching his chin in thought. "The murderous part might be because of that asshole, Daidor. Riaz did tell me that might cause issues." Indeed, while Ijuka hadn't demanded his head or anything of the sort, he had made it clear that Issei should steer clear for the foreseeable future. Issei's actions might have technically been justified, but that didn't change the fact he'd executed a defeated enemy, who also happened to be the Beelzebub's brother. Better than anybody else. Might be about how I acted during the conference and the Young Devils gathering. And I imagine Belle, Elena and the others are factors against me in the last point, which is really all that would really matter to a worried father. Akeno snorted inelegantly at his words. That man lost any right to act that way long ago. He definitely has no right to try to tell me who to associate with. If he ever tries to confront you, I encourage you to make him see the error of his ways. They were both silent for a moment before Issei wrapped his arm around her shoulders. Why exactly do you hate him so much, Akeno? What did he do? Akeno stiffened under his touch at his words before slumping and leaning against him. I told you about my mother, who was the daughter of a famous shrine, right? Issei nodded. Akeno smiled sadly. Her name was Shuri Himejima. Her face became melancholy again. Well, her family was not happy about her association with him. So they fed information to his enemies, who proceeded to attack one day while he was away. She curled up against Issei at the memories, and he gently ran his hand along her arm soothingly. We tried to get away or hide till he got back to fend them off. But, Akeno clutched him tightly, tears starting to flow from her eyes. The only reason I'm alive is because my mother gave her life to protect me. They cut her down before my eyes. They almost did the same to me, but he arrived just as they were about to kill me. Suddenly she screamed her next words. He should have been there. He should have protected her. That was his duty, and he failed. She sobbed slightly before taking a deep, shuddering breath. I will never forgive that man. He is not my father. I have no father. They were both silent, Akeno recovering from her explanation, Issei trying to think of what to say. You shouldn't hold on to that resentment, Akeno. It'll poison you. Her grip on his arm tightened. I can't let it go, Ice-kun. I can't. No more was said. Issei sat back in his seat in the television studio, as the hostess asked Azazel a question about something involving sacred gears. He wasn't really paying attention, though he knew he should be. He was just a bit tired. They'd been at it for almost an hour, after all. Azazel had come to Issei and told him that another show had been scheduled for that day. Once again, speakers would include Surziches, Seraful, Azazel himself, Daihauser, and Michael. The only one missing was Issei. After much cajoling, Issei had finally agreed and dressed himself in his now trademark outfit sans the weapons. They discussed strategy, politics, the Cow's Brigade, and training methods. Issei himself had been praised for being behind two up-and-comers in Riaz and Sona, who had requested further advice and training for her peerage, something Issei was more than happy to assist with, now that she would no longer be facing Riaz for the foreseeable future. Issei, of course, had stated that he only offered assistance. It was all in the hands of the ladies in question. Now though, as they reached what Issei hoped was the end, he began to feel tired. Being under the bright lights and talking for so long was exhausting. He could not see how the people who did it for a living could stand it. Very well, that's all for today. I would like to thank everyone for taking time off their busy schedules to come and participate with us in this enlightening conversation. The pretty hostess of the show said, smiling at the camera as the audience applauded. Please join us next time when Beelzebub Summit joins us to show us some of his latest inventions. Till then, more applause, and the hostess turned to them as a bell rang signaling the end of filming. Seriously, thank you all. I hope you'll all consider doing this in the future. Issei let out a small sigh before smiling at her. Sure, just a bit more warning would be nice. The hostess looked confused. Oh, a week wasn't enough. We'll keep that in mind, I assure you. Issei's eye twitched. No, a week is plenty. Just inform someone more reliable to let me know next time, he said, eyeing Azazel, who covered up a grin with his fist as the others there rolled their eyes at his antics. The group dispersed to their various dressing rooms, getting ready to head back wherever they needed to go. As he entered, somebody approached him with a towel and a drink. Here you go, Ice-sama. Thank you for your hard work, Ravel said with a smile and a small blush. Issei took the towel and wiped his face of the sweat that had gathered due to the heat of the lights. Thanks, Cutie-chan. I appreciate it. He took the drink from her and sipped it with a sigh. Ravel blushed deeper, but had given up on trying to get him to stop calling her by that nickname. Besides, she couldn't deny the pleasure she felt when he did so. Still. This is just part of my training, that's all. It's not like I'm doing this for Ice-sama. Issei smiled at her. Well, I still appreciate it. He sighed and stretched, his back popping. What do you think? How did it go? Ravel crossed her arms under her developing bust, taking the question seriously. Despite inviting you to speak in such prestigious company, you're still not taken as seriously as they are, due to both your age and your status as a human. Issei nodded in agreement. Yeah, I figured that would be the case. I'm high profile now, but not as high as they are. Your standing has improved, though. I can tell you that people are listening to what you say, and your popularity is on the rise. Ravel continued. Issei looked surprised at that. Oh, I didn't think that would happen in any noticeable manner for a long while yet. Part of it is the more martial-minded listening to your opinion and finding it valid. Your stock is rising with them as they see that you aren't just some upstart kid with no clue what he's talking about. The smile that had been on the blonde devil's lips abruptly fell. The rest is with girls and women who think you're attractive. An eyebrow rose. Oh, I didn't expect that. I'm not that used to being seen that way, what with my scarring. Ravel let out a slight sound of irritation. TCH. I am aware that scarring like yours has a stigma in your country, but it's not the same in the rest of the world, nor in the underworld. Sure, there are those that think they make you look brutish and uncouth. But some girls like that. You need to also remember that devils respect strength, and for the most part those scars paint you as a survivor. Surely you've met other women with similar opinions before, Isama. Issei cocked his head to the side. Well, yeah. I know people that found strength and grit more important than physical attractiveness. Anybody that just had looks but no brawn or brains was considered worthless, for the most part. He smiled self-depreciatingly. I was worse. I didn't have any of the three for the longest time. Ravel looked at him curiously. I don't understand. You're unattractive, scars or no scars. She blushed as she said so, before continuing on. You're also amazingly strong. The way you defeated Ani-chan, and everything you've done since, has proven that. And the way you've handled yourself in these discussions show that you don't have a bad mind, either. Issei shrugged. People change, Cutie-chan. Either by their own volition, or due to circumstances forcing them to. I don't think I'm all that physically attractive, though I'd like to think I have some good qualities, so I thank you for the compliment. As for the rest. He shrugged. Very few start out strong, you know. When I began, Drake said I was the weakest bearer of the boosted gear to live so far. And I'll freely admit, I was a bit of an idiot. He thought for a moment before amending his statement. More than a bit, actually. I was a complete moron. Ravel tilted her head in curiosity, having a lot of trouble picturing him as he described himself. What changed then? He sighed. I was forced into a situation where it was either change or die. And even then, it took losing somebody I cared about before I managed to really make a difference in myself. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes distant. I fought and clawed and bled for every ounce of strength. I began to think more deeply about things, essentially changing my thought patterns in some ways. All to keep it from happening again. Did you? She asked quietly. Issei slumped slightly before looking back at her, and the look in his eyes shook Ravel to her core. For a brief moment he looked so lost, so defeated, that all she wanted to do help him. At that moment she realized that she'd begun to idolize this man for his strength, then his kindness and wit, but she hadn't really known him. Seeing him, in that vulnerable moment, bearing himself to her in a way she doubted he often did to anybody. It made her heart ache. She brought a hand to her chest as she continued to gaze into his brown eyes. The moment between them ended when somebody knocked on the door, and Azazel's voice came through. Issei, you ready to go? We should get back now. We still need to guard that old geezer. Issei blinked, and abruptly his gaze was back to normal, his shoulders up and proud. It was as though that moment of vulnerability had just been an illusion. Yeah, I'm ready. He gulped down the rest of the drink Ravel had given him before handing it back to her. Thanks for your help and hard work today, Cutie-chan. You did great. That's alright, Isama. Like I said, it's part of my training. It was very helpful for me as well. Ravel said, a bit shyly. She still wasn't over the deeply personal moment they just shared. Alright then, see you next time. He said with a smile as he opened the door. Yes, please call me for the next event. If you need me, I will definitely help you out. She responded with a deeper meaning to her words now than was obvious. Issei gave her a smile, and left. Several days later, Issei yawned lightly as he sat with Azazel, Aten, Rasmus and half of the orc in a large wagon being pulled by Sleipnir, Aten's 8-legged warhorse, as it flew through the air. Outside, Kiba, Zenobia, Irina and Barakiel were flying alongside as a guard. As they flew, Aten was laughing contentedly to himself about all the beautiful women he'd seen and fondled on his trip when he was taken by Azazel to various bars and adult clubs. Seeing as most of his guard was underage and thus unable to enter such places, they were forced to take positions guarding the entrances, a fact that annoyed Issei slightly. He wouldn't have minded going in with Aten and Azazel. He was still a pervert at heart, after all. Issei looked around at the rest of his group. They all appeared tired as well. Asia was actually asleep against his shoulder. Akeno, though, appeared lost in thought. Though she was definitely putting out a do not disturb vibe. Rasmus appeared to finally have enough of her boss's perverted mutterings, despite having calmly followed along wherever he went. Aten-sama. It's almost time for your meeting with the Shinto gods, so please lose the mindset of being on vacation. At this rate you'll be yelled at by other people when we return to our homeland. Aten looked unperturbed. Geez, you're a woman who doesn't know how to lighten up. How about you relax a little? This is why you can't get a single man to pay attention to you. This has nothing to do with me not having a BB boyfriend. I'm not as single because I want to be. Rasmus yelled before she began to cry once again over her virginity and lack of boyfriend. Issei sighed before being thrown from his seat due to the wagon stopping suddenly with the sound of a horse's cry, and abruptly awoken Asia landing on top of him with a squeak. What happened? I don't know, but I doubt it's good. Both Azazel and Rasmus were on high alert. Issei got up after Asia scrambled to her feet, looking outside to see what was going on. From what he could see, Kiba, Irina and Zenobia were all ready to fight, Barakiel in position at the center of their formation. Ryuz opened a window of the wagon, allowing them to see what was going on. Ahead of them, a young-looking man was floating. He was handsome, but with an evil sort of gaze in his eyes. He wore robes that looked similar to Auden's, except they were black with rich ornamentation. Issei didn't take it as a good sign that Roswus looked shocked at the sight of him, and Azazel clicked his tongue. The man flared his robes with a smirk and spoke grandly. "Nice to meet you all. I am the evil god of Northern Europe, Loki." Issei couldn't help it. He groaned in irritation even as Azazel flapped his black wings exiting the wagon. "Seriously? This asshole? If it isn't Loki Dono," Azazel said calmly, smiling without care. "I'd have thought we'd meet you in a place like this. Did you have some business with us? You're aware that the chief god of Northern Europe, Aten Dono, is on this wagon, right?" Loki crossed his arms nonchalantly. "Nothing much. It's just that it's a painful thing, you know. That our chief god left us to get in touch with other factions." Azazel's voice became sharper, a hint of anger in his tone. "That's an arrogant thing to say, Loki." Loki laughed. "Well, normally I wouldn't want to meet you or the devils, but it can't be helped. Along with Aten and the others, you too shall receive my punishment. So it's okay for you to get in touch with other factions, but not for your chief god. That's contradictory, don't you think?" Azazel asked, eyebrow raised. "As long as it's to destroy other factions, it's okay. I don't agree with peace. After all, it is your religion which stepped foot on our soil and spread the Bible," Loki said with a sneer. Azazel scratched his head. "There's no point in saying that to me. Say that to Michael or the deceased god of the Bible. Either way, it's problematic for Aten to speak with the gods of the Far East. Then we wouldn't be able to have the day of Ragnarok." His eyes sought out Aten, who sat there, looking bored. "Tell me, what is it that you wish to obtain by trading the information regarding Yggdrasil?" Azazel ignored the question, pointing a finger at Loki. "I will ask you one thing. Are your actions connected with the Chaos Brigade?" Then he seemed to realize something. "Wait, if I recall correctly, you aren't the type to answer honestly. I feel sickened that you would mix my opinions with those foolish terrorists. I came here of my own will. And office has nothing to do with this," Loki replied uncaringly. Azazel's body lost some of its tension at the answer. "So you aren't from the Chaos Brigade. But this is also a problem in its own way. I see what you meant before, geezer. This is the problem from the north you were talking about." Aten got out of the wagon with Roswus, standing on a magic circle that kept him aloft. He gazed at them as he stroked his long beard. Yes. There are still some hard-headed fools like this one who come out and cause this current situation." Roswus changed from her business suit to her Valkyrie armor before speaking to Loki. "Loki-sama, your actions exceed your authority. Doing something like pointing your fangs towards the chief god. This is unforgivable. You should make an argument at the official meeting." Loki gave her a bored look. "A mere battle maiden shouldn't get in my way. I'm asking Aten." His gaze turned back to the old man. "Are you still planning to continue doing something which is outside of our Norse world?" Aten responded back calmly. "Yup. Talking to Surziches and Azazel is 10,000 times more interesting than talking to you. I want to know about Japanese Shinto. They also have an interest in our Yggdrasil. After we make peace, I'm thinking of exchanging our cultures by sending out messengers to each other." Loki smirked malevolently. "So, I have confirmed your plans. Such a foolish act. Let's have a display of power right here then." Everybody there suddenly felt the heavy feeling of Loki's malevolence as he aimed his hostility at Aten. Azazel tried one last time to warn him off. "So, I can take that as a declaration of battle, right?" Loki smirked at Azazel's attempt. "You can take it however you want to take it." He was abruptly consumed by a wave of power hitting him. Everyone turned to Zenobia, who held her blade in position after her attack with a holy aura visibly clinging to it. "Victory goes to the one who makes the first move," the former exorcist said calmly. "Though it seems as though it didn't work. To be expected of a Norse god." Indeed, Loki floated in place looking completely unharmed. "A holy sword, huh? It has impressive power, but it isn't enough to take on a god yet. It's no different than a gentle breeze." He then smirked and laughed as he saw Kiba create a holy demonic sword, and Irina create a sword of light. "Hahaha. Futile. I'm a god, no matter what I look like. A mere attack from a devil or an angel is nothing." He held up his hand, and energy began to gather. Issei quickly moved out of the wagon, crimson dragon wings exiting his back and keeping him aloft, moving in front of the others in the path of the attack. When Loki launched his attack, Issei held out his hand, a crimson glow covering it, and caught the attack. He grunted and was pushed back by the ongoing force of it, but eventually Loki's attack ended. Everybody noticed, however, that Issei's hand was left slightly burnt. Loki looked at Issei with interest. "I forgot that the Sekirute would be here as well. I had heard you were moderately strong. I didn't even hold back that much on that attack." Issei smirked at the god. "Funny, I did." Loki sneered at him. "Amusing." He looked past Issei as Riaz and Akeno exited the wagon, the king covered in a crimson aura. crimson hair. House of Gremory, was it? You must be the blood relative of current Mao. 2 leaders of the fallen angels, 1 angel, many devils, and on top of that the Sekirute is with you. Athan, for a mere guard, this is a bit overboard, don't you think? A fool like yourself ended up coming here. It turned out to be the right decision after all. Athan said dryly. Loki smirked slightly as he nodded. Well then, in that case, I will call him. He spread out his robe and called out loudly. Come out, my adorable son. After a moment a rift was created in space, and those gathered tensed. From within the rift emerged a 10-meter tall ash-gray wolf which glared at everybody there, baring his fangs. Issei glanced around to find that most of those gathered, primarily the orc, were shaking at the wolf's presence. He turned back to observe the wolf further, making sure he won't suddenly attack. Even Azazel appeared nervous. This is bad. Everybody, don't touch that giant wolf. Issei, keep your distance from it as well. Issei eyed the wolf. So, you called Fenrir, huh? Didn't think you could take us without your god killer. Loki sneered smugly. I could have. I just don't feel like exerting myself. Besides, letting this child get a taste for the blood of those outside of the Norse pantheon isn't a bad idea. He patted Fenrir as he spoke, his gaze upon Riaz at those last words. Issei shook his head. Seriously. This is a god of mischief and trickery's play. Great force. That's kinda disappointing, actually. I guess some people really don't live up to their reputations. Everybody gathered looked at Issei incredulously for taunting the god with a deity-killing monster at his side, though Athan couldn't help but smirk. Loki's sneer grew. Let's see how you feel after you've been torn apart. Fenrir, kill them. Start with the Mau's sister. Leave the foolish dragon for last. Fenrir let out a beautiful howl that made the bodies of most of those gathered shiver, before abruptly vanishing from their sight in a burst of speed. Riaz jerked back in shock, a small shriek of surprise leaving her as the wolf suddenly appeared in front of her, Issei's fist buried in his face, even as his body was posed to just barely avoid being seriously injured by the wolf's claws, receiving only some scratches to his stomach. Fenrir pushed himself back, eyeing the one that had kept him from his prey. Issei eyed him back, making sure him didn't try anything. You okay, Riaz? Why yes. Thank you for protecting me. She said slightly shakily. I see. Sekirute, to be able to follow Fenrir's movement and intercept him. Truly terrifying. I need to get rid of you before you become a threat. Before he could order the wolf to attack again, Azazel and Barakiel launched attacks at him. Loki looked at them boredly. Even without using Fenrir, 2 mere fallen angels won't be able to stand a chance against me. A Norse magic circle shielded him before it grew to huge proportions as it blocked the attacks. Norse magic, Azazel said with disgust. It's much more advanced than that of our religion. To be expected of the world that has greater magic and sorcery than our own. Then I will use the same magic. Ross was set before creating multiple magic circles, launching a multitude of magic attacks against the enemy god. Issei found his respect for the Valkyrie rise at the display of power. However, it unfortunately didn't work, as more defensive magic circles around Loki's body blocked the attacks. He grinned malevolently. Now it's my turn. He began to swing his hand to the side as Fenrir tensed up, ready to attack, and Kaneko and Zenobia moved forward to guard the others at Issei's side. Just as they were about to attack, however, something launched itself past Fenrir. Half-dimension was heard, and a distortion in space appeared around the wolf, trapping him in the middle, sealing his movements. Fenrir growled and promptly ripped through the distortion with his fangs. A white-silver being descended from the sky between them and the wolf. Issei Hyoudou, are you okay? Issei raised an eyebrow. I'm fine, Volley. Just a scratch. Geez, and here I thought you were strong. Getting scratched like that against an animal. Biku said, floating down as well on his golden cloud with a smirk. Issei looked at the monkey Yaokai. Well, if you think you can do better, be my guest. Loki smiled at Volley's appearance. Oh my, the Hakuryuku is here too, huh? Volley gave the god a light bow. How do you do, god of evil Loki Dono? I am the Hakuryuku Volley. I came here to eliminate you. Loki's smile grew at Volley's declaration of war. Very well then, I'm satisfied at seeing the 2 heavenly dragons. I will retreat for today. Fenrir immediately moved back to his side. A distortion in space promptly enveloped them. But Loki wasn't done. But, on the day of the meeting with the gods of this country, I will come here once again. Athan. Next time, Fenrir and I will definitely tear out the chief god's throat. He declared loudly before disappearing. A short while later, the wagon had been parked in a park near Kuoh Academy, which was empty of people due to the hour. Issei stood with the others even as Asia healed his light wounds. To make Athan's meeting successful, you will need to take down Loki, correct? Volley asked as he looked around at them, Biku, Kuroka and Arthur behind him. He continued. You wouldn't be able to fend off Loki and Fenrir with just these members. And also because of the hero faction's attacks, the underworld, heaven, and Valhalla are in a ruckus. So they wouldn't be able to send more people to your aid. Issei looked at him, a small, amused smile on his face. So you're saying you'll defeat them? Volley shrugged. Unfortunately, even with my current power, I wouldn't be able to take on both Loki and Fenrir at the same time. Then he looked at Issei in the eyes. But it's a different story if the two heavenly dragons were to join forces. Everybody gathered became shocked at Volley's suggestion. Issei, however, just observed him before smirking lightly. Well then, let's talk. The day after their confrontation with Loki, there was a gathering in the basement of the Hyoudou home. Issei looked around the room from where he was sitting with Belle and Elena, relaxing. The orc was gathered, along with Sona and the student council, Azazel, Barakiel, and Volley's team. All in all, it was a bit on the crowded side. It didn't help that almost everybody was eyeing Volley with distrust. Unfortunately for those gathered, they needed Volley and his companions. They weren't going to be receiving reinforcements due to the hero faction's ongoing campaign of terror, and it was acknowledged that their current numbers without assistance wouldn't be enough to beat Loki and Fenrir without casualties, something nobody wanted. So they had to accept the group's help. That didn't mean they wouldn't be suspicious, however. Alright Volley, why are you cooperating with us? Azazel asked from his position by a whiteboard. Volley gave a smirk before replying. I just want to fight Loki and Fenrir. The others have already agreed. Is that not a satisfactory enough reason for you? Azazel twitched slightly in suspicion. No, it's not. But unfortunately, we need your manpower, since we can't count on any more due to the hero faction's attacks. You may be loosely affiliated with them, but your personality isn't the type that would cooperate with them. Yeah, we try to not get involved with each other's affairs as much as possible. Volley said with a shrug. That being said, I still intend to fight Loki even without your cooperation. Though if you won't help, we'll battle them while dragging you all into it anyway. More than one set of eyes narrowed at that threat. Elena, however, looked a bit bored with conversation from where she was snuggled against Issei's side, running her hand along his chest, much to the jealous irritation of several of the gathered girls. Well, it seems as though Serzichus has considered this as well, and he says he can't afford to turn down assistance from the last of the old mass's blood. I think it's a bit naive of him, but do agree it would be better to have you with us, rather than roaming free. Azazel said with a sigh. Both Riaz and Sona looked very dissatisfied, but they kept their peace. After a few moments of silence, Issei brought the meeting back on track. Alright Azazel, what plans have you conjured up in that demented brain of yours? Azazel looked insulted. What do you mean, demented? Why would you say that? Volley chuckled. Probably because he's right and you crazy. Azazel gave an indignant sniff. Well, I was actually going to ask somebody for assistance with a countermeasure to Loki and Fenrir. Belle held a hand up. Wait, you're just going to ask some guy for information? Yes. This person is quite knowledgeable when it comes to them. He'll prove invaluable. Azazel replied with a smile. Issei raised an eyebrow. And this person would be one of the 5 dragon kings, the sleeping dragon Midgardsormr. The Fallen said with satisfaction. Ollie nodded as the others looked at each other. Well, now that you say it, he seems like an obvious choice. But will he respond to our call? He will. We'll be opening a dragon gate with the 2 heavenly dragons, and the power of the dragon kings Fafnir, Vertra and Tannen. That will allow us to summon Midgardsormr's consciousness here, while his actual body sleeps in the depths of the northern European Ocean. Issei and Volley nodded in understanding, but someone else became wary of that information. Is it me or am I also included? Cause the truth is I feel a little overwhelmed cause everybody else mentioned our monsters. Saji asked timidly. Azazel waved his hand negligently at Saji's obvious worry. Don't worry. We'll only need you to act as one of the factors needed. You leave the majority of it to me and the 2 heavenly dragons. Hold on till I get in contact with Tannen. I'll also go speak with Shumhazai about potential countermeasures. So you guys remain on standby until I come back. Barakiel, follow me. The 2 Fallen left the room rather abruptly, leaving the rest wondering what to do. Everybody looked at each other before Bhikkhu suddenly spoke up. Seker Yurte. Issei blinked. What is it, Wanab Wukong? Bhikkhu cocked his head to the side. I was curious about something. At Issei's motion to get on with it he continued. I heard you went nuts on that asshole Asterth. He didn't seem to notice the orc tensing at his words, unsure of how Issei would take whatever he was asking. You cut his balls off cause he was a rapist, right? Some of the student council looked a bit freaked out by that information, Saji especially. I don't like rapists either, but you really seem to have an issue with them. What's up with that? Everybody turned to look at Issei, who was gazing at Bhikkhu with dark eyes. Elena had stopped caressing him, looking up at him with slight worry. Let's just say. His heart broke as he gazed around him at the multitude of faces that gazed back at him, some frightened, others crying, the worst completely blank, broken. Their bodies were bare, but for the chains and manacles that secured them to the walls and floor, exposing everything to him, but he felt none of his customary lust, only horror. That ripped her sword out of the chest of the thug that was guarding the merchandise, looking as horrified as Issei felt. She took a slow step forward, only to stop, flinching, when many girls, some not even 10 years old, cried out in fear, others bursting into terrified tears. The sound of hurried steps rang down from the stairs behind him, indicating more guards were coming, and Issei felt a burning rage awaken inside him. None of those coming down the stairs would survive. There are some things that just hit you and can never be forgotten. Issei finished softly, mindful of those horrible memories. The room was quiet as they all watched Issei gather himself, everybody wondering what went through his head. Elena wrapped an arm around his form and held him as she gently kissed his neck. After a sufficient amount of time, Biku put his hand up again. Alright, got another question. Elle and Elena weren't the only ones to glare at the monkey Yaokai at that, but Issei sighed. What is it? Biku grinned. Can I use the indoor pool below this floor? Issei blinked, thrown by the sudden change from the previous serious question, and the memories it had brought up to the completely irreverent one. Well. Ria stepped forward, finger extended at Biku and a glare on her face. Hey, this house belongs to me and the security Issei Hyoudou. I won't allow you to do as you please. Aw, come on. I just want to take a quick swim. Biku whined lightly. No. I already know you're going to cause trouble. It's what you do. Issei sighed, turning his head from the brewing argument to the others gathered there. So this is the last Excalibur. So amazing. Came Arena's voice, making him turn towards the sound. Yes. Ollie got information from his personal connections, and when we compared it to the scroll passed down in my family, we were able to find it. Though the location of it is a secret. Arthur said as he showed off his sword, with Kiba and Zenobia nearby, listening in. His attention was turned towards Asia when she approached, fidgeting. He cocked his head to the side. What's wrong, Asia? She turned her gaze to Volley, who was sitting apart from the others, reading what appeared to be a complicated book of magic. Issei smiled. Ah, I see. You want to thank him, right? Asia nodded silently and Issei got up from his couch, much to Elena and Belle's irritation, and gently took the former nun's hand before leading her over. Volley, can we have a second? Issei asked. Volley lifted his head from his book, curious. What is it, Issei Hyoudou? Issei gently pressed a hand against Asia's back, motioning her forward. She took a hesitant step before speaking. Thank you very much for saving me the other day. Asia said hesitantly. Ah, that's right. Well, I did it on a whim, so don't worry about it too much. Volley said before turning back to his book. Issei guided Asia away from Volley once he was certain the conversation, such as it was over. Then he saw another group. 9. Kaneko was glaring at Kuroka, who was looking back with a smile. Gaspar was huddled behind Kaneko's back, shaking. Kaneko-chan's sister is beautiful, but she is as scary. He whimpered. Issei left Asia and quickly moved between the sisters, gazing at Kuroka calmly. I wouldn't be letting you take Kaneko-chan anywhere. Sorry. He gave Kaneko's hand a squeeze as she grabbed his own. Kuroka put on a surprised face for a moment before smiling naughtily. Still such a manly look on your face now. I wonder why it is. She winked at him before beginning to approach him, making him tense slightly. She leaned forward and, to his surprise, lightly licked his cheek. She stuck her tongue out flirtatiously. You don't taste like a virgin now. Intriguing. She cocked her head to the side before ginning. Hey, can I ask you for one favor now? Issei eyed her warily, though he was having trouble keeping his eye away from her bountiful chest, as she moved lightly to expose more of it. What is it? The Nekashu smiled seductively. Won't you try making a baby with me? Huh? He asked, caught by surprise, though somehow he thought he shouldn't be. I want a child of a dragon. Kuroka explained. A child from an especially strong dragon. I also asked Volley, but he turned me down. Then the only one left is you. A human-based dragon is valuable 9. And I can't ask for more if it carries the genes of a heavenly dragon. And I do want to leave behind a child, so I want someone who will give me strong genes 9. She pressed herself against his chest, her breasts pressing up against him. So why don't we get physical now till I get pregnant? Issei could practically feel Kaneko's glare behind him like a physical force. I want hand senpais. Over to Nisama. She said, mumbling in the middle so Issei couldn't understand her. Kuroka seemed to understand, however, and simply waved her hand with a large smile before leaving to sit near Volley. Her actions drew Issei's gaze to Akeno who was sitting in a corner looking dispirited. She'd been that way since Barakiel showed up. This monkey. I will eliminate you. Try it. Issei sighed. This alliance seemed doomed. A short time later, Azazel had himself, Issei, Volley and Saji teleported by magical circle to a blank empty space, similar to those used for raiding games. Waiting for them was Tannen. Issei nodded in greeting. Good to see you, Tannen. Tannen snorted. Hasn't been that long, Issei. He turned his gaze to Saji, who was standing stiff as a board and staring at Tannen in fear. So, this one is Vertra, huh? Saji began to tremble. A Dragon King. And an ultimate class devil to boot. Issei chuckled slightly. Don't worry, Saji. Tannen looks scary, but he's a good guy. Saji swallowed but got his trembling under control. While Issei and Saji conversed, Tannen was glaring at Volley. Hakayuku, the moment you show even the slightest suspicious movement, I will bite you in half without hesitation. Volley simply smiled wryly back at him. Azazel proceeded to activate a spell tied into his personal magic circle which appeared on the ground. Tannen looked doubtful as Azazel began. Will that guy actually come? Even I've only met him 2 or 3 times. Azazel responded while continuing his work. If the 2 heavenly dragons are here, he'll respond whether he wants to or not. Issei cocked his head to the side. Is he difficult to deal with? He asked Tannen. That guy basically never moves. He is one of the creatures that makes his move at the end of the world. He's sleeping till his role is to start. He has come up to the surface at times, but even at those times he continued to sleep. Several hundred years ago, he finally declared that he would continue to sleep until the end of the world. Tannen responded. Issei raised an eyebrow at the information. Alright everyone, the base of the magic circle is complete. Azazel said. Now you need to stand at your required locations. Each one there stepped forward onto the symbols they were indicated to. Once Azazel confirmed everything was correct, he used a small magic circle in his hand to finish the final commands. There was a flash of light before the locations they were standing in began to glow different colors. Red for Issei, white for Volley, gold for Azazel, black for Saji, and purple for Tannen. Then the magic circle finally activated. Issei looked around, expecting something to happen with the activation, but nothing did. Everybody stood in place for several minutes. He was about to say something when an image began to appear in the air above them. Saji's jaw dropped, and despite having seen some fairly incredible things in his life, even Issei's eyes widened at the sheer size of the figure that was appearing. It was enormous. Bigger than even Great Red. Its head was reminiscent of Tannen's, but unlike him it had a long, serpent-like body coiled up. Tannen seemed to notice their surprise as he explained. This guy has the biggest body out of all dragons. It must have 5 or 6 times the mass of Great Red. Issei let out a whistle. That's quite some mass. He was interrupted when the projection let out a loud and odd noise, making him sweat drop when he realized it was snoring. Tannen sighed. Like I thought, he's asleep. Hey, wake up, Midgardsormr. The gigantic dragon slowly opened its eyes and looked about. Fear. That a nostalgic energy I haven't felt in some time. It rumbled. It turned its gaze to Tannen. Oh, it's Tannen. It's been a while. It then looked around at the rest. Even Drake and Albion are here. And Fafnir. And Vertra. Is it finally time for the end of the world? No, it isn't. We came here today because there are things we want to ask you, so we summoned your consciousness to this place. Tannen said gruffly. They all waited for Midgardsormr to respond, but were met only with more snoring. Tannen growled, looking irritated. Don't sleep, damn it. You and Yulong never fix your lazy attitudes. It drives me crazy. Midgardsormr opened its huge eyes again to gaze at Tannen. You're always so angry, Tannen. So what is it that you wanted to ask me about? I want to ask you about your brother and your father. Tannen said. Saji looked confused, but Issei motioned for him to calm down, and that he'd explain later. So it's about Wanwen and Daddy. Okay. Daddy and Wanwen are beings I don't care about anyway. Ah, but Tannen, tell me one thing. What is it? Aren't Drake and Albion going to fight? It asked as it stared at Issei and Volley. No, they aren't. This time they're planning on defeating Loki and Fenrir by joining forces. Tannen explained. Midgardsormr smiled in interest at the answer. Haha, interesting. I was wondering about it because both of them are standing together without fighting. He turned his attention from them to answer the original question. Wanwen is more troublesome than Daddy. You will die most of the time if you are bitten by his fangs. But he has a weakness. The magic chain Gleipnir created by the dwarves can capture him. You can seal his movement with that. We have already checked that. But from the reports from the north, the Gleipnir didn't work. That's why I thought about getting another method from you. Maybe Daddy and hence Wanwen. If that's the case, then ask the Dark Elves living in a certain land of the Norse world. If I remember, their elder knows a technique to power up the magic residing within the dwarves' items. I will transmit the location of the place where the elder is living to the sacred gears of Drake and Albion. Both teens had their gears appear, looking down as they received the information. Got it, Issei said. Volley nodded. Yes. Azazel, activate the world map using the holographic vision. Azazel pulled out his cell phone and used it, causing a holographic image to appear from the screen. Issei and Volley pointed at a point on the globe, prompting Azazel to transmit the coordinates to his associates immediately. Excellent. To think you knew that much about them. Tannen said in admiration. Yeah. When I went up to the land, the elves and dwarves took care of me. Tannen asked the next question. Alright, so how do we take care of Loki? Daddy would probably be dealt with if you use Mjolnir against him. Azazel rubbed his chin in thought. In other words, we basically have to attack him normally, huh? But will the thunder god Thor lend us his Mjolnir if that shitty geezer Odin asks him? I doubt Thor will let us borrow it. That's one of the weapons only gods can use. Volley said seriously. If that's the case, then ask the dwarves and dark elves I mentioned earlier. They should have received the replica of Mjolnir from Odin. Interesting. Well then, we have been saved thanks to your knowledge, Midgardsormr. Azazel said with gratitude. No, talking like this at times is fun. Now, I'll be going then. I'll go back to sleep. The projection gave a huge yawn before beginning to disappear. Yeah, thanks. Tannen said, making the huge serpent smile. It's okay. Wake me up again if something happens. With those words, the projection disappeared. Issei stretched. Well, we got what we came for. Time to put it to use. The next morning after breakfast everybody gathered in the hall of the basement. None of the Orker student council were going to school that day in order to prepare for the battle against Loki. Although most of the group was irritated by this, Sona especially. Everybody turned to look when Azazel walked in with Roswus, who was holding something behind him, muttering to himself with an unpleasant expression on his face. Here's a present from that geezer Odin, a replica of Mjolnir. Figures that the shitty geezer was hiding such thing. It's lucky Midgardsormr knew about it. Yes, Odin Sama said he will lend this replica of Mjolnir to Sekiryute-san. Here you go. The Valkyrie handed Issei a relatively normal-looking hammer, though it was gorgeously ornamented. Please send some energy into it. Issei carefully sent some of his magical power into it, making it start to grow. Before long he stopped giving it power when the head was about 3 times the size it originally was. In spite of its size, Issei noted that he had little trouble lifting it. Oh, it was much heavier than before, but nothing insurmountable. Nicely done. Azazel said with a grin as he watched Issei swing the hammer, getting a feel for it. Even though it's a replica it has power close to the real thing. Normally it can only be used by a god, but with Barakiel's help we made it so anybody can use it, at least temporarily. Be careful with it, though. It has the potential to make the entire surrounding area vanish with its energy. Issei stopped swinging the hammer, nodding in understanding. Yeah, that would be bad. Azazel turned to Volley now. Volley, how about you beg that geezer Odin for something as well? He might just give you something. Volley shook his head, smiling fearlessly. I don't need it. I'm planning to master the Heavenly Dragon's original power. I don't need extra weapons. What I want is something else. Issei shrugged as he looked at his rival. I can understand that. I've just learned never to say no to any advantage you can get. Pride like that has no place in a proper war. Azazel eyed Issei and Volley as they stared at each other before turning to Biku with a cough. By the way, I received a message directed to you. Biku pointed at himself, confused. Huh? To me? From who? Azazel smirked. It goes full, I will punish you as soon as I find you. It was from the Shaddai. It seemed like he was looking for you with Yulong. Ayu proceeded to begin to shake and sweat furiously. Oh man, that damn geezer. He found out about me being a terrorist, huh? And Yulong on top of that as well. Issei grinned. So the actual Wukong is going to kick one of Wukong's ass. I gotta see that. As Biku glared at Issei, Volley cut in. Biku, should we go to your homeland? It might be interesting to meet Yulong and the first generation Sun Wukong. Don't do that, Volley. Putting aside Yulong who seems to be retired, the first generation geezer is a real monster. He can still be considered as active. That geezer has mastered Senjutsu and Yujutsu completely, so he is really strong. Biku shivered in abject fear. Azazel cleared his throat. Alright then, I'll reconfirm our strategy now. First, we will wait for Loki to show up at the place the meeting is being held at. Then the Citri group will use their powers to transfer you guys to a different location, along with Loki and Fenrir. The location of the place you guys will be transferred to is a demolished stone pitting site. The ones taking on Loki will be Ice and Volley. We will counter him with the 2 heavenly dragons. The ones taking on Fenrir would be the other members of the Gremory team and Volley team, who will use the chain to capture it. I will have you guys eliminated after that. We definitely can't let Fenrir get to Odin. The fangs of that wolf can crush a god. Even if it is the chief god Odin, he will die if bitten with those fangs. We have to stop that from happening at any cost. Everybody gathered nodded, understanding the plan. It was relatively simple in concept. Hopefully it would be similarly simple in execution. Now, since we left the chain with the Elder of the Dark Elves, we just have to wait for it to be completed, so what's left is... Saji. Azazel said. Saji blinked, confused. What, Azazel-sensei? Azazel gazed at the pawn with a look that would make anybody smart back off slowly and carefully. You are also important for this strategy. You do have the Ritter sacred gear, after all. Saji looks like his eyes are going to pop out of his head, panicked. Please hold on a second. I don't have insane power like Hyoudou and Hacker Yuku. I wouldn't be able to fight by taking on a god and Fenrir. I thought I'd just have to transfer everyone with Kaichu and the others. Azazel let out an overdramatic sigh. I know. I wouldn't have you fight in the front line. But I will have you support your allies with Ritter's power. Especially Ice and Volley, who will be fighting on the front line, will need your support. Saji gulped, sweating. As support? Yes. For that you will need a bit of training. There's something I want to try out. Azazel turned to Sona with a smile. Sona, I'll be borrowing this guy for a bit. Sona studied him. I suppose that's fine. But where are you taking him? I'm taking him to the Grigori Institute in the Fallen Angels territory of the underworld, he said with a cheerful look on his face that promised pain for Saji. Issei clapped a hand on Saji's shoulder. Good luck, buddy. We'll pray for you to return intact. Azazel laughed. Alright, let's get going, Saji. He grabbed his target's collar while activating the magic circle, even as said target resisted. Seriously. Help me, Haidu. Kaichao. Saji cried as he was whisked away. Irina, Zenobia and Asia all put their hands together and began to pray for Saji, just as Issei said. Issei sat on a couch in his home reading a book, while Azazel worked on paperwork nearby when Vali entered the room. Azazel looked up when he spotted him. Ah, Vali. How did it go? Issei glanced up as Vali held up a hand, a magic circle full of Norse runes and symbols appearing. I learned quite a bit of Norse magic. I should be able to withstand Loki's attacks for some time. Azazel nodded in understanding. Good work. That should be helpful. He stretched as he looked at the paperwork he'd finished. I think I've completed enough work for today. I'm going to take a break. He got up, nodding to the two Longinus wielders, and left the room. Issei went back to his book, relaxed, as Vali looked at him. The Hakuryuku glanced at the cover of the book and raised an eyebrow. Deadbeat. A novel of the Dresden Files. He looked at his rival. Any good? Issei nodded. Yeah. A friend got me into the author. Urban fantasy mixed with noir works far too well. He turned a page. I often wonder how the main character would do if he lived in our world. Vali sat down, looking at Issei. Have you faced anybody like Loki before? He asked with curiosity. You mean crazy anarchists with more power than sense? Issei responded calmly. Plenty. Loki isn't that unique. There'll always be people who find the very idea of peace painful. Vali sat back. True. What about you? Issei set his book down on his lap, taking the question seriously. Me. Pure, perfect, machine-like order isn't my thing. But wild chaos isn't much better. I prefer something more moderate, like what we would have without the Chaos Brigade being idiots. So not a fan of war, then? Vali asked with a wry smirk. Issei went back to his book. One gets bored of anything if they have enough of it, he said by way of answer. Now Vali was really curious. There's definitely a story there. Issei nodded. There is. Maybe one day you'll hear it. You two are definitely different dragons than usual. Auden said as he appeared out of nowhere between the two. He continued as the two teens looked at him. The red and white of this generation are unique. The ones in the past were all wild horses. They rampaged in every location and started a battle between the red and white selfishly while destroying the surroundings, and then died. They activated Juggernaut Drive when they felt like it. Just think how many mountains and islands were blown away. Roswas, standing as usual behind Auden, spoke next. One is mysterious and a bit of a pervert. Don't think I haven't noticed you looking at my chest, and the other is a terrorist. A dangerous pairing, but you two are calmer than I thought. I thought fighting each other immediately was the way of the Sekiryute and Hakuryuku. Auden sighed and began to speak, sounding more like an old man than ever before. Like I thought, youth is good. At Issei and Vali's looks he continued. Until this age, this geezer right in front of you believed that he could solve anything with his wisdom. But you know, that was just the pride of this old man. What is truly important is the potential of the young ones. Ha-ho-ho, I started to realize that right now, so how foolish was I. My pride gave birth to Loki. And now, because of my pride, the young ones are going through hardships. Auden looked sorrowful at his own words, so Issei smiled at him reassuringly. You act like that's something new, old man. It's always been the responsibility of the new blood to fix their elders' mistakes. Just take things one step at a time. Auden looked at him with a bit of surprise before smiling. Yes, I was right. Being young is good. You help stimulate old ones like me. Yes, you're right. Quite wise. Issei smiled back, satisfied at the effect his words had. A while later, in an empty room he'd chosen for that purpose, Issei was sitting in the zazen meditation position wearing nothing but his boxers. He was focusing on a meditation practice that he'd been neglecting, and had decided to resume after his loss of control against Iodora and Shalba. Whispers filled his mind as he peacefully meditated despite being alone in the room. Suddenly he was interrupted by the door opening, dragging himself from the depths of his mind. He looked up to see who decided to come in despite him specifically requesting to not be disturbed. His attention was definitely grabbed when Akeno walked in, her hair down and wearing a sheer white cloth robe that showed off her entire body to his gaze. Ice-kun, she whispered softly as she approached. Issei looked up at her from where she sat, hoping his blatant direction wasn't noticed. Yes, Akeno. Akeno slowly untied her obi and let the flimsy robe pull at her feet, her body bared to his gaze. Then she knelt before hugging him softly, her large breasts pressed against his hard, scarred chest. Her scent filled his nose as her soft body pressed against his, sending pleasant sensations all along his form. She then brought her mouth to his ears and whispered softly, "Make love to me." Issei sat, feeling her against him. Every part of him demanded that he accept her invitation. A side of him that he'd learned to barely control over his time away roared in hunger, wanting to press her down and take her, make her his and only his. Slowly, he brought his hands up, gently took her smooth shoulders, and pushed her away. The look on Akeno's face became anguished. Why? Is my body not attractive? That's not it at all. Issei said softly. It's taken everything I have to not push you down and take you. I want to hold you, claim you, make you mine. I want to bring you to the height of pleasure over and over again, till you can think of nothing else. I want to explore every inch of your body till there's no part that has not felt my touch. Then why did you stop? You can do that, you know. I want you to. I want to give my body to you. I want you to embrace me with your strong chest and arms, banishing everything. I'm right in front of your eyes, and you could have everything you want if you just pushed me down. So why? If that's what you truly want, Akeno. He gently caressed her face. Then why do you look so miserable? Akeno seemed to jerk, her eyes wide. He continued softly. When you flirt with me so brazenly, Akeno, you always look like you're enjoying yourself. But right now, it seems you're doing this not because you want to enjoy yourself, but because you want to forget. So what if I am? What's wrong with wanting to forget, with wanting to feel relieved by making love with you before we head into battle? I thought I could get rid of this feeling by making love with you. She whispered, her voice anguished. Akeno, if I did that with you, as you are now, all I'd end up doing is hurting you further, and leaving you with a regret that would last the rest of your life. And that's the last thing I want. He gently wrapped his arms around her, bringing her to his chest and holding her gently. Her body shook slightly, close to breaking down. I will stay by your side, Akeno. Whenever you need me, I'll be there. I will hold you like this anytime. So please. He kissed the top of her head lovingly. Cheer up, okay? Akeno wept. I'm such an idiot. No, Akeno. You're just hurting. He said softly. She looked up at him, tears streaming from her eyes. Thank you. I love you. They remained in that embrace for some time. That night, Issei lay in bed with Rias, Asia and Belle, who was on his chest. He was dozing slightly, but having trouble falling asleep, his thoughts on what had happened earlier and what would be happening the next day. Can't sleep. Issei turned to find Rias on her side, gazing at him with a smile. Akeno had a bright expression today. You did something, right? I simply helped her. She was having trouble with her feelings due to Barakiel's presence and the battle tomorrow. We mainly hugged. He didn't feel it was prudent to mention they hugged in the nude. I'm glad you could help her, Rias said softly. Suddenly she took his hand and placed it on her breast. He instinctively squeezed, feeling how soft she was. Rias was blushing, but she gazed into Issei's eyes. Can you feel it? The way my heart is racing. I'm nervous about tomorrow. We'll be facing a god. The powerful one, with a deadly weapon. And Ice will be on the front lines. So I can't sleep. She ran her hand along his chest, stopping above his own heart. But you're so calm. How can you be so calm knowing what we face tomorrow? I thought you couldn't sleep because of nerves, but that's not it, is it? Issei let his hand rest above hers as she felt his chest. I'm not worried about the battle tomorrow. I simply have trouble not thinking about upcoming fights when I have the time to. It's not exactly worry, just overanalyzing. He looked at her in the eyes with a smile. And you don't have anything to worry about, Rias. Loki is powerful, but he's not invincible. We'll all be fine, I promise. He wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close, being careful not to disturb Belle. If you need strength, take mine. I'll gladly give you as much as you need. Ice. She pressed herself against him, feeling his warm skin and hard muscles. Thank you, Ice, for always being there for me. She leaned up and gave him a gentle, loving kiss, which he returned. Then she lay his head on his chest and fell asleep listening to his steady heartbeat. A maid cafe. Issei asked, partially jokingly. Rejected. Rias responded with a smile. Issei raised an eyebrow with a smile of his own. Come on, our club has the most beautiful girls in the school as members. If we did it, we'd flatten every other club trying it. That's the main reason I don't want to do it. I don't want to do something others are doing as well. Rias explained, sitting back in her chair. Issei pouted playfully, crossing his arms as he thought. Belle, who was sitting on the desk munching on a cookie, added her own 2 cents with a grin. How about a contest to determine the most popular girl in the occult research club? As the girls all looked at each other, the idea Gasper chimed in. I'm curious of which of the 2 great one-isamas is the most popular. Rias and Akeno looked at each other before speaking simultaneously. There is no doubt I am the most popular. Both girls promptly began to glare. But you, did you say something? You too, Akeno. Did you just say something I can't ignore? Issei sighed as the meeting to find out their activity for the upcoming festival ended due to the 2 girls' quarrel, Belle giggling with happiness as she watched what she'd helped cause as Gasper hid in his box, shivering. He was distracted when Azazel, who had been sitting in the corner sipping tea, looked outside and spoke. So, it's already dusk. He turned to the rest of the room as the girls' fight stopped and everybody became serious. They all knew what was coming. Soon they would be fighting Loki. Azazel spoke again. It's still too early for Ragnarok, so we must go all out. The group responded in the affirmative. Later that night, the team in charge of dealing with Loki were gathered on the roofs of the buildings around where the meeting between Odin and the Shinto gods was taking place, ready for the moment Loki attacked. Tannen floated overhead, keeping watch, with the student council, besides Saji, who was still training, and who would apparently be late, gathered on various rooftops to perform the teleportation. Roswus, rather than be with Odin for the meeting, was ready for battle in her armor Barakiel. Azazel was inside with Odin, as he was helping act as a middleman. Near the orc, Vali's team was gathered, waiting for the battle to begin. Ryuz glanced at Issei, studying him. He was wearing a new outfit she hadn't seen before. It looked like something the human military would wear. A durable set of fatigues covered in what looked like light body armor in turn covered by a tactical vest with several pouches for items. The entire outfit was light brown and gold. At his side, rather than the sword she'd seen him use on occasion, he had the Mjolnir replica Odin had lent him. She didn't see a gun, but he wore his customary summoning gauntlet. "Ice, may I ask about your outfit?" she asked. Issei turned to her, glancing down at himself. "Yeah. What about it?" "Well, I was wondering, most of the time I see you in the red coat. I've only seen you in a different outfit when we fought Kakabiel, and it was white," she said. Issei smiled. "Ah. Well, that's because each outfit I have has different attributes that make them useful. This outfit, for example, is especially resistant against physical attacks. I chose it as protection against Fenrir's fangs." Ryu's awed in understanding. "Then what about the others?" "The red one is obvious. It makes me immune to fire. It's why I wore it against Yakitori. For other events, it made sense for the Sekiryute to wear red, so that's why I've used it for special occasions." He shrugged. "I wore the white against Kakabiel because it's resistant to light-based attacks. It seemed appropriate. If I have the opportunity to know what my enemies are going to use in advance, I like to prepare as best I can." Ryuz nodded. "Sensible. Thank you for telling me." She turned to her watch. "It's time." Issei crossed his arms. Now that the meeting had begun, Loki's attack would begin at any time. He stiffened and looked up shortly afterward as Vali did the same. Soon the sky above the hotel the meeting was taking place in became distorted, creating a hole. Out of it appeared Loki and Fenrir, looking ready to fight. Barakiel spoke into his earpiece. "Target confirmed. Mission start." As soon as he said that, a huge barrier magic circle was activated around the hotel, which the Citri peerage proceeded to activate to transport everybody to the predetermined battleground. Loki didn't react beyond smirking. Soon there was a flash of light, and when everybody could see again, they were in an abandoned mining area's large open space, rocks scattered everywhere. Issei glanced around, confirming that everyone had made the trip, as Rhea spoke to Loki. "So, you aren't fleeing?" she said with some sarcasm. Loki laughed at her. "There's no need for me to flee. All of you will retaliate anyway, so I can finish you all here and then go back to the hotel. It's a matter of sooner or later. It doesn't matter if he does or doesn't participate in the meeting, I will have Odin disappear." "You are full of dangerous thoughts," Barakiel said grimly. "The first ones to have a dangerous idea was your side. An alliance between each faction. Since the three great powers recorded in the Bible decided to have an alliance, everything became distorted." Loki sneered. Barakiel held up a hand covered in holy lightning, as 10 black wings appeared on his back. "It appears you have no intention to talk things out." Both Issei and Vali stepped forward, making Loki grin malevolently. "This is wonderful. So the two heavenly dragons will be joining forces to defeat me. My heart has never raced like this." As Vali went into balance breaker mode, Issei tapped his gauntlet. "Then rejoice. I have somebody else eager to meet you." There was a flash of light, and everybody turned to see who Issei summoned this time, Loki included. The new figure was male, floating cross-legged in the air as though sitting on an invisible cushion. He was dressed in a tight dark purple leather bodysuit that reached his feet, curling at his toes. He had greenish skin with a brown marking on the left side of his face and dark eyes, with long blonde hair that fell down his back, 2 strands reaching down from his head down his front, draped along his chest, and reaching past his crossed legs. From his back 2 leathery wings curled, held in a position that made them appear lopsided. He looked up and around, face shrewd and calculating. Loki sneered. "And who is this? He looks like a fool. Are you going to play jokes on me, Sekiryute?" The newcomer's eyes snapped to Loki before he spoke in a cultured voice. "You informed me we would be fighting Loki, my warden. I was looking forward to it. I am Loki, great evil god of the north." Loki snapped. "Indeed," the blonde said, his voice soft and thoughtful. "How disappointing." Loki snarled. "What is that supposed to mean?" Loki is not meant to be a petulant child, whining when he doesn't get his way. Loki is supposed to be a trickster, a schemer. His every action planned, his every word a weapon. Issei's summon said softly. "I was incredulous when my warden told me what was going on. The grand plan of the great manipulator. is a frontal assault with a god-killing weapon. Not a trick using his opponent's own strengths against them, not a plan that ensnares his opponents before they realize something is wrong. Just an all-out assault, like something Thor would come up with. The man's lips pulled back into a sneer. You are no more worthy of the name Loki than a drunk is to the All-Fathers. Loki's face had gotten uglier and uglier as his critic spoke. Who do you think you are? I would feel unclean if I let you know my name. Besides which, the warden told me not to. So call me what you're supposed to be. Trickster. The newly named Trickster said. Loki was trembling with rage. Fenrir, kill them. He raised his hands as he gave the order, magic circles appearing from them to blast attacks at Issei, Volley and Trickster. Volley summoned his own circle of Norse magic to block, while Issei and Trickster dodge. Fenrir, meanwhile, prepared to attack. However, before he could, Kuroka smiled as magic circles activated around her, letting thick and heavy chains come out of them. The gathered combatants of the Orc Volley team, along with Tannen and Barakiel, grabbed the chain and threw it at their opponent. Gleipnir, the magic chain meant to bind Fenrir, wrapped around said wolf tightly as though with its own consciousness, keeping it from moving and making it howl in pain. Fenrir has been captured. Barakiel stated with satisfaction. Loki snarled angrily. Damn you. Somehow you countered Fenrir's own countermeasures. Very well then, their stats may be lower even after I boosted them, but they'll still do the trick. He spread his arms widely, and 2 new distortions in space appeared. From them appeared 2 more wolves identical to Fenrir, but for their slightly smaller size. Skull. Haughty. The wolves howled in response. Issei grabbed the replica of Mjolnir from his waist and held it ready, feeding it energy to make the head bigger. Volley got into a stance to attack, while Trickster floated easily, ready for anything. Loki sneered at everybody. I changed a Jotun woman living in Jarnvidr to a wolf, and made it breed with Fenrir. As a result, these 2 were born. Their specs are a bit lower than their father, though not as much since I boosted them in preparation for this conflict, but their fangs are the real thing. They can easily kill a god, and all of you. Now go, Skull and Haughty. That bunch of people are the ones who captured your father. Tear and rip them apart with those claws and fangs of yours. The wolves howled again and rushed to groups. Issei quickly gave his order. Lo Trickster, go back them up against the wolves. We'll deal with Loki. Trickster sniffed, irritated, but began to head over, even as one of the wolves was blasted with Tannen's fire breath, which did little. Very well, Warden. Loki launched a magical attack at Issei while he was distracted, but Issei quickly turned and batted it away with Mjolnir. Loki eyed the hammer, irritated. So, you have a replica of that damnable hammer. Trust Odin to give you such a dangerous weapon. Volley moved forward, magical attacks forming in his hands. I wouldn't be able to have your power all at once, so I will need to do so little by little. He began launching multiple attacks of his own demonic power, mixed with Norse magic at Loki, who dodged or blocked most, but not all, of them. Even so, he didn't receive much notable damage. To be expected of the hacker Yuku. It seems like you learned Norse magic in a short time. However, it's still not enough. Loki proceeded to launch waves of rainbow-colored magic. Volley made his wings bigger, apparently planning on tanking the attacks. His gear called as his ability activated. Slowly but surely the attack's power lessened. Despite this, many of the attacks hit Volley and pierced through his armor, damaging it heavily, though Volley repaired it as quickly as he could. While that was happening, Issei moved in to attack, pointing the hammer at his opponent. Zidine. The electric attack, boosted by Mjolnir, launched an enormous bolt of lightning at Loki. The god grimaced before dodging, the attack barely grazing him before hitting one of the walls of the area with a boom. That attack was powerful. Loki said darkly. You could be a problem. I'll need to take you out first. He held out his hand, and a huge magic circle appeared, ready to launch devastation at Issei, who knew from their positioning that if he moved, the attack would head for his comrades. So, for once, he materialized the gauntlet of the boosted gear, a spell on his lips, ready to tank it. Ignoring me is something I can't accept. Volley said as he moved behind Loki, an enormous amount of magical power gathering in his hand, ready to take Loki out for good. Just as Volley was about to release the attack, Fenrir's huge jaws bit down on him. He let out a cry of pain as the fangs easily destroyed his armor and pierced his body, his blood painting Fenrir's mouth red. Issei, surprised, glanced back at where Fenrir had been contained, only to find one of the other wolves with a chain in its mouth, obviously having untied its father. TCH, the wolves are smarter than their master. Trickster said, as he kept another wolf away from the orc with various magical attacks. Loki obviously didn't hear that, for he was too busy laughing at Fenrir's actions. Well done. Looks like I have the hacker Yuku crunched first. Fuck. Issei spat. He charged toward Fenrir in an attempt to free Volley. Fenrir, keeping a grip on Volley, barely managed to dodge Issei's swing with Mjolnir, slashing back and forcing him away to keep from getting cut open, though his outfit helped stop what little force hit him. I wouldn't let them go down without a fight. Tannen swooped down and breathed a huge fireball at Fenrir. Fenrir let out a howl which shook the area and promptly dissipated the dragon's fire. Then the great wolf disappeared from view only to appear before Tannen, claws slashing his chest open easily. Tannen screamed and moved away, quickly grabbing a bottle of phoenix tears and chugging, his wounds rapidly closing. Issei swung his weapon in his hand as it sparked with energy, ready to launch himself at Fenrir again in order to release Folly. However, Loki spoke before he could. On this occasion, I believe I will have you fight against these as well. The shadows under the god expanded to ridiculous proportions, and from them came out dozens of dragons with serpentine bodies. Oh, you've got to be freaking kidding me. Belle shrieked from where she just blasted one of the smaller wolves with her own lightning. So you managed to mass-produce Midgardsormr? Tannen said with disgust as he saw over 50 of the copies move to attack the defenders. Well, you won't take me out with something like this. He breathed out a cone of fire, destroying several. Belle, Trickster, stop playing around. Take these things out now. You got it, boss. Very well, Warden. Belle flew up high above a group of dragon copies and spread her arms. Thunder rain. Numerous tendrils of electricity blasted from her small form, each one with the power of his iodine. Every dragon she aimed at was fried in short order, making even Barakiel cock an impressed eyebrow. Trickster was more subdued, but no less deadly. When a mass of dragons approached him, he turned from the wolf he had been focused on. Cold world, he intoned. Out of nowhere a blizzard of snow appeared around the dragons, and everywhere a snowflake touched one of them, a patch of ice appeared. Before long they were all encased in ice, which proceeded to crack before shattering, turning them into pieces. Despite their actions, however, there was still a large mass of enemies moving in, not to mention the wolves. Riaz, seeing what was happening, called out to her fellow combatants. We won't last if we stay on defense. We need to take the fight to them. She gathered her power of destruction in her hands, which she promptly launched at the nearest enemy. Go. Issei kept an eye and ear out for what his comrades did as he moved in to attack the dragons, each swing of the hammer, causing heavy damage to whatever it hit. Barakiel launched his own lightning assault at one of Fenrir's children. Despite it being a considerable amount of power, the wolf did not act overly injured. However, this gave Kiba a chance to come in close, his holy demonic blade leaving a wound on his forehead. Zenobia attempted to seize the opportunity, swinging down Durandal and Ascalon, which Issei had lent her for the battle. However, her opponent managed to regain his senses in time to batter away with its paw, leaving several gashes on her torso. Irina cried out her friend's name and pulled her back, quickly sprinkling phoenix tears on the wounds. Riaz, seeing her subordinate's actions, gave some orders. Gasper. Blind its eyes. Kaneko, used the opportunity to attack it with Senjutsu. The group of bats that was Gasper's current form gathered at the wolf's eyes, blocking his sight. Kaneko immediately approached. I will lower its kai as much as I can. She called before punching its paw with huge force, the Senjutsu energy she added to the hit flowing into it to damage its life force directly. Zenobia, now. Riaz ordered. Zenobia got to her feet and took a two-sword stance. I haven't lost yet. She swung her blades, releasing two enormous waves of holy energy which hit Fenrir's child in the side, leaving two deep wounds. Even so, the wolf was still standing, growling. We're not done yet. Kiba used his sacred gear to create a large mass of holy demonic blades underneath his opponent's feet, keeping it from moving momentarily. Then he slashed at it at huge speed, leaving multiple wounds along its body. Then he jumped back as a bolt of lightning struck down from Akeno, slamming into the wolf's body. Issei smiled at seeing his friends work so well together, as he slammed the hammer into the head of another Midgardsormr copy, turning it to pulp. Nearby, Tannen was taking groups out with well-placed breaths of fire, while Belle and Trickster continued to thin the ranks. He also saw that Roswus had joined in near Tannen, launching Norse magic as she backed the former Dragon King up. Meanwhile, he saw Asia was becoming exhausted from sending healing energy to everybody constantly. Even as he watched, she launched some to Biku, who gave no notice but to grin and make his staff bigger to slam into the other child of Fenrir, as he fought alongside the rest of his team. Before long the enemy they fought had its claws, fangs, and one of its eyes destroyed. After destroying yet another fake dragon, heard Volley call his name from nearby, where he was still trapped in Fenrir's mouth. He turned towards his draconic rival, where he seemed calm despite no doubt being in immense pain. Loki and the others. I will leave them to you, Biku and the others. This wolf, Fenrir. I will definitely kill it, he stated factually. Loki laughed. How are you going to do that? You're already close to death. Acting tough like that just makes you seem pathetic. Volley gave Loki a chilling glare. Don't look down on me, Volley Lucifer. Then he began to chant as a bright rainbow glow emitted from the jewels in his armor. I, the one to awaken. They are going to be blasted away. They certainly are going to be blasted away. Voices besides Volley's echoed throughout the area, making Issei's eyes widen. Really, Volley, you go that far? He asked himself. I'm the heavenly dragon who had the principles of domination stolen from everything. The dream will end. The illusion will begin. I envy the infinite, and I consider the dream everything. Yes, give us everything. I will master the path of the road of domination of the white dragon. Suddenly the voices of past Hakuryuku and Volley synchronized. And I shall lure you to the utmost purity. Juggernaut Drive. A bright light encompassed the entire battleground, coming from within Fenrir's mouth. Everybody felt an overwhelming power press down on them. Kuroka. Transfer me and Fenrir to the allocated place. Ollie commanded from his position. Kuroka, smiling deviously, directed her hand at Volley, and began to motion with her fingers, as his armor began to change, thanks to Juggernaut Drive. Both Fenrir and Volley became enveloped in ribbons of demonic power before disappearing from the area. Issei gazed at the spot they had been, considering the fact that Volley must have made contingencies just in case of such an event, when his attention was jerked back by a scream from Rias. Akeno. Issei turned in time to see one of Fenrir's children about to bite down on Akeno. At the sight of somebody he cared about so close to death he didn't think, he just moved, dashing towards her at great speed. You left yourself open. Loki called, ready to shoot Issei with magic, but he was interrupted. I won't let you. Tannen cried, launching a wave of fire at the god. He's right. Roswas called, launching her own attack. You've done the same, fool. Trickster said laconically as his Zandine left his hands, leaving Bell to deal with the last few mass-produced Midgard Subers. Issei cursed the distraction Loki had caused him, terrified that he wouldn't make it in time. Boosted gear once again materialized, but it was too late as there was the sound of fangs biting into flesh. Brachial grit his teeth as the wolf bit into him with its god-killing fangs. Akeno was staring at him in horror. Boost. Wham. The wolf released Brachial as Issei slammed into it with the hammer a microsecond later, sending it flying, its fangs broken. Why? Akeno asked almost brokenly, not even having really noticed Issei's actions as she looked at her father. I can't afford to lose you as well. Brachial said painedly as he lay on the ground. Asia. Akeno called, panicked, which became worse as she saw that the former nun was barely conscious with exhaustion. Even so, Asia weakly held a hand up, a dim green glow appearing, but everybody knew it wouldn't be enough. We're out of Phoenix tears. Ria said softly, but everybody heard her. No, no, no. Akeno collapsed to her knees by Brachial. Akeno, I can help you help him. Issei said softly as he knelt beside her. Akeno looked up at him in desperation. Chow. He took something out of one of the pouches of his tactical vest. It was a figure made out of wood and some sort of leather tied by sinew. This is an item I got from a Native American tribe for helping them with something. Its translated name is simply Affection's Embrace. Akeno looked at him hopefully, but that hope was dashed at his next words. Unfortunately, I can't use it to help him. She looked devastated. Then why? I can't. He handed her the figure. You can, though. Hold it above his chest. Hurry, he doesn't have much time. She did as told, tears barely held back, but nothing happened. It's not working, Ice. He gently took hold of her shoulders. This needs something special to activate it. Tell me honestly, Akeno, do you hate your father? Tell me, Akeno. He said softly, gazing at Brachial, who was barely holding on to life. No. Akeno said, breaking down completely, tears falling down her face. I don't, and I don't want him to die. Not before we can fix things. Issei smiled as he saw the figure begin to glow slightly. You want to see him live. You want to get to know him again, talk to him, and maybe even become a family again. Yes. She sobbed. I miss Tusama so much. I told myself I hated him because that was the only way I could go on. But I still wanted him with me. I still wanted to live with Tusama and Kasama. That's all I wanted. Open your eyes, Akeno. He said gently. Akeno did so and gasped as she saw the figure cast a warm light upon her father's form, which proceeded to heal him quickly, leaving minor scarring, but nothing beyond that. Brachial groggily opened his eyes, glancing around. Akeno turned to Issei. Chow? Issei smiled wider and took the figure from her, gently placing it back in his pouch. Affection's Embrace only works if the user cares about the target. I don't know him well enough to activate it, but you are family that loves him, despite your issues. That's all. Akeno gave a happy sob and smiled wetly back at him before turning back to Brachial. She gently took his hand, shocking him, but he squeezed back, looking at her in amazement and hope. As the father and daughter reunited properly, Issei stood, Mjolnir clasped in his hand, and glared at Loki. Alright, I've had enough of screwing around with you, asshole. It's time I beat you down properly. Loki sneered as the wolves moved back beside him, damaged but still ready to fight. Bold words. But you're right. It's time to end this. Once again, the shadows expanded, revealing another couple dozen Midgardsormr copies. Issei was about to give Bell and Trickster the order to attack when suddenly something appeared. It was a black fire that appeared from the ground, growing and twisting, before covering Loki, the wolves, and the dragons. Tannen appeared to know what was going on, though he was shocked. This abyss black ore. Could it be the prison dragon Virtur? The black flame turned into the shape of a dragon as a large black magic circle appeared on the ground around it. Issei was surprised when a new voice suddenly spoke in his earpiece. Issei Hyoudou-kun, can you hear me? I am the vice governor of the Grigori, Shimhizai. Hello, Shimhizai-san. I take it you are the one I have to thank for the dragon made of black flames. Issei responded. Yes. I was told by Azazel that I have to send Saji-kun to that location after Saji-kun's training was completed. The Folan said. Ah, so Tannen was right and that is Saji. He's different. Yes, it seemed like Azazel made a bit of a miscalculation. We started his training, but he ended up in a state like that. The time was up, so we sent him in that state. At least it appears he can still tell friend from foe. What exactly did you do to cause this? We put every Vritter type sacred gear on him. Issei blinked. Then he blinked again. What? When Vritter was exterminated and then sealed into the sacred gear, he had his soul split into many pieces. Because of that, there are many Vritter type sacred gear possessors. But if you were to group them, there are 4 types. Absorption Line, Blaze Black Flare, Delete Field, and Shadow Prison. These sacred gears were hidden with each possessor with some differences. And our organization, the Grigori, retrieved them and put the Vritter type sacred gears that we kept into Saji-kun. Being in contact with you resulted in Vritter's consciousness starting to appear, so Azazel predicted that all of the Vritter type sacred gears might be able to become one. Issei shook his head. That was unbelievably reckless, though it appeared to have paid off. As a result, the sacred gears combined, and Vritter's consciousness was revived. But it seems like it became berserk because it only revived just now. But it seems like Saji-kun's consciousness is still in there, so he should respond if you talk to him through Drig. So I leave the rest to you. Will you be able to do it? Issei sighed. Yeah, I'll try to do it. Somehow. If necessary, I'll stop Saji by force. He looked at the flame enveloping the enemy, sealing their movement and keeping them from doing anything. What is this fire? I can't move. Loki cried, acting panicked as he strained against the black flames, while his subordinates thrashed uselessly. My powers are being gradually sapped away. Is this the power of the Black Dragon? I had heard that there was a Dragon King who could do so, but don't tell me this is it. Shimhizai continued explaining. Vritter had more special abilities rather than direct attacks. His power might be weak among the Dragon Kings, but in terms of diversity and variety of techniques, he is the best among the Dragon Kings. Interesting. Issei murmured. This was all possible thanks to you. You awakened Vritter's consciousness within Saji-kun. Otherwise it would have been impossible to do what we did. Now, Saji-kun wouldn't be able to keep this up for long, so take advantage and take the enemy out before they break out. Understood. Issei responded, nodding to himself. He turned to the rest. Ryuz. Biku. Take advantage while they can't attack to take them out now. The gathered combatants shared in agreement and went on the attack. While they did that, Issei made use of the still manifested boosted gear to try to reach Saji. Saji, can you hear me? There was silence for the longest time, but eventually he got a response. Saji, it's Issei. Hyoudou. Saji responded lethargically. What's happening to me right now? I don't know why, but my body feels so hot that it might burn out. Get a hold of yourself, Saji. Issei replied, trying to make the other boy focus. Don't let the cool entrance you made go to waste by passing out on me now. What should I do? Saji said, a bit more alert now, making Issei smile. What do you see around you? Saji's response was slow. I see giant wolves and thin dragons inside a black fire. Keep restraining them. Just focus on that. While you're at it, can you see a humanoid enemy? Found him. I can sense a mysterious magical power from him. And he's trying to get rid of the fire with it. That's Loki, so don't let him erase the fire. Keep doing your job, and I'll take care of the rest. Alright Hyoudou, I'll do my best. Issei focused back on the battle and quickly made his way forward, hammer sparking as he prepared to smash Loki's face in. Said god began launching magical attacks at him in desperation. None made much of an impact, bouncing uselessly against the Makarakuran barrier he put up as he charged at Loki. Unfortunately, that slowed Issei down just enough that the god was able to dispel the flames around himself and begin to fly away, trying to retreat. Get back here, you damn pain in the ass. Issei said as he moved in pursuit. Loki sneered down at him. Damn Sekirute. I will retreat for now. He began to laugh. However, I will appear for a third time and bring Chao. There was a flash, and an enormous bolt of lightning slammed into him, cutting him off. Issei glanced over to see Keno and Barakiel floating in the air on black fallen wings, holding hands and sparking slightly. Loki began to drop to the ground, smoke wafting from his form. Before he could move to recover, black flames once again encased him as he continued to drop. Impossible. I already sealed these flames away once. Do it, Hyoudou. Came Saji's voice, making Issei smile at his friend's will. He got into position under Loki's falling form and got into a batter's stance, letting Mjolnir's hat grow once again. He smirked. This is for being a fucking irritant. Boost. Transfer. The hammer glowed with a blinding light as Issei swung it, slamming it into Loki's midsection as he fell, shocking him with an unbelievable amount of voltage to go along with the physical impact. Said god went flying like a fastball, slamming into one of the area's walls, leaving an indentation. After a moment he dropped to the ground, even more smoke wafting from him. Loki weakly looked up at Issei. The reason why the god recorded in the Bible left a phenomenon called balance breaker, and a weapon called longinus which can kill god without getting rid of him. Did he know something like this could happen? Why did he leave humans a method to kill a god? Finally his head dropped as he fell unconscious, even as the rest of his subordinates were defeated. A short while later, Issei approached Saji where he was lying unconscious where he'd stood before and poked him awake. Yo, Saji, wake up. Saji groaned. NNG, Hyoudou. Is it you? What happened with the battle? Noticing that Saji appeared to have trouble moving, Issei motioned for Bell to come over and use a Futius on him, as Asia was still too exhausted to do any healing. The fight's over. We won. Saji smiled. I see. I wasn't very aware at the time, but I heard your voice. I was happy. While I was suffering as if I was having my body burned, your voice came to me. It gave me lots of moral support. Issei smiled back. No problem, Saji. I'll have your back. Just try not to go on any more new rampages. Saji blinked. Are you serious? Was I going crazy? Issei chuckled. Yeah, pretty much. But thanks to you we won. You were an amazing support. Saji looked relieved at hearing that. In that case, I don't care. But he looked around at the aftermath of the battle. The area was in ruins. It looked like a complete warzone. The members of the Orc were celebrating their win, some more than others, with Irinia, Zenobia and Asia all sitting on the ground together, exhausted. Issei looked around as well. Voli's companions had disappeared as soon as the battle was over, so they had no way of knowing how Voli's fight had gone. Meanwhile, Loki had his power sealed by Roswus using a large amount of Norse magic seals. Issei himself had recalled Trickster, not trusting him not to cause issues now that the battle was over. You've been fighting in battles like this numerous times, right? Saji asked Issei. Things like gods, Mayu, and 2 heavenly dragons and such. Issei looked away and thought. Yeah, I have. It's become pretty routine, actually. That is the reason why you are amazing. I was really scared before doing the training that I was trembling. I really wanted to go home. But if I ran away I wouldn't be able to face Kaichu and the others. Saji said self-depreciatingly. Issei turned to him with a grin. I understand, Saji. There have been many times I've become so scared I felt like I couldn't continue. You just have to dig deep and force yourself to continue moving forward in spite of your fear. That's what courage is, after all. Saji sighed, though he was smiling slightly. I'm no match for you. Issei simply grinned back. Ice. Is called as Bell finished healing Saji. Furious. Issei asked. She motioned with her head over to where Keno was supporting Barakiel's weight. It looks like Keno could use some help, don't you think? Issei chuckled and made his way over, moving under Barakiel's arm and holding him up. The fallen appeared shocked. Issei Hyoudou. Just so you know, I don't collect women like their toys. Issei said with a smile. Barakiel appeared embarrassed. I understand. Then he looked at Issei seriously. My daughter. Do you like Keno? Very much so. She's always been reliable and kind. Issei said immediately. Barakiel became quite happy at that, while Keno's face became incredibly red. Alright then, time to restore the area. Rias said. Issei sighed. Great. A few days later Is walked into the kitchen of his home to find Keno happily making something. He smiled at her as he opened the refrigerator to get some milk. Hello, Keno. Making anything interesting? The girl's smile whitened slightly. I'm making a bento for 2 Sama. Issei grinned. I'm glad to hear that, Keno. He drank his milk silently as she worked and was about to leave when she spoke. You could have healed him at any time, couldn't you? He turned silently to find she had stopped working, facing away from him. I didn't think about it at the time, but you had that spell, salvation. You could have healed him with that. Issei sighed. Yeah, I could have. And unlike what Rias believed, I still had the phoenix tears given to me. Why didn't you, then? Because I wanted to help you. He took a step toward her. I wouldn't have let him die, but letting you heal him helped you get over your issues with him. At least, that was the intention. Was I wrong? Keno spun around and pressed herself against his body, her head on his shoulder as she hugged him. No. You weren't wrong. Arigato, Ice-kun. Issei smiled as he held her gently. Azazel handed the Mjolnir replica to Auden as he was preparing to leave. Here it is, back as promised. Auden held the hammer and looked at it curiously. Interesting. And you say the Sekiryuche brat was able to use it without any trouble? That's what I was told. Why? Auden laughed to himself. Ho ho ho, how peculiar. He looked at Azazel. The enchantments we placed on the hammer so non-gods could also wield it dissipated early. I'd say before the battle even began. Azazel looked shocked. What? But then, how was he able to use it? Auden stroked his beard with a grin. That is, indeed, the question. I think we'll need to keep a closer eye on him, don't you? Azazel nodded, still surprised. Issei Hyoudou. What exactly are you? Issei was relaxing with the rest of the orc in the clubroom. School trip is coming up soon. Bell landed on his shoulder. By the way, boss, what do you think about Volley using the entire confrontation with Loki in order to get his hands on Fenrir to add it to his side? Issei shrugged. It's a pain in the ass, but it was a smart move for him. Now he has more firepower in his team, obtained with our help. Kib approached, curious about something. By the way, Ice, why did Trickster keep calling you Warden? Issei sighed, so Bell explained. Not all of those in the gauntlet follow boss voluntarily. That caught those listening by surprise. Really? Kiba asked. Trickster, for example, is there as, well, I guess you could call a community service. He committed many crimes, so after he was brought down he was forced to work for boss's punishment. Boss doesn't let him out often, cause he's dangerous, but we figured we could get him to focus on Loki this time. Gasper tilted his head. Why was he so angry at Loki? Bell grinned. Maybe you'll find out eventually. Asia, who was sitting nearby looking at a guidebook for the school trip, spoke up now to change the subject. Ice-san, we have been busy lately, so we have to go shopping for the school trip next. Asia, I hear that we have to wear underwear which is popular right now. Zenobia said, cutting in. Asia became red-faced. Oh really? Yup. It seems like when we go inside the bath where we bathe together with everyone else, others will laugh at us afterwards if we don't wear proper underwear. I also don't have cute-looking underwear. Maybe it would be better for us to shop together. The blue-haired girl said. As Asia pondered this, Issei's sweat dropped while Bell giggled. Somehow I feel this is all Kyuu's fault. White is the best. I think that is the actual underwear that the Lord and Michael Sama would say yes. For. Irina put her own thoughts in, making Bell giggle even harder. No. I will be wearing victory panties together with Asia. And me too. No. The color for fate is white. Or the ones with an emblem of a cross. Now Bell was rolling around on the seat, laughing, while Issei sighed, his sweat dropped bigger than ever. It grew a bit more when he heard something else that had been going on in the corner of the room. I'm doomed. Ross was said as she cried hysterically. Ooh. Horrible. Auden Sama is so horrible. To leave me behind. Issei, once again, sighed. Yes, Auden had left back to his territory and left his Valkyrie behind. He most likely hadn't even noticed at the time. However, the fact that he hadn't contacted them about it by now most likely meant. Fired. This must mean I'm fired, doesn't it? I worked so hard for Auden Sama and he left me in Japan. Just like he thinks, I can't do my job properly. I'm a virgin. I'm a woman where my age equals the number of years I didn't have a boyfriend. The silver-haired woman wailed. Moo, don't cry Roswus. I made sure that you could work in this academy. Bea said kindly, resting her hand on the Valkyrie's shoulder. Roswus let out another sob. Oh really? Yes, just like you wished for. You want to be a teacher, correct? And not a student. Of course. Despite my appearance, I have already graduated from school in my homeland by skipping grades. Even though I'm still young in age, I am qualified to teach students. Issei blinked, surprised that apparently there would be a teacher his age in school now. But will I able to live in this country? But if I return home, others would get mad and say, you must be brave to show your face when you returned after Auden Sama's arrival to me. And I probably would have my position removed. Ooh. And I was finally able to find a job where I could have a stable life. Roswus continued to cry, depressed. Issei could see her point. Arriving after Auden had come back would make her look like an idiot. Bea smiled at that and pulled out some documents, showing it to her. Yufufu, that's where this plan would come in. She started pointing at various parts of the documents. If you come to the underworld now, you can get privileges like this and privileges like that. Roswus looked shocked as she went through the documents. Really? There's this much insurance. And there are tax refunds. That's exactly it. Also, don't you think that a service like this and a system like this is wonderful too? It's amazing. So D-Devils get paid this much. The base salary is totally different from us. Even if you compare them to Valhalla, these have better requirements. Issei and Bell, who had stopped laughing, stared. Boss. Yo Bell. When they talked about demonic seduction, this isn't what I had in mind, she said. By the way, if you come under me then you will also get these benefits. Beas continued, smiling all the while like an insurance saleswoman. I heard that Gremory is the household who had their family promoted to a Mayu, and that the specialties made within the Gremory territory are very popular, and are receiving high sales for it. That's true. You can even do that job for your career. The Gremorys are looking for very talented people. Me neither, Bell. Issei said, his eyebrow twitching. That's how it is, so won't you become my servant so you can start a business in the underworld? I think you will be able to become a Magic Canon member by attaining the rare piece, and with that magic of yours. I just hope that it would be possible with just one chess piece. Everybody had gone quiet as they watched the king try to add another piece to her peerage. Smart, Issei said quietly. A magical powerhouse that isn't a glass cannon and could actually be able to also dish out physical punishment. That's a very potent piece. Belle nodded. I feel like this is destiny. It might be my selfish imagination, but ever since I met you all at the hospital in the underworld, it may have been decided that it will turn out like this. Ross was set as she accepted the piece she was offered. There was a bright crimson glow, and devil wings appeared from the now former Valkyrie's back. Ha, surprised it only took one piece, Belle said. It was recently announced that the unused evil pieces changed to reflect the growth rate of the master who possesses them. The Marujuka Beelzebub, who was part of creating them, is famous for including secret factors for the technical programs. Kiba explained. Ross was got to her feet and bowed to everyone. Everyone, I have reincarnated into a devil. I'm Roswus, a former Valkyrie. It seems like the annual salary of the underworld and their insurances are more appealing than the ones of my homeland. I have lots of security now since the financial state of the Gremory household, and my future will be very stable, so I have become a devil. So please take good care of me from now. Everybody welcomed Roswus to the team. Unheard by any but Issei, Belle giggled evilly. Oh, I can't wait to tell on you all about this. Roswus began to laugh malevolently after a bit. Yufufufufu. Sama. The next time we meet, I won't forgive you, okay? She grinned creepily, making Gasper hide inside his box in fear. A short while later Akeno offered Issei a bento. Ice-kun, these are leftovers, but please accept them. He opened the bento to find it contained Nikijaga. He picked some up with his fingers and chucked it into his mouth. He smiled. Delicious, Akeno. It gives me a very warm sensation. After receiving chopsticks from her, he proceeded to dig in. Akeno smiled happily beside Issei. I'm glad Ice-kun is enjoying it. Oh, your lips. Issei looked up, wondering what she was referring to, but before he could react she leaned in and packed his lips with her own, slightly off-center. Yufufu. Akeno laughed with a smile and red cheeks as Issei looked at her in surprise. That would be my first kiss, I guess. Issei's eyes widened at that information before he sweat-dropped as most of the other girls in the room focused murderous glares on him. While he tried to figure out what to do, Akeno wrapped her arms around Issei from behind. Ice, I love you. Hearing that, a crimson aura erupted from around Rias. Moo. Ice. Akeno. Today, I won't forgive you too. Belle simply giggled happily. It was lunchtime at Kuoh Academy, and for once Issei and his friends decided to eat outside. They were gathered under a tree, eating from their bentos. All but Issei, that is. He was leaning against a tree, humming a tune to himself, relaxing and trying to ignore his empty stomach. The others, who had been talking, stopped suddenly when they heard his stomach growl loudly. Geez Hyoudou, if you're that hungry why aren't you eating? Aika asked as she brought some rice to her mouth, eyeing him as she chewed. I stupidly forgot my bento at home, and I don't want to spend my money on the vending machines. He said as his stomach grumbled once again. Asia fidgeted cutely. Oh no, Ice-san, if you want, you can have some of my bento. She held the box out to him. Issei smiled and reached over to gently pat her head. Thanks Asia, but don't worry about me. I'm the one that forgot grab it. I wouldn't inconvenience you to make myself feel better. Besides, it's not the first time I've gone hungry. I'll survive. Before a clearly curious Zenobia could ask a question regarding that last statement, she was interrupted by a boy nearby gasping. Who is that? The schoolyard began to go silent as people began to turn towards the entrance. Issei and his group did the same, and all of their eyes widened, though for various different reasons. Walking onto school grounds was a devastatingly beautiful blonde European woman. She wore a tight black dress that covered her adequately, yet at the same time showed her body off in ways that had even the least perverted of the teens there choking on their own drool as she sensually walked, hips swaying invitingly from side to side. Gorgeous green eyes glinted mischievously as they looked around, searching. In her hand she held a bento. The gathered students whispered to each other as they stared at the newcomer, mostly variations on wondering who she was, and exclaiming over how beautiful she was. The perverted duo were no different. Oh god, look at her. Motohama yelled, adjusting his glasses as he stared at the woman. A beauty like her makes every girl here look plain in comparison. The girls who heard him scowled, but couldn't help but agree, much as they didn't want to. Tears were flowing from Mitsuda's eyes. I'm so happy to be alive right now. Even if she isn't a loli, she's super holy shit she's walking this way. Indeed, when the woman caught sight of their group her smile widened and she began walking in their direction, her high heels clicking as she moved. More students gathered, staring at the woman, who did not seem to mind the attention in the least. At last she reached the group and held out the bento with a smile, which looked kind to most, but which Issei and the members of the org could see the mischief in. Hello, Ice-sama. You left this at home, so I thought I'd bring it to you. You need to eat, after all. Whispering quickly picked up throughout the crowd. What did she just call him Ice-sama? She said he left it at home. Does she live with him? And no way. Issei sighed as he heard the students' conversations, but took the bento with a smile. Thank you, Elena. I am pretty hungry. Elena gave a light bow, still smiling. Anything for you, Issei-sama. Is there anything else I can do for you? She practically purred. Before Issei could respond, Aika spoke, looking at Issei speculatively. Damn Hyoudou, you've been holding out on us. That seemed to be the duo's cue. Masuda grabbed Issei's collar and shook him. You bastard. Not only do you live with Asia-chan, you have this gorgeous angel as well. What the hell? I thought we were bros, Ice. Motohama cut in. How could you keep this from us? Nobody noticed Elena's smile turn briefly wicked before she brought a finger to her perfect ruby red lips. Ah, you must be Ice-sama's friends he's told me about. Please refrain from damaging my master. I prefer him in one piece. Issei groaned at her words, knowing they were just going to add fuel to the fire. Indeed, pretty much every student there cried out master. The perverted duo were shocked into near catatonia, looking like they'd been turned to stone. Aika's eyebrows were almost reaching her hairline, surprised beyond belief. Wow, did not expect you to be into that kind of stuff. One of the members of the kendo club, Murayama, stepped forward in disbelief. Why are you calling Hyoudou that? Is he blackmailing you or something? Immediately she knew she'd said the wrong thing, as Elena's smile dropped, and she turned a freezing glare on the brunette. What did you say? The older woman whispered, though it was audible to everyone present, and they couldn't help but shiver at the sheer venom in her voice. Murayama stuttered. My actions are my own, little girl. I happily serve Ice-sama of my own free will. I have little doubt you have no concept of caring for somebody the way I do him. Elena said, her voice still quiet but caring. But, why? Him? Murayama's fellow kendoka, Caddis, asked, the faint hint of disgust at the last word, angering not just Elena, but the other female supernatural beings there. Elena's glare switched to Caddis, but Issei spoke first after he stood up. Elena, it's fine. She turned to stare at her master, seeing that he truly wasn't that bothered by it, so used was he to being looked down upon by the students of Kuoh. That just made her more determined to speak in his defense. She once again turned to glare at the pink-haired girl. Because I love him. She said simply, and there was the sound of more than one Indian breath at the admission. Elena continued, sneering slightly, and even that didn't keep her from looking practically perfect. Little girls like you run around, following a pretty face and a vapid head. Shallow and pathetic. Real women know to look below the surface. Her face softened and she smiled again. I wouldn't deny that he has a few faults, but everybody does, and looking for someone who doesn't is the height of foolishness. I have seen him at the greatest heights and the deepest lows. He saved my life, and asked for nothing, when he was well within his rights to do so. She set her face into a firm mask and spoke so nobody could mistake a single word she said. I would do anything for this man. My body is his to do with as he wishes. I would kill for him. I would die for him. Because I know he's worth it. She gave the girls a condescending look. You should be so lucky to find somebody like him in 1,000 lifetimes. Admirable, but I'm afraid I must ask you to leave, as you are neither a student nor a member of the faculty, said Sona as she approached through the crowd, Tsubaki behind her. Elena turned to look at Sona before nodding. Very well. I've delivered what I needed to anyway. She turned to Issei and, making sure everybody was watching, caressed his scarred cheek tenderly and gave him a loving kiss on the lips. I will see you later. Issei smiled gently at her. Of course. She gave him a smile in return, gave one last glance at the crowd, and began to walk back out of school grounds, her swaying hips drawing the gaze of many to her perfect backside. Issei sighed as Sona turned to look at him, glasses glinting, while Tsubaki began getting the crowd to disperse. Hyoudou, I would appreciate it if you would let your non-student associates know that they are not allowed on campus during school hours, except during certain special events, and that even then that only applies to those with some sort of familial connection, for the most part. Issei nodded. Understood, Kaichu. I'll make sure to let them know. The strict devil eyed him for a moment before nodding and turning to move away, the crowd having left to gather back into groups and discuss what had just happened, more than one person turning to glance at Issei speculatively. He sat back down and, now that the excitement was over, opened his bento to eagerly eat before lunchtime was over. He was in the middle of chewing his sausage when Aika spoke. Sue. How did you meet that woman, Hyoudou? He looked up to find that she, along with the two perverts, were staring at him avidly, though the boys still had angry tears in their eyes. A glance to the side told him that his other friends were also interested, though by now they'd learned not to push for details. He finished chewing before looking back at Aika. Elena was in a bad situation with some nasty men. I think it's fairly obvious to everybody here what a man would most want with her. There were nods all around. She isn't precisely chaste, but she values her freedom to choose who her partner is. And she obviously didn't want to have anything to do with those men. So I helped her. Motohama adjusted his glasses. How? He proceeded to shiver at the cold smile that appeared on Issei's face, and he wasn't the only one. Let's say that I can't be persuasive. Deciding that he'd answered enough questions, he went back to his meal, the rest doing the same as they realized they wouldn't be getting anything further out of him. That evening, Issei was relaxing in the large bath in the basement of his home, alone for once, a bottle of fruit milk sitting at the edge. The rest of the day after lunch was full of people asking him questions about Elena. He wasn't really surprised. The succubus was quite distinctive. If he was them, he'd be intensely curious as well. He sipped his milk, enjoying the solitude. He loved his friends, but ever since the war, where there was barely a moment of quiet, and afterwards meeting Rias and getting involved in the supernatural side of his own world, moments of peace were few and far between for him. Probably the most relaxing span of time for him was the period between the aforementioned events, when it was just him and Belle, for the most part. He almost sighed in disappointment when he heard the door open and soft footsteps pad toward him, instead simply taking another sip of milk. He opened an eye to see who had joined him, utterly unsurprised to see the nude form of Elena sinking into the water at his side with a pleased sigh and a smile. She moved closer to his side and cuddled with him shortly afterward, pressing her breasts against his side, and the two remained silent for several minutes, simply enjoying each other's presence. Finally Issei spoke. "You caused me some trouble today, you know." The blonde chuckled throatily, nuzzling him. "I take it the little boys and girls couldn't get enough about me." He sighed, eyes closed again. "They're not that much younger than I am. But you are the exact opposite of little, master," she said with a wicked little smile, reaching down to firmly grasp something under the water. Issei couldn't help his smirk or the chuckle that left him, though he kept his eyes closed. Both were once again silent for several minutes, simply enjoying feeling each other's body. This time Elena was the one to break the comfortable quiet. "Why do you let them treat you the way they do, my master?" Issei frowned slightly and let an eye quirk open. "What would you have me do, Elena? Lay down the law," she said, seriously. "Show them who they're messing with. Show them that whatever you might have been when you left, you are so much greater than them now." He sighed. "They're children, Elena. That doesn't excuse them." She growled softly. "You deserve their adulation, not their scorn." He turned to look at her now. "So I should become a tyrant among them? I thought you knew me better than that." Elena seemed to wilt. I do. I'm sorry, it's just." She gazed up at him, pure devotion in her eyes. You, and the way I saw them treating you, it made me so angry. I almost froze those two little bitches solid." He stroked her smooth back, and she sighed contentedly and pressed herself against him. "It's alright, Elena. Considering the kind of boy I was, it's unsurprising that their opinions of me would be low and take long to change. You act like you're a different person now." She kissed his cheek. "The trials you went through may have shaped you into who you are today, but that potential was always there. You would have been great even if you'd never led the war. I have absolutely no doubt of that." He smiled and gave her a gentle, lingering kiss. "Thank you, my dear." She smiled back, before it turned wicked once again, and she moved to throw her leg over him, straddling him and pressing herself against his body. "I think that's enough of the serious stuff, Isama." She rubbed her body against his enticingly. "Let me help you relax further." He grinned back, reaching down to firmly grasp her ass under the water. "You won't hear me complaining." They kissed passionately as they began. They didn't leave the bath for another hour. Belle hummed lightly in contentment as she lay on a small towel on the roof of the Hyoudou home in a skimpy swimsuit, soaking in the sun. Nearby most of the other girls were doing the same, enjoying the bright, sunny day. Even Felicia was on the roof, curled up and napping as she enjoyed the warmth. If any straight man got onto the roof to see all the skin on display, they'd likely die of blood loss. As Belle chuckled at the thought, she looked up when she heard footsteps, finding Issei striding out, his eyes roaming around as he enjoyed the sight in front of him. He turned towards where Rias and Takeno were laying. "Sorry to interrupt your me time, ladies, but I wanted to ask for your assistance with something." Takeno sat up to look at Issei, the laughably indecent excuse for a bathing suit she was wearing doing nothing to hide her body from his gaze. Ice-kun, what could you need from us?" She grinned wickedly in a way that Belle knew was making Elena mentally applaud. Issei looked around at the gathered girls, from Elena who posed proudly to Irina, who blushingly crossed her arms over her chest and looked away despite wearing a rather modest swimsuit. "I'd rather discuss it in private." Rias got to her feet, her face curious. "Alright, Ice, I don't see why not. Anything you need me for, boss?" Belle asked as she sat up as well, a smile on her face. Issei shook his head as he moved back into the house. "No, don't worry about it, Belle. Stay here and relax." Her smile slipped briefly before she forced it back on. "Okay boss, if you say so." Issei led the two devils into the house, letting Belle fall back with a sad sigh. She placed a hand on her chest and frowned at the heavy sensation she felt. This last event was just the latest in a list that told Belle something she'd feared for a long time. She was losing her place in Issei's life. For so long she'd been his closest confidant, his right-hand fairy. She'd known him the longest, and she'd endured the most to support him. It was not exaggeration to say that Issei would be long dead without her. Among those who followed him, her love of him was well known. And now, Now she was being replaced. She brushed an errant hair away, sniffling. She'd known it would happen eventually. She remembered that time in the baths during their training of Ria's peerage to face Razor, where she'd admitted her thoughts to the devils regarding not being able to be with Issei as a proper woman. She'd known a long time ago that she'd one day be replaced by someone who could give him what he deserved. She just never imagined it would hurt so much. Of course, she knew that Issei would deny not needing her quite vehemently, but she wasn't blind. Their time alone together had shrunk dramatically since they got involved with Ria's and her peerage. It used to be that she could sleep alone with Issei, sweaty, sticky, and happy, every night. But ever since Ria's and Asia made his bed theirs as well, that happened more and more infrequently. She'd like to be angry at the devils, it would make things so much simpler for her, but she wasn't. Otherwise she wouldn't have worked so hard to push him closer to them, trying to get him over his reawakened fears of loss, that it made his normal denseness even more impenetrable. She also knew that part of what was drawing them further apart was that they were no longer in constant danger. Being his second in command, she'd often had to spend almost every waking hour with him for the simple fact that they needed to always be prepared to fight. Now, though there had been many big fights, they weren't a daily event anymore, allowing them to spend more time apart. She sniffed again, more tears appearing in her eyes, mourning the end of the relationship that had defined her life for so long. Hoping nobody could see her, she gathered her things and made her way inside, suddenly feeling the need to spend some time alone in her room, having a good cry. A few days passed as the high pixie hid her current melancholy from the others in the home. At the moment, as evening fell, she was resting in her room watching TV, enjoying the absurdity of a sentai. She looked over as someone knocked on the door. "Yeah. Bell-sensei, could you come out please? I need you for something," Akeno said from outside. Bell got up with a groan and opened the door to find her student standing in Issei's room with a smile, holding a small bit of cloth. "What do you need, Akeno-chan? I need you to do me a favor, sensei." She held out the cloth, letting the small woman see it was a dress the same color as her hair and her size, probably custom tailored, along with a pair of similarly sized high-heeled shoes. "Could you put these on, please?" Bell gazed at the clothes before looking up at the devil. Any particular reason?" "There's something I want to try, that's all." Bell eyed Akeno, trying to figure out what her game was. Eventually she shrugged and took the outfit. "Alright, give me a second." She headed back into her room to get dressed, a bit surprised to find that lingerie was included. More and more curious, she dressed quickly, stepping in front of the mirror in her room to examine herself. She smiled lightly. She looked damn good, the dress clinging to her tightly, highlighting her form, but leaving plenty of leg and cleavage visible. On a whim she put on some jewelry she'd been bought to complete the look, nodding to herself in satisfaction. Akeno clapped her hands happily when she saw her. "I knew you'd look amazing." She turned and headed for the door. "Please, come with me, sensei." "What is this about, Akeno?" Bell asked as she followed her out of the room. "The dress is pretty, but if this is about dressing me up like a doll." "Nothing like that, Bell-sensei, promise," Akeno said, hiding her wicked smile by facing away. "Then what exactly are we?" The fairy stopped in the middle room staring in shock, as Akeno moved to the side where the rest of the residents were sitting and watching. Belle didn't notice any of that, because her eyes were riveted on the figure in front of her. Issei was standing there, smiling tenderly at her, dressed in tuxedo and holding a short-stemmed blood-red rosebud. "Be boss." What?" Belle stuttered. Issei stepped forward. "Well, I notice we haven't spent as much time together as we should be lately. So, since nothing world-ending is happening at the moment, I figured I'd take you out on a date." "A date? An actual date?" Belle asked hopefully. "We've never gone on a date before." He held out the rosebud to her. "Yeah, Belle, a real full date. Our first ever. I already have it all prepared thanks to Rias. We're going to dinner in a nice restaurant in the underworld followed by a play." Belle's lip was quivering as she took the rosebud, barely keeping herself from bursting into happy tears. An actual date with Issei was something she never expected to be able to ever go on. She looked over to find the rest of the orc all smiling at her, the girls surprisingly not appearing jealous. Well, not very, at least. She smiled back at them gratefully as she moved over to Issei as Akeno moved in close. "I'll be transporting you down to the underworld, Bell-sensei. Then I'll leave you alone," Akeno said at Belle's look. Belle nodded as she alighted daintily on Issei's shoulder. In a flash of crimson light they were gone. After Akeno left them, Issei walked with Belle on his shoulder into a clearly high-class restaurant. Belle looked around, eyes wide, before she turned to Issei. Boss, how exactly is this going to work? I'm, a bit on the small side." Issei chuckled. "Apparently devils have become accustomed to those of different sizes since they started resurrecting others into their kind. Tannen, for example, becomes a miniature version of himself when he needs to enter buildings. Ria says that they've developed furniture and tools for people of various builds." Bull made an understanding noise as Issei stepped toward the maitre d', who looked up from the scheduled book in front of him. "How can I help you?" "Yes, there should be a reservation under the name of Hyoudou, arranged by Ria's Grimoire," Issei said. The devil looked down at the book before nodding. Yes, here you are. Follow me. He led the two to a seat by a window. A moment please. He quickly removed one of the chairs and set one for someone Belle's approximate size on the table itself, followed by a smaller table and a set of cutlery to eat from. Issei nodded and tipped the man before pulling out Belle's chair, letting her flutter down onto it, smiling widely. Taking his seat, Issei looked around with interest. Nice place. Should have known Rias would find something like this when I asked for a place to take you. This is what you wanted to talk to her and Akeno about a couple of days ago, wasn't it? Belle asked happily, smiling till she thought her head would unhinge at his nod. Thanks boss. There's no need to thank me, Belle-chan. You know I would do anything for you. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time but never got the chance, he said with a gentle smile. Shortly a waiter stepped forward, handed them their menus and took their drink orders before leaving once again. Interesting selection, Belle said as she looked over her own smaller menu. They didn't pick a theme and stick with it. I'm seeing Italian, Chinese, British, and I don't know what. Issei grimaced as he saw a certain item. I'm never having haggis again. Damn Gore and damn me for taking that bet. Belle let out a very unladylike snort, covering her mouth. Oh man, your face was priceless. Yukari almost puked when she saw you eat it. Issei gagged at the memories. Never again. Belle laughed again as she looked down at the menu. The waiter returned shortly and took their orders, a Mexican dish for Issei and some Italian for Belle. They talked happily for the next while, discussing the messes they'd gotten into lately, the orc and the other supernatural beings of this world they'd met. I'm interested in seeing what the Fae here are like, Belle said as she eagerly ate her pasta. I mean, I haven't met anybody from them, although from what I've learned from Akeno-chan their magic system is pretty well understood by the rest of the world. Magic here seems regimented differently that back there, Issei said. Rias explained during her lessons to me of the supernatural side of this world, that each mythological group has their own magic system that can still be learned by others, like Vali did with the Norse. Belle wiped some sauce from her face with a napkin. That's pretty different, yeah. I mean, back home everybody used basically the same spells, though some people had their own unique ones. Issei shrugged. Yeah, you think it would be more like this world's. After they finished their meals they left the restaurant, making sure to leave a generous tip, and headed to the theater the play they were going to see was being performed in. What exactly are we going to see? Belle asked, unsure if the smile on her face would ever leave. I don't have the slightest clue, really. Rias just said her family told her it would be especially appropriate for us. The fairy raised an eyebrow. Ha, weird. Now I'm really interested. To their shocked amusement, the play was a dramatization of the Battle of Kuoh Academy and the treaty signing. They were surprised to find that even they were being represented on stage, and Belle almost burst out into mad laughter multiple times, while Issei merely sweat dropped. Still, it was an amusing time for the two of them. It was a surprisingly accurate version, though the devil's role had obviously been inflated slightly. Belle rested her head against his as she sat on his shoulder on the way out of the theater. This was fun, boss. I never imagined I'd ever get to have a proper date with you. She wiped a happy tear away, smiling brightly. Issei smiled. We're not done yet. Belle pulled back, looking at him curiously. There's more. Well, I don't think going home yet would be a good idea. I'd rather not be interrupted, Issei said with a small chuckle. His fairy blinked, but her eyes widened when Issei entered a high-class hotel and got them the penthouse suite. She began to grin when they entered the room. Does this mean what I think it means? Issei took off his coat and grinned back. It's been far too long since we had a night alone, don't you think? Belle giggled happily. Several hours later Belle lay on Issei's chiseled chest, her eyes closed and smile wide as she hummed in contentment, satisfied for the first time in what felt like far too long. She looked up at him, smiling tenderly. I love you, Aisama. He looked down at her, smiling back just as lovingly. I love you too, Belle-chan. And I always will, not matter what. You're with me till the end. I'll have it no other way. He reached down and ran a finger along her back as she sniffled happily. Yes, sir. That's it, guys. Thanks for watching and supporting us. Until the author add more chapters. Take care.